This man possesses a legendary skill. His eyes turn to obsidian, allowing him to see everything. But before his awakening, his life was absolute trash. Just 1 week ago, the world was normal. Then a terrifying announcement hijacked every screen on the planet. In 2 months, the world would face starvation and monsters. Hungrier than any human were coming to devour us. A cruel god granted humanity a chance we awakened new powers. Still, it was a slaughter. I locked myself in my room. 3 months have passed since the world ended, but this solitude is a nightmare. I'm the last living soul in this entire building. The worst part. No internet. My name is Kim June, and my suffocating boredom finally came to an end the moment a monster appeared at my window. It was a creature from hell with the most grotesque mouth imaginable. My heart nearly exploded. I almost soiled myself in terror, but it couldn't get in. This wasn't some epic hero moment. The reason was my ability. In my house, my rules are law. I am the ultimate shut-in. Nothing gets in without my permission. This wasn't the first monster to try. I swear I'm going to become immune to heart attacks. Yes, this power saved my life, but it has one devastating downside. I can't leave either. I've been a prisoner here since the day I awakened. You call this survival? It's a cage with no internet, no girlfriend, and no future. The system message taunts me. The ultimate shut-in cannot leave the designated area. It makes my blood boil. I'm utterly trapped. I was handsome rich and still single. Now things are even worse. The food is almost gone. The fridge died. Everything is starting to rot. Is this how I die, by being too safe? But then I saw it. A notification that my skill had leveled up. I never even stopped to think about what leveling up could do. That monster that smashed itself against my window? It must have given me experience points. Now its corpse is a feast for the beasts below. But then they started acting strange. The ugly beast's body dissolved into black smoke. The system announced a reward had been sent. 2 million cash deposited into my wallet. I had no idea what a wallet was, but the sudden surge of power in the building shocked me. The electricity and water were back online. It was a damn miracle. I can finally take a shower and stop stinking. Please tell me the internet is back. Nope, damn it all. Why not that too? While cleaning my trash department, I found an old flash drive. I didn't even remember having it. I plugged it in and found old family photos. There was my mom the day I was born. She was so beautiful. And me at 5 smiling without a care in the world. At 12 with ridiculously long hair. At 15, happier than I'd ever been. I wish my parents were here. I don't even know if they're still alive out there. In that instant, my resolve hardened. I will find them. I will bring them back to this safe place, no matter what it takes. Stepping onto the balcony, a new window appeared before me, level 1 shop. It looked suspicious as hell, but I had to try it. The shop showed I had 2,300,000 cash, like a private otherworldly supermarket. I tried the window again just to be sure. Still trapped. This safe haven is also my prison. But then a realization struck me like lightning. I can level up by hunting monsters. If I can kill those creatures on the street, I can get stronger. Maybe if my level gets high enough, I can finally break free of this place. But looking at those terrifying winged beasts in the sky, I don't stand a chance. Then again, that other one died just by touching my window. Perhaps I can deal with the goblins on the ground. They're definitely weaker. So I began an experiment. I grabbed a water bottle. Can it pass through the barrier? Yes. Items can leave my domain. But I can't. If that's the case, a plan started to form. I can kill the goblins from up here, if I use something much heavier. Just as I was about to hurl a dumbbell, the goblins shrieked to each other and scattered. Those little bastards, you're not getting away that easily. I have to test this theory. I threw the dumbbell with all my might and missed completely. My aim is pathetic, and I've only got one left. Now, what I was out of ideas. But then I heard it. The goblins started screaming. They were grouping together, charging straight for my building. It was terrifying. A horde of monsters moving in perfect sync. As they swarmed the building, I feared the worst. But wait, this might not be so bad. If they're all gathered below me, they're a much easier target. Then it hit me. The shop, I opened the system window. My points were ready. I commanded it to list available items. And just as I hoped, the dumbbell in my hand was analyzed. The system listed it for purchase. And the price was exactly what it was online before the world ended. So it's a perfect virtual store. I immediately ordered more dumbbells and bought them. They materialized from thin air, and the price was deducted from my account. This is insane. I probably screamed so loud the whole neighborhood heard me. I launched another dumbbell with everything I had, and this time I was lucky. A perfect headshot on a goblin. The system confirmed the kill and the experience I gained. Another 3,345 cash flowed into my account. The remaining goblins stared at the sky in terror, wondering what the hell just happened. It's not every day that dumbbells rain from the sky. I kept throwing them, but now the goblins were alert. I missed every single shot. So I simply kept buying more dumbbells and trying again. Through sheer persistence, I started landing hits. As a result, I leveled it up again and again. The feeling of power was intoxicating. Then a new system notification appeared. The ultimate shut-in unlocked storage level 1. An alternate dimension for my items. To test it, I tried to store a dumbbell. It vanished from my hand and appeared on the storage list. It worked. I willed it back and it reappeared instantly in my hand. Incredible. I can store anything and retrieve it whenever I want. And now, I was about to do something truly cruel. I filled the storage with dozens and dozens of dumbbells. Then I released them all at once from my balcony. A rain of pure iron fell from the sky. The goblins couldn't possibly escape. They were crushed. Every last one of them wiped out. I was amazed at my own power. I never knew it could be used in such a devastating way. So I can analyze and buy things with shot points. Great, but this awesome discovery led to a brand new crisis. My funds are dangerously low. On top of that, the system's power bill keeps bleeding me dry. And ever since my little dumbbell massacre, not a single monster has dared to come near my apartment. No monsters means no cash, and 0 experience points. If this dry spell continues, I'm a dead man. I had to find a new hunting ground. Just as I was racking my brain for a solution, a dark silhouette blotted out the sun. A chilling memory surfaced. The creature from before. The very same beast that nearly ended me. This was bad. A calican. A high-level threat. Thinking fast, I sprinted to the kitchen-rigged shiny spoons to a chair and hung my pathetic lure outside. And just like that, it took the bait. The monster locked onto the light, diving toward my building. Its grotesque mouth wide open, ready to strike. But this time, there was no fear. My absolute barrier was still active. There was no way it could ever break through. If it's stupid, it'll just smash itself to death for some easy experience. But this one was smarter. It quickly realized the barrier was impenetrable. Then it just flew away. Are you kidding me? But wait, it wasn't retreating, it was repositioning, right on top of my roof. I leaned out to look, and my heart nearly exploded. It was hammering one specific spot on the barrier. But my defense is absolute. Nothing gets in without the Supreme Shut-In's permission. That's me. An idea sparked. I immediately opened the system shop. If dumbbells can crush goblins, what does it take to kill a monster this huge? As it kept pecking, a crazy, brilliant plan began to form. I dumped my cash into cooking oil. This was perfect. I filled every pot I owned and cranked the heat to max. Time to test a classic siege tactic on this overgrown chicken. I made some makeshift torches, then transferred the vats of boiling oil into my inventory. I lit a torch. The stage was set. The beast continued its useless attack. "Release!" I roared, commanding the system. My inventory opened in the sky above the creature. A torrent of boiling oil rained down. The monster shrieked in agony. I launched the burning stick. The oil instantly ignited. A massive fireball engulfed the beast. It worked. Yes, that thing is now extra crispy calican. It plummeted to the ground in a burning heap. The smell was horrific. As its life faded, a system window appeared. Calican defeated. Experience gained. My cash reward, 9,347,000. The Supreme Shut-In was officially rich. But then, something else happened. A requirement had been unlocked. My territory was expanding. It wasn't just my apartment anymore, it was the entire building. And with it came a new ability. A searing pain shot through my head. My vision glitched. Then I saw it all. The entire building laid bare before my eyes, including the people hiding below. A family, their faces etched with hunger and despair. What the hell is this? My eyes felt strange. Who were they? The vision faded, but the system immediately gave me the answers, displaying all of their info. A man and woman, both 30. 2 daughters, ages 3 and 6, all of them eligible to become citizens of my territory. Then the system issued a chilling warning. Non-citizens will be expelled. If I do nothing, they'll be thrown to the monsters. Without a second thought, I granted them citizenship. Then I checked my new skill, just as I suspected. Supreme Eyes Level 1. With this, I can see everything and everyone inside my domain. Nothing escapes my sight. In the system, a new population tab appeared. Currently 4 citizens. Out of 600 available slots, 600. There's no way that many people could fit in this building. But then I saw something incredible. Citizens share their power and experience. If they level up, I get a cut. This was my ticket to getting stronger faster. And now, missions have unlocked, with time limits, and if I fail, there's a punishment. First mission, kill a goblin in 168 hours. The penalty for failure, my manhood falls off, which is basically a death sentence, same difference. The system asked if I would accept. I hesitated, and declined for now. Instead, I activated Supreme Eyes again. The world went dark. My vision focused on the family below. The scene played out before me. The little girl's weak voice asked her dad, "What are we going to do? There's no more food." The kids were starving. You could see the despair crushing the father watching his daughters waste away. But the world outside was hell on earth. Going out there was a death sentence, but he had to try. He told his wife he'd go find food. And they both knew what that really meant. Stay and they all die of hunger. Leave and he might die alone. But it was their only chance. He steeled himself to leave. He said his goodbyes as if they were his last. The children wept, begging him not to go. As he reached for the door, the handle began to turn on its own. They all froze in absolute terror. Monsters! The door creaked open and a blinding light burst into the room. The dad grabbed a makeshift weapon ready for his final stand. But it wasn't a monster. He cried out for mercy, then saw me standing in the doorway. "I'm here to help," I said. I held out water and food. They must be starving. They all just stood there in shock. In this broken world, how could help just appear out of nowhere? The father knew he couldn't refuse. It was the only way to save his daughters. Hesitantly, he invited me in. The scene changes, and we see Cho Hung-jun's two kids hiding behind him, their suspicious eyes locked on our main character, Jae-hyun. The children don't trust this stranger one bit. Meanwhile, Hung-jun, his wife, and the kids are all sitting tensely around the table. Jae-hyun calmly peels an orange, trying to break the heavy, suffocating atmosphere in the room. He watches them, wondering if his sudden arrival caused too much of a shock. But as he scans the room, he sees the grim reality of their situation. The place is completely empty. No food, no water, not even a glimmer of light. The curtains are drawn shut, a desperate prayer that the monsters outside won't notice them. A good call. John thought, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. Deciding his kindness wasn't over, his gaze shifted upward, locking onto the dim ceiling light. A cerulean glow ignited within his eyes. With a single deliberate blink, the darkness fled the room. The man's jaw dropped in utter disbelief. Before his mind could even process the miracle, John slid a water bottle across the table. "The children first," he commanded, his voice calm and steady. The little ones drank as if they'd been lost in a desert for an eternity. Watching them, a faint, almost imperceptible smile graced Jihan's lips. The younger girl, Seo-hyun, drank so desperately she began to choke. In a flash, Jihan was there, offering her a bright, perfect orange. Seo-hyun hesitated for a moment, her tiny hand reaching out for the fruit. The sweet scent of citrus filled the air, a promise of pure relief. She brought the orange to her mother, who peeled it with gentle, loving care. The instant the fruit touched her lips, Seo-hyun's eyes lit up like stars. It was an explosion of sweet, juicy flavor that melted away her fear. Her joy was pure and unmistakable. Inspired by his sister's delight, Nahan asked for a piece too. Soon, the sound of children's laughter echoed, chasing the shadows from the desolate room. As Jae-hyun watched this heartwarming scene, a familiar blue window materialized before him. A system notification. The family's trust in him had surged. Seo-hyun's trust level had skyrocketed past 57, qualifying her to become a vessel. The word sent a jolt of shock through Jae-hyun. He didn't fully grasp the meaning of a vessel yet, but one thing was crystal clear in his mind. There was no way he would ever turn a 3-year-old child into some kind of tool. He needed to raise the father's trust level from 31 to 50, and he needed to do it now. John was deep in strategic thought when the man's voice suddenly cut through the silence. "Thank you. From the bottom of my heart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "How can I ever repay you?" Jaehan's reply was simple and direct. "Let's talk outside." The scene shifts, placing the two of them alone in the quiet, desolate hallway. John cut straight to the point. "Did you receive a system notice about citizenship?" The man nodded, confirming John's suspicion. John pressed further. "Did you notice anything strange?" He elaborated. For just a moment, the world simply stopped. Hearing those words, a chilling and crucial realization washed over John. If he had been a moment later granting that citizenship, they would have been forcibly teleported out of his sanctuary. His expression hardened, his focus sharpening like a blade. With unwavering confidence, John made him an offer he couldn't refuse. "Work with me," he declared. "I will provide food, water, and shelter. But more importantly, I will guarantee your family's safety." The man stared, completely stunned. How is that even possible?" John offered no immediate explanation. Instead, he laid out his terms. "If you want food and safety, you trust me, no questions asked." Jae-hyun then made a vow. "I will never ask you to do anything that puts your life at risk." The man closed his eyes, searching his soul and trusting his gut instinct. Despite the impossible situation, he could feel it. This boy wasn't a bad person. He opened his eyes. "So what do you want in return?" "Nothing in this new world is free." John calmly responded, "I don't need anything material. I just need you to do one small thing for me. Relief washed over the man's face as he exhaled. "Okay, brother." A slight smile touched Jihan's lips as he acknowledged the new title. Switching gears, John inquired about the golf club he was carrying, but realized its price was far too steep to stock in his personal store. "We can talk about the club later," John dismissed. "First, tell me, when exactly did the apocalypse begin?" The man recalled the terror vividly. "It was a weekend, when the first horde of goblins attacked." The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place for John. He remembered that day holed up in his room, like the supreme recluse he was. So those who stayed home were spared the initial wave of destruction. Looking back, he knew his citizenship ability would be the ultimate key to survival. With his plan now solidified, John gave the man his first clear command. Find any other survivors and bring them back to this building. After that, the scene cuts away, showing John lying comfortably on the sofa. His eyes were glued to the system window, watching as the man's trust level slowly but surely began to climb. It reached 40, but John was anxious. He needed that number to hit 50 and soon. As he waited, his thoughts drifted to a more personal crisis, wondering when he could finally escape this barrier and find his own family. Could granting citizenship to others be the key to his own reunion? Suddenly, a horrifying shriek ripped through the air, yanking him from his thoughts. The sound pierced the silence, a sickening mix of a human scream and a zombie's moan. John raced to the window, peering down into the chaos below. His eyes widened in shock. A group of 6 to 7 people were desperately fighting a losing battle against a goblin horde. He knew they were doomed. They were too far from the building for his power to reach. A wave of helpless panic began to set in. But just as he gave up all hope, a teenager unleashed a fastball with impossible force, instantly obliterating a goblin's head. Then another teen in a purple tracksuit knocked 2 arrows at once, felling 2 more monsters in a single fluid motion. Finally, a third kid with a baseball bat turned a goblin's skull to mush with one effortless swing. The remaining goblins broke ranks, scattering in absolute terror. But suddenly, a loud crash from above shatters the girl's focus. A pack of ramen noodles lies on the ground, seemingly fallen from the sky. Glancing up, she spots a dark silhouette watching from the rooftop. It's John trying to lure them inside. But as he observes the survivors, a sudden knock echoes from his own door. His portly companion has arrived. John grants him entry, but an invisible force field rejects him. A system window flashes to life. This individual is not authorized to enter. The revelation stuns John. This confirms it. His sanctuary is absolute impenetrable even by his own command. John wonders if a vessel might be able to enter, but he pushes the thought aside. There are more pressing matters. Stepping outside, John orders his new subordinate to gather any cheap household items that could serve as a makeshift weapon. After a quick check, John opens the Supreme Recluse's shop, summoning 5 packs of ramen and 5 bottles of water from thin air. In a flash of light, the items materialize before the chubby guy, whose jaw hits the floor. For the first time, he witnesses his master's godlike power. John, with an air of complete calm, packs the supplies into a box and hands it over. Your next mission, he declares, is to deliver this outside. A wave of fear washes over his subordinate's face. He reminds John of the goblin hordes lurking in the streets. Jae-hun's voice is cold steel. I've already cleansed the immediate area of any threats. Though terrified, he finds himself believing John's unshakable confidence. John adds that in this new world, food is power. He reveals his master plan. By giving these survivors food, he will position himself not as a savior, but as a king they dare not defy. A wicked smile plays on his lips. He was perfectly executing Liliad's subjugation technique. Those who accept his charity will become his loyal pawns. His followers' eyes gleam with absolute trust. He was all in. John then creates a new mission in the system. The promise of experience points is all the motivation his man needs. He eagerly accepts and heads downstairs, box in tow. Every step is filled with dread, but his faith in John is stronger. He clutches a golf club like a holy relic as he pushes the building's door open. The moment he steps outside, a single primal instinct screams at him, drop the box and run for your life. As he bends down to place the box on the ground, he hears it, the chilling sound of approaching footsteps. He freezes, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. A black shadow flickers at the edge of his vision. Panic takes over his mind, conjuring images of a slavering, bloodthirsty goblin. He scrambles to get back inside, but trips, sending the precious supplies scattering. He's paralyzed by sheer terror. His face beat red as he gasps for air. The footsteps grow louder, closer. He whimpers for his life, begging the imaginary monsters for mercy. Finally forcing his eyes open, the sight that greets him leaves him utterly speechless. There are no goblins. Instead, a group of exhausted teenagers and students are staring back at him, their faces a mixture of confusion and shock. The scene shifts. A system alert flashes for Jae-han. The survivors he spotted earlier are now attempting to enter the building. Understanding dawns on Jae-han as he activates the Supreme Recluse's omniscient eyes. His vision pierces through walls, locking onto the group at his doorstep. The girl in the purple tracksuit points up. That's the apartment, she says, where that weirdo was throwing ramen from. A guy wielding a baseball bat scoffs. If someone's tossing around instant noodles, it means they must be sitting on a mountain of food. John deactivates his all-seeing eyes and attempts to register them as citizens. But the system stops him with a critical warning. Citizenship can be offered, but it can also be refused. This unexpected variable could derail his entire strategy. He had to devise a plan, one that would guarantee their acceptance. Just then, a call comes in through the building's camera system from his subordinate outside. A brilliant idea sparks in John's mind. He tells the chubby guy to wait, then updates his mission. Serve our 6 new guests. The mission is accepted instantly. He approaches the survivors at the barrier and makes them an offer. Accept my master's proposal, and you will receive everything you need for free. At the mention of free food and shelter, they agree without a moment's hesitation. John lowers the barrier, granting them access. Inside, a system notification confirms his citizen count has increased by 10%. Now, any experience points or money earned by his citizens will also grant him a 10% bonus. A crucial advantage. John observes his new citizens analyzing their profiles. The highest level among them is Hong, the one with the baseball bat. His skill, baseball throw, is a D rank ability, allowing him to hurl objects with 10 times the normal force. Jae Han immediately recognizes the terrifying potential of that skill. These weren't normal kids. They were all metahumans. He quickly sets their experience distribution rate. The teenagers would keep 70%, while he would receive a tidy 30% tithe. A satisfied smirk crosses his face. By gathering more citizens, he could build an automated hunting party, letting him grow stronger and richer without lifting a finger. He felt like a god player in a real-life strategy game. The next step was obvious. He needed to earn their trust. But surprisingly, a new notification showed their loyalty was already rising on its own. John was confused, but he decided to keep watching. Elsewhere, the survivors find a sliver of hope inside the chubby neighbor's apartment. His wife is stunned by the sudden crowd, but her husband's desperate plea for food softens her heart. She agrees to help them. And from afar, through his all-seeing eyes, Jihan watches pleased that his plan is unfolding perfectly. After a moment, Dongjun's curiosity gets the better of him. He needs to know, who is this Jihan guy? The neighbor admits he's a mystery, a bit strange, but undeniably a savior. Thanks to Jihan, they now have electricity, running water, and food. Hearing this, Dongjun's concern deepens. His eyes drift to the pack of ramen Jihan gave them, a simple gift that showed impossible power. He realizes Jihan must be an incredibly dangerous and powerful metahuman. A silent vow forms in his mind. He must get on this man's good side. Fear quickly transforms into respect. In a world like this, angering a being with that much power is a death sentence. Meanwhile, the chubby neighbor offers the girls in the group something they thought they'd lost forever: a chance to take a bath. The word bath is like a magic spell. Their eyes light up with pure, unadulterated joy. A simple shower has become the ultimate luxury. Dongjun is just as shocked, realizing the shower must actually be working. The neighbor confirms the miracle. There's even hot water, all thanks to Jihan's strange abilities. He's their electrician, plumber, and water utility all in one. One of the girls laughs. Is there anything he can't do? It's like he's the god of all handymen. But as they talk, a teen with glasses corners Dongjun. So, you really think you're stronger than him? Dongjun scoffs. With abilities like that, not a chance. Suddenly, Deoksu slings an arm around him, a foolish glint in his eye. What if we just jump him together? His reasoning is as twisted as it is simple. If they can overpower Jihan, they can take all of his supplies for themselves. Dongjun shoves him off disgusted. Are you insane? Don't you dare try anything that stupid. The group quickly reaches a consensus, challenging Jihan is suicide. Earning his favor is the only path to survival. The scene shifts to a quiet corner, where Dongjun finds Bongho, a boy haunted by guilt, and offers a heartfelt apology. If not for that party invitation right before the world ended, Bongho might have been with his family, able to save them. Bongho insists it isn't his fault, but Dongjun makes a solemn vow. After we eat, we're going to rescue your grandmother. But the boy's face remains a mask of despair. It's too late, he whispers, his voice cracking. The goblins? They probably got her already. The heavy atmosphere is shattered by approaching footsteps. They brace for a monster. And they're right. But this monster's name is Jihan. He enters carrying 2 black bags, and in that instant, Dongjun understands. Jihan is the only one who can solve all their problems. With a deadly serious expression, Jihan's gaze sweeps over the desperate survivors. Without a hint of hesitation, he declares, I will help you. Soon everyone is seated, but the air is thick with unspoken tension. The neighbor's wife apologizes for the cramped space flustered by so many guests. Dongjun tries to comfort her, saying it was their fault for showing up unannounced. Just then, her husband arrives, carrying trays of steaming hot food. The group of teenagers stares in utter disbelief at the feast before them. It's the first real meal they've seen since the world fell apart. Clean, hot food that smelled like a forgotten dream. The neighbor's wife watches nervously, praying her guests like the meal. Rice, fried egg, kimchi, and warm water. A simple but mouth-watering spread. The table is overflowing with delicious-looking dishes. One of the girls hesitantly takes a small piece of egg. The moment she takes a bite, her eyes widen. Flavor explodes in her mouth as she exclaims, "This is incredible!" A wave of relief washes over the neighbor's wife, and a warm smile spreads across her face. She humbly gives all the credit to Jihan's ingredients, admitting that without them, she wouldn't have even had food for her own family. A stunned silence falls over the group. Who in the hell is this Jihan guy? At that moment, a system window pops up that only Jihan can see. The wife's trust level has just hit 50%, rising even faster than her husband's. With the ice broken, everyone digs in, finally enjoying a proper meal together. Pure bliss is written on every face. It's as if they're tasting real food for the first time in an eternity. One girl comments that the egg rolls are restaurant quality. In this hellish apocalypse, a meal like this is nothing short of a dish from heaven. Another girl asks the wife if they are the same as the ones served in Japanese restaurants, her voice filled with wonder. Seeing their happiness, the wife beams, encouraging them all to eat their fill. But her joy is cut short when her young daughter tugs on her sleeve, her face a mask of sadness. She wants some of those delicious egg rolls too. The mother gently strokes her daughter's head, promising to make her a fresh batch after their guests have left. But for a child, later is an eternity. Her bottom lip begins to tremble, her eyes welling up with tears. One of the women gently called to the little girl, offering to share her delicious egg roll. The child's eyes instantly sparkled with glee, and she eagerly scurried over to sit beside her. Overwhelmed by the pure, adorable joy radiating from So-hoon, the woman used her chopsticks to offer her a piece. After one bite, the little girl was practically beaming with happiness. While the group shared this moment of peace, Jae-hyun spotted the chubby man and his wife watching them from a distance, warm smiles on their faces. Touched by their kindness, Jae-hyun gestured for them to come closer and share the meal with everyone. The couple seemed hesitant at first, clearly surprised, but soon took a seat and gratefully joined the makeshift family dinner. But as the meal went on, a pang of loneliness struck John. This simple scene of warmth and camaraderie was a painful reminder of how long he'd been on his own. His thoughts drifted to his parents, praying they were somewhere safe. And with that heavy thought, the meal came to an end. A little while later, So-hyun, her eyes heavy with sleep, went to her mother. She was gently lifted up and carried off to bed. The older daughter soon followed, leaving the adults alone. The time for pleasantries was over. "We need to continue our discussion," John stated, his tone shifting to pure business. He locked his gaze on Dongjun. "Your grandmother's house is so close. Tell me exactly why you can't get there." Dongjun's face tightened with fear as he uttered a single dreaded word, goblins. The mood in the room instantly turned ice cold. He elaborated, explaining that the apartment's vast underground parking lot was the perfect dark space for a nest. It had become the goblins' primary lair. His chilling estimate, a horde of at least a few thousand of them swarming below. Unless they could somehow eliminate that entire nest, reaching his grandmother was an impossible dream. Hearing this, a shocking realization hit Jian. Of course, the Supreme Recluse's ability only protects up to the 30th floor. That's how the goblins are getting in. They're coming through the underground parking garage, which my barrier doesn't cover. So that's why I haven't seen any. They've all been gathering in the basement. Dongjun's grim voice cut through his thoughts. "Every entrance to this building connects to that parking lot," he explained, "which is why we haven't dared to step foot outside." The air grew heavy with unspoken dread. After a moment of intense thought, Ji-hoon spoke up. "If I remember the blueprints correctly, there are smaller access roads and maintenance paths that act as shortcuts to the main garage." Dongjun nodded, confirming that was their original escape plan. "But something else blocked our path. A monster far more terrifying than any goblin. A creature even worse than thousands of goblins." A shiver of genuine fear ran down John's spine. Dongjun's face was pale as he recalled the memory. It looked like a twisted wolf, or maybe a bear. He described a beast with the sheer size of a bear, but the bloodthirsty ferocity of a rabid wolf. The memory flashed in his mind, the monster tearing through a swarm of goblins with ease. "The only reason we got away," he added, his voice trembling, "was because the beast was too busy slaughtering and devouring the goblins to notice us." This new information was a devastating blow. John's mind raced, trying to process the scale of this new threat. "We couldn't get a clear look in the darkness," Dongjun continued. "It was like a living shadow, a true shadow beast." Jan sighed. "We can't just hide here forever." But Dongjun, still shaken, reminded them, "We have our limits. If we didn't," he insisted, "we would have taken the fight to the goblins already." Intrigued, John pressed him, "What limits?" Ren, who had been quiet until now, answered for him. "Our weapons are about to give out. We're down to bows and baseballs. Eventually," she said grimly, "we'll have nothing left to shoot and nothing left to throw." But to John, this was a problem with a simple solution. A confident smile touched John's lips. "That's an issue I can solve for you." He then asked to see their remaining equipment. They presented him their worn-out gear. Without a word, John inspected the items and instantly registered a baseball into his system inventory. When he tried to add the bow, a system window popped up. A registration fee of 1,530,001 point was required for the high-quality compound bow. John didn't even hesitate. He confirmed the payment, and the bow vanished into his system storage. With an unlimited supply of both arrows and baseballs now available in his shop, John turned to the group. "So, how many of you actually know how to use a bow?" A heavy silence fell over the room. But before anyone could answer, Jae-hyun stepped up, his expression serious. He swiftly accessed his own system, purchasing 5 complete bow and arrow kits. In a flash of light, 5 brand new weapons materialized on the table. In his usual calm demeanor, Jae told them, "If you don't know how, now is the perfect time to learn." He began distributing the bows, urging them to get a feel for the weapons immediately. In that very moment, a system notification chimed in John's mind. The trust levels of several group members had risen. A flicker of surprise and satisfaction washed over him. As he looked around, he could see a new feeling spreading through the group hope. For the first time, they truly believed that with John on their side, they might actually have a chance to save Bongho's grandmother. Their faith in him was solidifying with every passing moment. Dongjin looked ecstatic, knowing these powerful new weapons would drastically increase their chances of survival. One of them pointed out that they wouldn't have to risk their lives just to retrieve arrows anymore. A wave of hope and excitement washed over the group. But then, Jae-hun's voice cut through the noise, his expression deadly serious. Before they could advance, he declared they had to thin out the goblin horde. Dongjun's tone turned just as grim as he asked when the hunt would begin. "Tomorrow," Jae-hun replied, his gaze unwavering. "And I give you my word, we will absolutely save Bongho's grandmother." The next morning, Jae-hun rallied his small determined crew. Hearing Jae-hun's promise once more, Bongho's face radiated with pure happiness. Dongjun, ever the pragmatist, asked how they would pull it off. With a confident smirk, Jae-hun announced they would use a bait strategy. He then began to lay out his plan, but as they listened, their hopeful expressions slowly melted away, replaced by pure tension. They all wondered the same thing: would Jae-hun's reckless plan lead to victory or their demise? Despite their deep concerns, they held on to the slim hope that it just might work. Suddenly, a system window materialized before Jae-hun, informing him that Bongho had completed the mission, earning a reward of 30,001. Jae-hun was startled by the notification, realizing the mission reward was deducted from his own account. He now understood as long as he had the funds, he could level up his people. From this moment on, he decided he wouldn't spend a single coin unless it was absolutely critical. Before he could dwell on it, another system window flashed, stating that Bongho's trust level had surged. It had now reached 50, unlocking his loyalty and fulfilling all the requirements to register him as a vassal. Jae-hun was stunned by this unexpected development. At that exact moment, a strange energy began to swirl around Bongho's body. Confused Bongho looked down at his hands, trying to understand the bizarre sensation coursing through him. A new system window appeared, announcing the vassal registration was a success. As a reward, Jae-hun had earned the ability to summon vassal. The ability allowed Jae-hun to summon his vassal directly to his home, but only 2 hours after the initial summoning. It was now official. Bongho was Jae-hun's first vassal, earning the title of first servant. Jae-hun also acquired a new power, a strength comparable to a gorilla's, and the very same ability was granted to Bongho. Another system notification appeared, explaining that any experience and gold earned by Bongho while hunting would now be doubled. Furthermore, Jae-hun could use the Supreme Recluse's Omniscient Eyes ability to summon his vassal up to 5 meters from his home. All this information was overwhelming. Just then, Jae-hun noticed a plus button on the system window and pressed it. A message appeared asking if he would like to spend 100,001 to increase his vassal's level. The astronomical price left Jae-hun speechless. He sat down, holding his head in frustration. Is this some kind of gotcha game? Seeing him like this, Bongho's wife approached and asked if anything was wrong. But Jae-hun just shook his head and told her it was nothing. From now on, he decided they would all call Bongho by his real name. Then Jae-hun asked Bongho how he was feeling. Bongho replied excitedly, his eyes wide, saying he felt strength overflowing in his body. He claimed he could even punch a hole straight through the wall. He paused for a moment before asking Jae-hun if he had done something to his body. Jae-hun simply nodded in confirmation. Yes, Bongho continued, saying he felt like he was 10 years younger, filled with a mysterious aura. Upon hearing this, Jae-hun was satisfied and smiled, handing a bow to Bongho. He said he wanted him to join the mission. Although Bongho accepted the bow, it was clear he was still deeply afraid. His hands trembled as he held it. Meanwhile, Jae-hun thought to himself, citizens gain 10% additional experience while vassals get double. This means that from now on, Bongho is going to become an even bigger monster. His progress will be unbelievable. Out loud, he told Bongho that he should kill as many monsters as he possibly could. Although Bongho was still terrified, on the verge of crying from fear, he agreed to the task. Jae-hun was genuinely happy with his decision. Smiling, he guaranteed him that he was counting on him. The mission finally began as the group started their inspection of the apartment building's first floor. As they moved with extreme caution, Daku commented to Dongjun that checking the first floor seemed pointless since the windows were shattered and the place was a wreck. He suggested there was no way any survivors could be here. However, Dongjun disagreed, insisting they had to check every corner. He reminded the group of Jae-hun's instructions, stating firmly that they were a rescue team and had to save as many people as possible. He explained that their main mission assigned by Jae-hun was to rescue any survivors in the building and escort them safely to the 30th floor. Stopping for a moment, Dongjun addressed the entire group, explaining the core of their dangerous strategy. They needed to lure a massive number of goblins into the building and then completely eliminate them. For this plan to work, he declared, we need to find as many survivors as we can. Is that understood? With their resolve solidified, Dongjian's spirit soars. Nearby, Deokshu grips his iron club, completely prepared for a monster-smashing spree. Dongjun lays out the plan. They start with room 101. He orders everyone to stay sharp. A goblin ambush could happen at any second. As the group reaches units 101 and 102, a stomach-churning stench of death assaults them. Inside, gruesome crimson stains mar every surface. It was the scene of a desperate struggle and a brutal end. They discover a scene straight out of a nightmare. Mutilated bodies litter the floor windows, are shattered, and blood is splattered across the walls. Some victims were torn in two, and the women lay violated a final depraved act by the goblins before they were killed. This horrifying carnage is too much for the women on the team to bear, and they immediately vomit. The shell-shocked group looks to Dong-in, who despite his own despair, forces them to press on. They clear the entire first floor, but find no one left alive, crushing their spirits. Stealing their nerves, Dong-jin leads the grim procession to the second floor. However, the second floor is no different. Just like the floor below, it's a hellscape of corpses, blood, and chaos shaking the team to its core. But their determination holds firm. They decide to push onward to the third floor. Reaching their destination, Dong-jian pounds on a door, shouting to see if anyone is inside. Hope flickers as they knock on every single door, but only silence answers back. Dong's morale begins to fracture with every unanswered knock, but he pushes onward, deciding to check the fourth floor of the basement. The group descends to the fourth floor. Dongjun pounds on another door, his voice laced with desperation, asking if anyone is alive. He's on the verge of giving up, desperately praying for just a single sign of life. But this time, to their absolute shock, a voice responds. A man cracks the door open, his eyes wide with caution, asking if they are truly a rescue team. Seeing a survivor, a wave of pure relief washes over Dongjun. He quickly assures the man they are there to save anyone who's left. The man, exhausted but deeply suspicious, demands water. When the group hands him a bottle, the man is completely stunned. He was convinced they were just more intruders coming to kill him or steal his precious resources. Despite his fear, Dongjian tries to calm him, promising they are there to help. Dongjian explains that they're all residents of this same building, neighbors trying to rescue other survivors. He invites the man to join their safe zone. The man, his skepticism slowly fading, opens the door wider, revealing two more people huddled inside. He apologizes for his paranoia, introduces himself as Hong Jong-soo, and finally agrees to go with them. Dongjun is ecstatic, vigorously shaking Yongsoo's hand as he introduces himself in return. He immediately assigns two teammates to escort the family to the 30th floor, ordering them to return quickly to continue the search. But hearing about the 30th floor, Jung-soo becomes agitated, exclaiming that they have no intention of leaving the apartment building. Just then, Young-soo's youngest son cuts in, telling his father he knew someone would come to save them. The boy is surprisingly calm. He speculates that they must have a helicopter waiting on the 30th floor, a fantasy clearly born from watching too many zombie apocalypse films. Ren gently clarifies that's not quite the plan, but if they come with them, they'll have hot food and a bath. The moment he mentions a bath, Young-soo's daughter's eyes light up with excitement. She begs her father, telling him they should trust the team and stop worrying. Faced with his children's hope, Young-gu finally agrees to join them. One after another, more survivors emerge from the darkness, drawn to the rescue team's growing numbers. As they do, John receives a system notification. It informs him his citizen count has hit 40, and the experience and gold earned by them has surged by 90%. The scene shifts, where we find John deciding to shelter the children and elderly inside the chubby guy's home, while the others take refuge in the hallways. Dongjian finds John and reports that they were only able to rescue 40 people in total. John asks Dongjian if that's truly all that's left in the entire building. Dongjian's expression turns grim, explaining that anyone who dared to leave their rooms was brutally slaughtered. He adds that they searched all the way to the 29th floor, but it seems most residents were too terrified to even open their doors. John is satisfied with their efforts, even though he knows the chubby guy's house is already at capacity. For now, this number would be enough. Activating his Supreme Recluse's omniscient eyes, John begins to observe what each person is doing. He first spots Bongho lifting a chair. He then sees the chubby guy and others hauling a massive water jug, with the women working right alongside them. Finally, his gaze lands on Dongjun, diligently completing his tasks. The preparations John ordered were almost complete. A small smirk plays on John's lips as he tells Dongjian they are now ready for the second phase of their goblin hunt. Dongjian gathers the fighters and details their next mission to lure out the goblins lurking in the underground levels. He explains they'll start with basement level 1. The group will divide into 2 teams to bait the goblins on B1 and then wipe them out. After that, they will descend and clear out the goblins on B2. The man in glasses asks nervously, "But what if there are more of them than we can handle? But wouldn't they be trapped and isolated on the first floor? What if something goes wrong while they're moving the goblin corpses?" Before Donian can even respond, Ren raises her bow, her voice ringing with confidence. She declares she'll slaughter every last goblin, preventing any such thing. She looks at the bespectacled boy, reassuring him that as his Nuna, she'll keep everyone perfectly safe. Dongjin backs her up, adding that this time they're swimming in arrows. His unshakable confidence is enough to convince the worried party member. The plan is a go. But suddenly, a chilling noise cuts through the air. In a split second, everyone's on high alert, spinning around to face 3 goblins that appeared from nowhere. Without a moment's hesitation, Ren's bow sings, and 2 goblins collapse with arrows in their skulls. Dongjin follows up instantly, his club smashing the final goblin's head like a ripe watermelon. Just like that, the threat is neutralized. The bespectacled guy then teases Dongjin, asking why he bothered with a bow when he just defaults to his club. Didn't he insist he needed one? Dongjin just shrugs, saying the club feels more natural. He does admit, however, that he feels a bit stronger now, having no idea it's all thanks to Jaewon's upgraded weapon. Before he can continue, a woman shouts, pointing at the dead goblins. To everyone's astonishment, the bodies are dissolving into particles of light Jaewon was collecting his spoils. Byung-ho stares in utter shock, wondering if this is yet another one of Jaewon's unbelievable abilities. Ignoring the spectacle, Dongjin gives the order. They're heading for the first basement level. As they move out, Byung-ho's faith in Jaewon solidifies into absolute certainty. He truly believes this man can save his grandmother. At the same time, a system window flashes before Jaewon. The group's trust in him has increased. Taking a sip of water, Jaewon reads the notification, thinking to himself that he's unintentionally become their guardian, like a dependable older brother. And at that very moment, another system message appears. Byung-ho's trust level has just hit 50. He has fulfilled the requirements to become a vassal. Jaewon is stunned. He never imagined Byung-ho's trust would skyrocket so quickly. It clicks. Byung-ho's desperation to save his grandmother has fueled this powerful bond. Jaewon immediately grasps the potential. The more vassals he acquires, the faster they will all grow. He checks Byung-ho's loyalty, and his eyes widen in disbelief. It's at 88, a bond even stronger than that between a mother and her own son. Composing himself, Jaewon realizes this is a golden opportunity. He confirms Byung-ho as his first vassal. Internally, he makes a solemn vow to pour everything he has into saving Byung-ho's grandmother. The moment Jaewon confirms it, Byung-ho's body erupts in a brilliant pillar of light. Completely bewildered, Byung-ho has no idea what's happening. The intense flash of light terrifies everyone, even causing the nearby goblins to instinctively fall back. Dongjin nervously shouts that he doesn't know what's going on and orders a full retreat. The goblins, temporarily blinded by the light, are thrown into chaos. Seizing their chance, the group makes a break for it. As they run, Dongjin and Ren fire arrows behind them, each one finding its mark, piercing a goblin's forehead and killing it instantly. Ren's face is a mask of concentration, as she unleashes a volley of arrows, felling multiple goblins in a single shot. But it's not enough. For everyone they kill, more swarm forward, their numbers seemingly endless. Seeing the new wave, Byung-ho panics, screaming that the goblins from the second basement level must have come up. This was never part of the plan. It seems the creatures can communicate over vast distances. The group finally reaches the exit gate, a sliver of hope. Dongjin slams it shut, but several goblin hands shoot through the gap, holding it open. The others rush to help, but their combined strength is barely enough. On the other side, a sea of goblins pushes back with monstrous force. There are simply too many. Just as the gate is about to burst open, everyone throws their weight against the door, but it's a losing battle. A single goblin, fueled by brute strength, holds the line, allowing its brethren to pile up, increasing the pressure exponentially. In this desperate moment, the chubby party member roars, activating his gorilla strength ability and holding the gate shut all by himself, veins popping on his forehead. He screams internally that he has to hold them here. He must not fail. Dongjin yells that the path is clear, urging him to fall back with them. The chubby guy tries to disengage, but it's too late. The goblins shatter the gate, sending him flying to the ground. He looks up in desperation, telling Dongjin to go on without him. Dongjin freezes, paralyzed by indecision. But Dongjin doesn't hesitate for a second, charging forward and smashing a goblin's skull before trying to drag the fallen man to safety. It's no use. A goblin latches onto the chubby guy's leg, its grip like a vice. Just then, a different kind of goblin appears. Its eyes gleam with a sickening hunger, not for battle but for flesh, as it stares at what it sees as a juicy, plump meal. But just as the goblins were about to pounce, the chubby kid vanished without a trace. Deoksu froze his mind, reeling in shock. What just happened? But the goblins gave him no time to think, turning their hungry eyes on him. A goblin lunged forward, but Deoksu met it with his club, sending the creature flying back into the horde. He immediately broke into a desperate sprint toward his teammates, weaving through the swarm of goblin attacks. Arrows rained down from his allies, providing crucial cover. The volley created just enough space for Deoksu to break through. The group fell back, fighting a desperate retreat against the endless tide of monsters. Under the cold moonlight, the building fell eerily silent. But in the darkness of the basement, a true beast was feasting. It devoured the goblins one by one, tearing them apart, crushing their bones like twigs, and chewing them down like candy. After annihilating every last one, its burning gaze turned toward the building above. A single overriding thought consumed it: kill everyone inside. It was driven by a ravenous hunger, a need for more prey to consume and evolve. Elsewhere, the chubby guy reappeared, crashing hard onto the floor. He was certain his life was over. He'd been sure the goblins would have him for dinner. But now, he was utterly lost. He had no idea where he was. Just then, John stood before him, asking with a calm voice if he was all right. The boy was terrified and confused, but John offered a reassuring smile and helped him to his feet. Jae-hain felt a wave of relief. Making the boy his vassal was the right call, allowing for this life-saving summon. But his new vassal's leg was a mess. Blood poured from a nasty gash left by a goblin's claw. The boy couldn't make sense of any of it. Before he could even ask, John's eyes fixed on the deep wound on his leg. The kid tried to brush it off, saying it was nothing and would heal. But John could see he couldn't even put weight on it. This was serious. Jae-han told him to stay put and bolted for his room, returning moments later with a first aid kit. He recalled his mother's lessons, how she'd taught him to handle emergencies just like this. John possessed a near infinite supply of antiseptic pills and other medical gear. He had access to practically any medical resource he could imagine. However, his Supreme Recluse inventory was limited to only 40 slots. He couldn't carry it all at once. He had to be strategic. After a moment's thought, a brilliant idea sparked. He packed all the necessary supplies into the first aid kit, and then placed the entire kit into a single inventory slot. The possibilities were staggering. Jae-han began to wonder, if he stored an entire room of medicine or a crate of supplies, could he duplicate them too? This single thought had the power to change everything. His preparations complete, Jae-han returned to the injured boy. He opened the kit and told him to show him the wound. The boy reluctantly lifted his pant leg, revealing blood gushing from the deep cut. As Jae-han cleaned the wound, he delivered a grave warning. This was no simple scratch. If it got infected, he could lose the entire leg. The chubby kid gritted his teeth, wincing, as Jae-han skillfully treated the injury. In that moment, a system window appeared. The vassal's trust stat had increased dramatically. Finally, Jae-han finished bandaging the leg. He ordered the boy to go to his room and get some rest. Still in pain, but filled with gratitude, he quickly obeyed. Afterwards, Jae-han closed his eyes, activating the omniscient eyes of the Supreme Recluse. His vision flew to the basement, where Ren was relentlessly taking down goblins with her bow. Each shot was precise, a dance of death eliminating monster after monster. The hunt was far from over. Deoshu was on a rampage, smashing goblins with his club like a madman. They were fighting in a retreat, killing what they could before racing up the stairs. A moment earlier, after the chubby kid vanished, Deoksu had scrambled upstairs like his life depended on it. From the rear, the rest of the group fired arrows into the horde with desperate precision. Suddenly, 2 goblins leaped in front of Deoksu, ready to tear him limb from limb. But out of nowhere, Bongho went berserk. He swung his club with the force of a hurricane, and in one devastating blow, he shattered both the goblins' skulls. But he didn't stop there. He leaped forward, landing right beside Deoksu, and began obliterating the goblins around them. It was as if the strength of 10 elephants was coursing through his veins. Everyone just stared in disbelief. When did Bongho get so overwhelmingly strong? Thanks to becoming Jae-han's vassal, the guy was experiencing a massive power surge. Jae-han watched the scene unfold, a sense of relief washing over him. For now, they were safe. He took a moment to check Bongho's status window. The man was now level 30. His trust was at 55 and his loyalty at a staggering 88. And his newly awakened skill was teleportation, an unbelievable game-changing A-rank skill. The man could instantly move to any location within his line of sight, and he could even bring others with him. Jae-han smiled like a proud mentor. Making Bongho my vassal, he thought, was the best decision I've ever made. Meanwhile, Bongho continued his rampage, destroying every goblin in his path. Amidst the chaos, Daku glances at the pale-faced John, the spectacled boy who looks ready to collapse. He asks if John can still fight. With a steely gaze, John agrees. The group braces for the next wave. Daku shouts to Ren, asking if the water tank is in position. Ren confirms, just as Bongho dashes up the stairs, dragging a goblin army behind him. Byongo leaps to the top of the landing. That's the signal. The team unleashes the massive water tank onto the horde below. A torrent of water soaks the goblins, but it's not nearly enough to stop their advance. That's when Dongjin springs the real trap. He jams an extension cord into a live outlet. Wires hidden on the stairs spark to life, electrifying the water. The low-level goblins, the level 6s and 7s, are instantly fried to a crisp. But the level 10 goblins, those monsters are still standing. A system notification appears. June has gained a huge amount of EXP and a hefty 34 Valfor. It's all instantly deposited into his Supreme wallet. John smirks as he levels up his skills, becoming even more broken. But then, something goes horribly wrong. A strange, agonizing pain erupts inside his body. His heart pounds like a war drum. His entire body feels like it has been set on fire. Suddenly, a shimmering purple shield explodes into existence around him. It expands rapidly, consuming the floor, and even reaching the basement. Every high-level goblin caught in its radius is frozen solid. A system message flashes. Hostile presence detected inside your domain. A wicked smile spreads across John's face. It's time to show these pests who's really in charge. With a single command, the goblins inside the shield detonate like blood-filled balloons. Gore splatters everywhere, painting the walls in a gruesome masterpiece. Hundreds of goblins are annihilated instantly. On another floor, a goblin squad prepares to advance, totally oblivious to their impending doom. Suddenly, a fat goblin senses a terrifying presence right behind it. When it turns around, it's met with the sight of a colossal beast staring it down. Before the goblin can even blink, the beast's jaws crush its fleshy body, killing it instantly and savagely devouring it like a midnight snack. Watching this bloody spectacle, the other goblins are paralyzed with fear. But before they can react, the beast charges, cutting through them, like a demonic lawnmower, tearing them to shreds with its massive claws. Some foolish goblins attempt an attack from behind. They land a few pathetic blows, but the beast doesn't even flinch, swatting them away like common trash. Some goblins, driven by sheer stupidity, climb onto the beast, biting and tearing at its flesh. The beast lets out a roar of pure rage as they chew on its face and rip at its body. The pain is immense, but the beast seems to welcome it. With an earth-shattering roar, the beast grabs every goblin clinging to it and rips them limb from limb. Pieces of goblins rain down in a shower of blood. The beast stomps on the remaining bodies, crushing them into a disgusting bloody paste. The goblin horde has been utterly exterminated. But then, out of nowhere, a system notification appears. The beast has been granted citizenship. Suddenly, the creature begins to shrink. Its huge, blood-soaked form seems to deflate as it undergoes a holy transformation. In a few moments, the beast is gone, and in its place stands a stunning woman. Naked as the day she was born, but covered in blood, she faints, collapsing unconscious on the floor. Ji-hyun, witnessing all of this through his supreme recluse's omniscient eye, is completely stunned. He mutters, "What in the world was that?" A system window appears, dropping another bombshell. The girl's name is Oh Yeonju, and her skill is called Dress Up Bear. Another notification explains that Dress Up Bear allows its user to transform into a rampaging monster, maximizing all physical and regeneration abilities. John is deeply impressed. This girl is level 33 with a rank A skill. Then more notifications flood in. Dongjun and Haeren's trust has reached 50, unlocking their loyalty. And Deoksu's loyalty has surpassed 30, fulfilling the requirements to become a vassal. John smiles and commands the system to register Deoksu. Boom! Another powerful vassal is added to his team. Daku gains the skill Iron Knight, and a system notification explains this allows the user to summon a deadly halberd and a full suit of iron armor. Jae-han suddenly understands something crucial. The higher his vassals' levels, the more powerful their awakened abilities become. He begins analyzing his vassals one by one. The chubby guy with gorilla-like strength has a rank C skill and is level 20. Deoksu, who now has the rank B Iron Knight skill, is level 25. Bayonho, with his rank A teleportation skill, is at level 30. John thinks more deeply. From the moment they were registered, it seems their levels were decided based on the rank of their awakened abilities. However, one question plagues his mind. Are the skill ranks chosen completely at random? He reconsiders. If Bongho earned a rank A skill that corresponded to his loyalty, then why did the chubby guy with higher loyalty only get a rank C skill? After all, Daku obtained a rank B skill with a loyalty value of only 31. Confused, he delves deeper into his thoughts. He needed to understand the factors that awakened higher rank abilities. This knowledge was critical, especially with a strict limit of only 10 vassals. Choosing someone with the potential for a legendary skill was the only logical move. Jae-hun muttered to himself, realizing the immense risk of registering a metahuman he knew nothing about. Just then, his thoughts were shattered by a system notification. The system announced that the metahuman could now freely traverse the entire floor. Taking this into account, Jae-hun headed for the elevator, activating his Supreme Recluse's omniscient eyes to observe the girl. She remained unconscious on the cold floor. Jae-hun summoned the chubby guy, who appeared instantly as the elevator doors slid open. He gave a simple order: find the girl on basement level 2 and bring her to him immediately. Meanwhile, his teammates were restraining the goblin survivors, completely bewildered by the sudden chaos. It was obvious all the goblins had been fleeing from something terrifying. Dongjian was especially shaken, realizing he had gravely underestimated the sheer destructive power he had just witnessed. He was reeling, unable to comprehend how Jae-hun had annihilated the goblins with a mere snap of his fingers. Dongjian's mind raced, recalling the chubby guy boasting about Jae-hun's godlike abilities, even the simple miracle of hot water. As the pieces clicked into place, he knew this too was a product of Jae-hun's terrifying power. He even remembered the chubby guy's wife mentioning their food was all provided by Jae-hun. Lost in thought, Dongjian came to a chilling conclusion. It's all connected to his abilities. Dongjian couldn't help but wonder why a being so powerful, he needed no one, would still choose to save everyone in this broken world. His faith in Jae-hun deepened beyond measure. Thinking of Byung-ho, Dongjian noted, Byung-ho was always withdrawn, but after meeting Jae-hun, he transformed even for a moment into a psychotic warrior. As he gathered the bindings, a single thought consumed Dongjian's mind. Jae-hun is a being of frightening power. His abilities are to be feared. Elsewhere, the chubby guy raced towards basement level 2, on a mission to rescue the mysterious woman. Dongjian's thoughts continued, reflecting on how incredibly fortunate they were to have been chosen by him. Meanwhile, Jae-hun, using his Supreme Recluse's omniscient eye, watched everything unfold, ever vigilant, and already calculating his next move. The scene then shifts, dissolving into a memory. A small, precious child plays with his toy car. He turns around, his face alight with pure joy, calling for his mom to come and play with him. And there she is, the same woman from before now, human. She plays with her son, her expression full of love as the boy waves happily. But this perfect moment was destined to be short-lived. The color suddenly drained from her face as she saw something horrific. A blood-curdling scream escaped her lips. Her son, still smiling, didn't see the nightmare looming just behind him. 3 ravenous goblins drooling with hunger, ready to devour him whole. A primal instinct to protect her child surged through her. She sprinted with all her might, but it was already too late. The goblins, driven by insatiable greed, showed no mercy. In a flash, they ripped the child to shreds right before her very eyes. Witnessing the brutal end of her son shattered her soul into a million pieces. The horrifying nightmare jolted her awake. The woman Yeonju sat up, drenched in a cold sweat. She let out a terrified scream, her chest heaving with panic. Seated nearby, Jae-hun greeted her with unnerving calm. Jae-hun watched her for a moment before asking how she felt. Yeonju, still dazed, clutched her head trying to make sense of her surroundings. Meanwhile, Jae-hun extended a hand in greeting, introducing himself and saying it was a pleasure to finally meet her. But Yeonju was filled with suspicion. She ignored his hand and asked a single sharp question. Was he the one responsible for what happened earlier? She pressed on her voice, shaking, demanding to know if he was the one who made the goblins' heads pop like balloons. It was true. While Yeonju lay unconscious, Jae-hun had unleashed his domain, slaughtering the goblins instantly. As Jae-hun tried to offer his hand once more, Yeonju flinched away, her voice trembling with accusation. She now knew for certain. It was him, and this confirmation only deepened her suspicion and fear. Her terror of Jae-hun grew faced with the undeniable reality of his immense, terrifying power. He could wipe out an entire horde of goblins in a single moment like crushing ants beneath his boot. And Yeonju's thoughts turned dark. She began to wonder, if she'd had that kind of strength, could she have saved her son? Crushed by sorrow, she began to tremble and weep. She cursed her own useless power, lamenting that it had awakened far too late. If only she'd had it sooner, her son might still be alive. Through a flood of tears, Yeonju called out to Jae-hun, her voice choked with devastation. Caught completely off guard, John just stares. Yeonju's voice, trembling with desperation and sorrow, breaks the silence. Can you save my son? Deep down, she knows it's hopeless. But she begs him to unleash his wrath to avenge her child, by killing every last goblin on Earth. In that moment, a new goblin slayer is forged in the fires of grief. Yeonju collapses onto the bed, her body racked with sobs. John stands by, a silent witness to her crushing despair. The room echoes with the sound of her heartbreak. He can only wonder at the depths of her tragedy. As a recluse, he's never been good with people. He has absolutely no idea how to comfort a grieving mother. But as she wept, a system notification popped up. Yeonju's trust in him had skyrocketed. Her cries continued whispering about how much she missed her little boy. Seeing her in so much pain, John felt utterly helpless. He knew the horrifying truth, that the goblins had devoured her child. Jihan searched for a solution, anything he could do. And then a crazy idea sparked. What if he created a quest? A quest with a reward that could bring her son back. He knew it sounded impossible, a fool's hope. But he had to try. Jihan began crafting a new mission just for Yeonju. The quest objective: kill 1,000 goblins. The reward: her son's revival. Doing nothing was not an option. He had to take this shot. John sent a silent prayer, hoping the system would accept it. He knew bringing back the dead was impossible. But in this messed, up-world, anything could happen. However, the moment he assigned the quest, the system hit him with a devastating message. It told Jihan he lacked the funds for a resurrection class reward. And that single notification changed his entire world. If he could just earn enough, he could bring anyone back from the dead. A tremor ran through his entire body. This wasn't just a game anymore. In that instant, Jihan realized the true scope of his power. He was the system. He had the potential to become the god of this new world. But to make that dream a reality, he needed a ridiculous amount of money. The only problem, the system didn't say how much. But even with that uncertainty looming, John refused to give up. Yeonju was still lost in her sorrow when John called her name. He told her there might actually be a way to revive her son. Hearing those words, Yeonju froze. It felt like a bullet had pierced her heart. A storm of shock and renewed grief washed over her. But a dark thought emerged. What if he was mocking her? If this is some cruel joke, she warned. I will never, ever forgive you. John quickly reassured her it was real. There is a way, he said, but it's going to be incredibly difficult. That was all she needed to hear. Hope ignited in her eyes. She pleaded, saying she'd do anything. Warm his bed, become his slave, anything. John immediately cut her off. None of that was necessary. All she had to do was follow his plan, which he'd explain soon enough. The scene shifts, and John is introducing Yeonju to Dongjun. Dongjun offers a warm greeting and a firm handshake. Yeonju introduces herself, but her expression remains dead serious. She asks Dongjun a single pointed question. Are you the one who smashes goblins with a baseball bat? And is she pointing to Ren, the one who uses a bow? Dongjun and Ren are completely stunned by her accuracy. Who was this woman? How could she possibly know their fighting styles? Ren asks if they've met before. Yeonju's serious demeanor suddenly melts away. She playfully makes a bear paw with her hand, acting cute. You must have, she chirps. She leans in with a wink. You really don't recognize me. Dongjun, Ren, and Deok-soo just stare back in total confusion. What on earth was this woman talking about? With a confident smirk, Yeonju decides to show them. She activates her beast transformation. Slowly, fur begins to sprout all over her body. A deep, threatening aura explodes from her. In seconds, her entire form is covered in thick, dark fur. The moment the transformation is complete, Ren finally gets it and lets out a gasp. Yeonju now stands nearly 3 meters tall, a terrifying beast ready to tear apart anything in its way. It finally clicks for everyone. This was the very same beast that had cornered them in the basement slaughtering goblins in a frenzy. Seeing the pure shock on their faces, Yeonju lets out a throaty laugh. The situation strikes her as hilarious. She puts a massive clawed hand to her face. To be precise, she rumbles, I'm a bear, not just some random beast. She promises them she's not an enemy. In fact, she had saved their lives in the basement multiple times. But they were too busy panicking to even notice. Instead, they assumed she was another monster trying to kill them. Finally, the truth dawns on Deoku and Dongjun. The beast had never once moved against them. It was only ever killing the goblins that were about to end them. Dongjun approaches her, his face lit with excitement. So, that encounter, it wasn't a coincidence. Yeonju grins a feral but friendly expression. The goblins are my sworn enemy. I will wipe every single one of them from this world. She declares that any enemy of the goblins is a friend of hers, marking the arrival of a powerful new ally. As the group celebrates this new bond, John emerges from the background. He smiles, glad that everyone is finally acquainted. But then his expression turns deadly serious. He had something important to announce. Time is running out, he tells them. The plan to rescue Bungo's grandmother must begin by dawn. With the goblin forces decimated, this is the perfect moment for them to strike. John then delivers some grim news. His own devastating injury will keep him off the front lines. In his place, Ms. Yeonju will fight alongside Daku's in Dongjin's unit. The title Goblin Hunter brings a brilliant spark to Yeonju's eyes. With a final command, John orders them all to rest. Their critical mission starts the very next morning. As the team breaks apart for the night, John pulls Deku and Byung-ho aside for a private talk. The scene shifts, John leading them into a small, secluded room. Do you have any idea why I brought you here? The two of them look completely lost. Jaehyun asks again, his face dead serious. While Daku is clueless, a sliver of suspicion crosses Byung-ho's mind. He takes a risk, asking, Did you call us here to talk about our abilities? A wicked smirk spreads across Jaehyun's face. You catch on quick. Both of them have finally unlocked their awakened powers. The two stand there absolutely stunned by the revelation. Jaehyun turns to Bungo. Your awakened ability is called teleportation. The moment he hears that word, a massive grin lights up Byung-ho's face. Jaehyun then informs Daku, and yours is called Iron Knight. Daku is baffled. Iron Knight. What could that possibly mean? Will he be able to summon a warrior from thin air? With a grave expression, Jaehyun announces their training begins now. They must master these skills to succeed. And so John opens his system window, creating a brand new quest just for them. Their mission to discover their awakened abilities. They must activate their powers for the very first time. The time limit is a tense 1 hour. Their reward is a surge in strength, but the punishment for failure is sleeping in the cold outdoors. John prepares to assign the quest. Just then, a super excited Deoksu interrupts. Wait, does this mean Daku has powers now? Will he be able to use them just like Dongjin? John gives a simple confirming nod. At this, Daku's excitement boils over. He leaps into the air like a child shouting, I can't wait to use Iron Knight. It sounds so incredibly cool. Following that outburst, John explains that the Iron Knight ability allows him to summon iron armor and a fearsome hell halberd. As Deoksu listens intently about to ask a question, in a blink of an eye, something impossible happens. Byung-ho vanishes in a flash of displaced air. Seeing this, Deoksu is frozen in shock. For a tense moment, there is only stunned silence. A heartbeat later, Byung-ho reappears, teleporting back into existence a short distance away. Bungo looks at his own hands in disbelief, overjoyed. He can't believe it. He just thought about moving, and he did. He clenches his fists tightly, hope blazing in his eyes. With this power, he whispers, I can definitely save my grandma. On the other side of the room, a notification alerts Jaehyun that Byung-ho's trust in him has skyrocketed. The very next moment, Byung-ho bows his head deeply, his voice filled with pure gratitude. He thanks John from the bottom of his heart, vowing, From today on, I will believe in you. Whatever you say, I will do it. For Byung-ho, this power means he can finally save his grandma. But Jaehyun warns him not to get his hopes up just yet, because reaching her house will be incredibly difficult. Hearing this, Byung-ho's hopeful expression immediately crumbles into disappointment. But I have teleportation now, he argues. I can just appear right inside her house. But Jaehyun shakes his head. There's no guarantee Bungo has that level of control over his new ability. Right now, Byung-ho has no idea how far he can teleport, or for how long he can sustain it. He must master this power first. What if something goes wrong during the teleport? What if Bungo gets stuck midway, or falls unconscious right into a pack of goblins? The grim reality of the situation sinks in. Bungo is disappointed, but he understands John's logic is flawless. he would have to wait a bit longer. But while they were talking, a powerful flash of light suddenly erupts from behind them. The blinding energy makes both of them flinch back, completely startled. As Jae-hyun and Bungo turn around, they are faced with a colossal figure wielding a massive, dangerous-looking iron axe. This is none other than our Deoksu. Daku has summoned his Iron Knight. His body is now covered in thick, powerful, and enchanted armor. In his hands, he holds the enormous iron axe. Seeing such an awesome armor and weapon, Daku's trust in John soars. The system pings. Jae-hyun sees that Daku's trust and loyalty have increased dramatically. Daku begins to dance with joy. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun turns to Byung-ho, giving him his first real test. Teleport to the building next door. If you can make it over there easily, he says, it will mean you're truly starting to master your power. Byung-ho's eyes were fixed on the building across the way, a silent challenge. With unwavering resolve, he prepared to leap across space itself. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun issued a new quest for Byung-ho. The objective: teleport to the adjacent building. The time limit: a heart-pounding 3 minutes. The prize: a boost in teleportation proficiency. Byung-ho focused his mind as Deoksu's words of encouragement bolstered his spirit from behind. His expression turned deadly serious. He pictured his destination, and in a flash of displaced air, he vanished. A moment later, he reappeared standing victorious inside the target building. From the window across the way, Byung-ho grinned, raising a triumphant hand to Jae-hyun. A proud smile spread across Jae-hyun's face. Byung-ho had just conquered a long-distance teleport. The two exchanged cheerful waves celebrating the success. But in that moment of triumph, darkness swamped Byung-ho's vision. His body went limp, and he crumpled to the floor unconscious. Panic flared in Deoksu and Jae-hyun's eyes. What in the world just happened to him? Without a second's hesitation, Jae-hyun activated his ability. He instantly summoned Byung-ho's unconscious form back to their side and laid him down gently. Jae-hyun immediately scanned Byung-ho's status window. Health stable, condition simple mana exhaustion. He was merely asleep. So that was it. His mana reserves had been completely depleted, or he had pushed far beyond the safe limit of his teleportation range. Attempting a jump that far had consumed every last drop of his energy, forcing a system shutdown. Jae-hyun quickly reassured Deoksu that he was completely fine. After a little rest, Byung-ho would be back on his feet. With that crisis averted, Jae-hyun's gaze landed on Deoksu. Hey, you enjoy working out? The question hung in the air, catching Deoksu completely off guard. Why was he asking about exercise now? A moment later, a new quest window materialized before him. The legendary One Punch Man training regimen. Jae-hyun had created a brutal new mission. 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and a 10-meter dash, all within 10 minutes. The reward was a permanent increase in strength. The penalty for failure: sleeping outdoors. And the cruelest twist he had, to do it all while wearing his full armor. Deoksu didn't even blink. He immediately dropped to the ground and began the grueling challenge. Even weighed down by the heavy armor, he blazed through the push-ups and squats, panting heavily. Jae-hyun watched from behind, amazed at how easily he was clearing the tasks. It had to be his athletic background. Deoksu was already a natural sportsman. That explained his incredible endurance. As Jae-hyun considered this, a new system window popped up. Evaluation process initiated. Jae-hyun frowned. An evaluation. This was a new one. He had never seen a notification like this before. While he was lost in the thought Deoksu already finished, spoke up. Is there another task, any other mission for me? No, that's all for today, Jae-hyun replied. You can go. With a grateful nod, Deoksu thanked him and took his leave. Just then, another system message pinged. Evaluation complete. Because Vassal Deoksu's strength increased from the task, the Sovereign's strength would now also receive a slight boost. Jae-hyun's eyes widened in utter shock. He could literally feel new power flowing into him, his body growing stronger in real time. This information was a complete game changer. It meant that as his vassals trained and became stronger, he would grow stronger right alongside them. This single revelation changed everything. Later, under the cloak of night, Byung-ho and his entire group were in a desperate retreat. A ravenous horde of goblins swarmed right at their heels. Deoksu instantly summoned his Iron Knight, becoming a stalwart defender. He became a wall of steel against the monstrous tide, his sword flashing, as he cut down goblin after goblin. But he was just one man. How could he possibly stop them all alone? Goblins began to slip past his flanks, swarming towards the vulnerable party behind him. But from the rear, Byung-ho was ready. He raised his bow, and his arrows sang through the air, felling every creature that broke through the front line. Seeing their comrades slaughtered by these two formidable warriors, terror finally gripped the remaining goblins, and they turned to flee. But their escape was cut short by a colossal shadow that loomed over them. The goblins froze their eyes wide with a primal fear that brought tears to their eyes. Because the shadow belonged to the horrifying and massive bear mummy. Before a single shriek could escape their lips, the monster struck, tearing the goblins in two. At the same time, Byung-ho's party moved in to mop up the rest. We'll hold them off, his companions shouted. We'll kill them all and stop them here. Go, Byung-ho, go to your grandma and save her. Trusting his team completely, he broke away from the fight, racing toward his true objective. Meanwhile, back at his base, Jae-hun was calmly enjoying a bowl of instant ramen. As he slurped his noodles, a system alert chimed in his mind. Your citizens have completed the mission. A reward of 132,961 sat was deposited. Jae-hun blinked in surprise. This was the first time his citizens had earned him actual currency. A thought clicked in his mind. When Deok-soo completed his mission, Jae-hun's strength had increased. But when other citizens completed their mission, he received money. A theory began to form. The rewards he gained from his vassals' quests were completely random. Notifications began to flood Jae-hun's system. One by one, citizens reported their missions complete. Byeonjo's success was also confirmed. Now, the system began calculating the rewards for everyone. After a tense wait, a new notification flashed before Jean. He hadn't just won, he had hit the jackpot. The reward appeared on his screen, and the ramen he was eating got lodged in his throat. Jan's jaw dropped in utter disbelief. The prize was something entirely new, a feature called skill points. Jan's eyebrow shot up. Seriously, skill points were now on the table. At this point, what could possibly surprise him next? Even if the system announced it was pregnant tomorrow, he wouldn't even flinch. The scene shifts, and we find Bungo materializing near his home. His face was a mask of grim determination, laced with gut-wrenching anxiety. His eyes were locked onto the building, each step toward the door, feeling heavier than the last, his mind racing with 1,000 fears. All he could do was pray desperately, hoping his grandmother was safe. A moment later, he summoned every last shred of courage and bolted inside, screaming his grandma's name as he sprinted toward her room. Yet, even in his panic, he remembered to take off his shoes. You just have to love this guy. But back to the story. He burst into the room, and his eyes widened in horror. She was alive, but collapsed on the floor, looking unconscious and painfully frail. Pure panic gripped Byunho as he scrambled to her side. Miraculously, his desperate cries reached her. Her eyes fluttered open, and with a weak, trembling hand, she reached for him instantly, knowing it was Byunho. The relief hit Byunho like a physical blow, shaking his very core. Tears began to stream down his face like a sudden downpour. On that day, he let it all out sobbing, with the raw emotion of a child. She was the only family he had left, and he clung to her, his tears turning to ones of overwhelming joy. He wept for a long, long time, thanking John over and over in his mind, elevating Jae-hun to the status of a deity. For Bongo Jun was now the supreme god of this ruined world. Meanwhile, the scene cuts back to Jae-hun, who was staring intently at his own system window. A cheerful notification popped up. Byunho's trust had maxed out at 100%. Now Byunho would kill for him, or do anything he commanded without question. This absolute loyalty unlocked another regeneration slot for his vassals. Jun now commanded a total of 11 vassal slots and had gained a brand new system ability. He could now level up his vassals directly, just like characters in a video game. This was a complete game changer. Jun was floored. Leveling up could actually be this direct. He immediately tried to level up Bungo, but the system shot him down with a cold, blunt message: insufficient funds. The cost was 100 million won, roughly 70,000 US dollars. Jae-hun stared at the absurd, ridiculous number, completely stunned. He slammed his fist down in frustration, cursing the system for its insanity. This system was greedier than any clout-chasing influencer. Just then, a sound caught his attention, the distinct ding of the elevator. He instantly activated his Supreme Recluse's omniscient eyes and pinpointed two individuals, a heavy-set man and a young woman standing menacingly outside his chubby neighbor's door. Something about them felt deeply unsettling. Now, for some quick context from the novel. When John's domain expanded, it granted everyone within it the ability to move freely again. Okay, back to the present. The chubby guy's wife, Haiwan, hears the doorbell and opens it, surprised to see anyone there. The suspicious-looking woman offered a warm, friendly greeting, introducing herself as Davin and her brother as Minho. They claimed to live in apartment 1701. Clearly confused and wary, Haiwan cautiously asked them what they wanted. Davin's voice trembled as she made a shameless request. They came seeking help. She nervously explained she just wanted to take a shower. After all that tension, Haiwan was just dumbfounded. A bath. Though still confused, she invited them inside, telling her it was no trouble at all. The moment the two siblings stepped inside, Minho, his face still a stone-cold mask, asked where to put down the large box he was carrying. Hee-won's curiosity was piqued until Davin explained it was filled with canned food and supplies. She said they couldn't possibly ask for a favor in these trying times without offering something in return. As Minho set the heavy box on the floor, Hwan tried to protest, saying it wasn't necessary, but Davin insisted, arguing it would be weird to just show up at a stranger's house and ask for a free bath. It was then that Davin's eyes landed on the weapons scattered all around the apartment. Her eyes widened in surprise. She asked if all these weapons belonged to Hwan. Was she some kind of hunter? The question startled Haiwan. She awkwardly explained that it was complicated, that the weapons belonged to someone else, someone who was kind of like their boss. While Haiwan fumbled for an explanation, Jan concluded his surveillance. After careful observation, he decided that for now these two siblings didn't seem like a threat. Jihan resolved to face them directly, and only then would he decide his next move. Suddenly, a system alert flashed. A red tiger had been hunted. A massive wave of experience points washed over him, plus 4 million, totaling a staggering 39 million. His stats skyrocketed in an instant, and with them, a brand new ability was unlocked. The barrage of notifications was almost overwhelming. It was then Jihan realized he had made a grave error. He'd been too fixated on observing the siblings while outside absolute pandemonium had erupted. His party was battered and broken, having barely survived their battle with a monstrous tiger. Yeonju, covered in blood, was unconscious on the cold ground. It was a complete disaster. In that moment, the range of Jihan's domain expanded once more, sending a sharp, searing pain straight through his heart. Right into his heart. Faced with this terrible scene, he urgently granted citizenship to everyone. He would judge if they were worthy later. The system pinged Jihan once again. With the citizen count reaching its threshold, everyone had unlocked the power of trust. But Jihan had no time to celebrate this victory. His people's injuries were far too severe. He had never anticipated facing a colossal tiger in this urban jungle. Elsewhere, Byunho was teleporting at top speed with his grandma on his back, while the others desperately sprinted behind him. Daku was carrying the unconscious Yeonju. The situation was a complete nightmare. Jihan couldn't believe how grievously Yeonju was wounded. And to make things infinitely worse, a goblin horde was still chasing them. Just as all hope seemed lost, the power from Gong's arrow suddenly surged. The others felt their strength and speed explode as their bodies became impossibly light. This was the power of a trust in action boosting their stats based on their faith in Jihan. Jihan's mind raced. The overall trust level was above 50%, which meant their combat abilities were amplified by 50%. This was an absolute game changer. Byonjo, who already saw Jihan as a god, received the biggest buff of all, roaring the Almighty's name, thanking him for granting this divine power from afar. Because of this display, Ren and her friend's loyalty broke the 30% threshold, making them eligible for vassal registration. Jihan wasted no time instantly making them vassals. But damn, Gong's trust level was a perfect 69. Nice. Through their awakening, both girls unlocked incredible new skills. Piercing arrow for Gong and poison mist for Ren. Gong drew her bow, stunned, as the arrow came alive, effortlessly skewering every goblin in its path, killing them instantly. Jihan then created a mission specifically for Ren kill 10 goblins with her new poison mist ability. The reward, a skill rank increase. However, Ren's new power was exceptionally dangerous. It was a lethal B-rank poison mist that could harm even her teammates if not controlled with absolute precision. Therefore, Jihan decided he would examine Ren's ability first, paying close attention to her 69% trust level before assigning any special missions. But the most critical problem remained Yeonju. Jihan immediately activated his Supreme Recluse's omniscient eyes, desperately scanning the entire building for any hope of survival. After a frantic scan, he found her a young, unconscious girl in her room. For some reason, an overwhelming urgency compelled Jihan to sprint towards her location. Okay, maybe it was because she was an 18-year-old girl. Whoops, just kidding. In truth, it was because she was a healer. She was the exact missing piece for Jihan's party. He was now standing right outside room number 2902. He tried the door, but it was locked from the inside by a heavy iron chain. Even with all his strength, Jihan couldn't possibly kick it down. But then he remembered the new ability he'd just received, Invisible Hand. He could summon and control an unseen force. Damn, if used well, this would certainly be useful for his future wife at night. Well, Jihan decided this was the perfect time to test this rather questionable skill. Closing his eyes, he visualized a pair of sharp mana scissors. Controlling the unseen force, he effortlessly sliced through the iron chain as if it were made of paper. The door swung open and he rushed desperately to the unconscious girl. But when he finally reached her, his eyes widened in horror. Her condition was critical. Her lips were sunken, her face gaunt. She was severely dehydrated and terrifyingly close to death. Jihan frantically tried to wake her, shouting her name and shaking her shoulders, but nothing worked. Her state was severe, a clear case of dehydration. Pale skin, dry lips, and sunken eyes. He had come all this way for a healer, but damn it, who was going to heal the healer? Panic began to set in. That's when he saw a full water bottle right beside her. But for some inexplicable reason, she hadn't touched a single drop. This wasn't the time for mysteries, though. Saving her was the only priority. And just like that, Jihan's galaxy brain went into overdrive. He cooked up a special mission just for her. The objective: take a single breath. The reward: a complete miraculous recovery. This insane gamble cost him a cool 10 million won. But holy hell, it actually worked. She managed a single weak breath, and instantly her body was completely restored. Just what kind of broken cheat-level ability was this? Slowly, the young woman's consciousness returned. Her vision swam into focus, revealing the sight of Jihan leaning over her. Dazed and utterly drained, she whispered, asking who he was and how in the world he got into her room. Jihan introduced himself claiming to live in the apartment upstairs, but her mind, still foggy, couldn't process it. She asked again, her voice barely a whisper. She finally grasped his name, but the real question remained. But why was Jihan in her room? Maintaining a calm facade, he explained that he saw how dire her situation was and had to intervene. For a second, she was sure this was all just a fever dream. But after a moment of stunned silence, the cold, hard reality crashed down on her. Someone had actually come to save her. The realization shattered her composure, and tears began to stream down her face. She was overwhelmed with emotion. To think that someone came to her rescue after days of starvation and dehydration? It was unbelievable. Jihan, despite hating the timing, steeled himself. With a heavy heart in this deeply emotional moment, he called her name and offered an apology. He spoke softly. "Look, I know this is terrible timing, but I'm in a desperate situation and I urgently need your help." As she wept tears of relief, Jihan dropped the bombshell. One of his teammates was critically wounded and he needed her skills. She listened in stunned silence, her confusion spiraling into disbelief. What in the hell is this guy talking about? How could she possibly help anyone else? She couldn't even save herself. She was literally on death's door just moments ago. It was completely absurd. And to make things even weirder, this total stranger was asking her to perform a medical procedure for his teammate. A cold suspicion crept into her thoughts. How on earth did this man even know she was a nurse? Her mind was instantly flooded with distrust. Still, judging by his desperation, he didn't seem like a threat. But in this godforsaken apocalypse, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. So she made a calculated decision to play along for now. She would carefully observe his true intentions. Feigning agreement, she calmly asked where she needed to go and how she could help. Jihan simply told her to wait a moment. He was already busy, crafting another system mission. This new mission was designed for one purpose: for her to heal the injured Yeonju. The time limit 1 hour, the reward a level up for her healing skill. After setting it up, Jihan tossed her some dried oranges. He told her to eat and get her strength back, promising to bring his wounded friend right to her. And with that, Jihan turned on his heel and left, leaving her utterly speechless once again, staring at the oranges on the floor and the bizarre system window shimmering in the air. A wave of panic hit her. She screamed Jihan's name, demanding to know what this insane notification was and who he really was. But Jihan, as cool as ever, just flashed a devilish smirk and calmly replied that he'd explain everything later. He casually left the stunned girl on the floor, reminding her that she was still too weak and needed to rest. Alone again, she scrambled for the oranges. Her fingers trembled as she peeled one frantically. Her mind was reeling. Was any of this even real? That guy, he literally created a quest. Meanwhile, the moment Jihan stepped into his own apartment, a system window popped up, informing him that her trust had increased. Seeing this confirmed his suspicions. Just as he thought, the woman didn't trust him one bit. And logically, why would she? It made perfect sense. Who in their right mind trusts a stranger that breaks into their apartment like some apocalyptic Santa Claus? Jihan was waiting for his team to arrive when a sudden intense feeling washed over him. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. Without a second's hesitation, he activated his Supreme Recluse's omniscient eyes. His vision pierced through the distance, locking onto a crimson tiger, hunting down Yeonju and the others. It was the same beast that wounded her before, and now it had returned. And it was royally pissed off. It seemed this new tiger was the mate of the one they had already killed. And oh boy, she was out for blood. Right now, his entire team was fighting desperately just to survive. Their faces were masks of pure panic and despair. Jihan's heart clenched in his chest. He realized this situation wasn't just bad. It was a complete catastrophe. That monstrous red tiger, its claws gleaming, looked ready to rip them all to pieces. No questions asked, no mercy given. Damn, this was one seriously enraged tiger widow. Jihan was stunned. Another red tiger, his team was in no condition for another fight like this. Their lives were hanging by a single thread. As they scrambled to escape, Rin suddenly slipped, falling hard and badly injuring her leg. Gwang and Dongin watched in horror, panicking instantly. They thought it was all over. Ren fought to stand, but her wounded leg gave out beneath her. Gong's heart shattered. This girl was like her own sister, and she could only watch powerless as Ren was left behind. Just then, the colossal red tiger opened its jaws, a gaping maw, ready to consume the world, and lunged for Ren. In that final moment, Ren closed her eyes, embracing her tragic fate. But as the tiger snapped its jaws shut, expecting a kill, Ren simply vanished into thin air, leaving only a whisper of purple energy behind. The red tiger froze, utterly baffled, its beastly mind reeling with confusion. Meanwhile, Ren reappeared, gasping for air terror still etched on her face. She was now at John's feet, grievously wounded but impossibly alive. A hair's breadth from death. If she wasn't a vassal, she would already be tiger food. By some miracle, the worst hadn't happened. And that bizarre teleportation had bought the others a few precious seconds to flee the enraged beast. In that same instant, Byung-ho warped in before John, his grandmother, on his back, urgently announcing a new citizen was ready for registration. John immediately approved granting the old woman citizenship. But this was no time for celebration. The danger was far from over. The red widow tiger was closing in again, its roars echoing with an even deeper hunger and rage. Suddenly, Jihan was struck with a crazy idea. It was time to unleash the true potential of his invisible hands. As the crimson beast charged forward ready to annihilate them all, Dongjun knew what had to be done. For any of them to survive, he had to be the sacrifice. Without a moment's hesitation, Dongjun stopped dead in his tracks. He activated his ultimate throwing skill, hurling the man-filled baseball with all his might straight at the red widow tiger. But it was utterly useless. The tiger dodged it with contemptuous ease, leaping high into the sky to bring down its claws on Dongjun. Gilong let out a desperate, panicked scream. But Dongjun had already accepted his fate. Knowing he could never outrun the monster, Dongjun sprinted in the opposite direction, drawing the creature's full attention onto himself. As he predicted, the tiger was on him in a heartbeat, its fangs just inches from his throat. But in that last possible second, the impossible happened. A massive pair of aura scissors materialized from thin air, clamping firmly around the tiger's neck, stunning Dongjun and everyone else. The very next moment, this mysterious aura hand tightened its grip on the tiger's throat without mercy, choking the life from the beast and lifting it into the air, squeezing harder, as the widow tiger struggled for a single breath. It thrashed wildly, trying to escape its invisible prison, but it was no use. Dongjian could only stare, his mind completely blown. What in the world was going on? He was certain he was about to meet his maker. Yet here he stood without a single scratch. Gaeyong and the others rushed to his side. But just then, a system notification popped up for Gong, and its message sent a fresh wave of fear through her. Meanwhile, looking down from high above, we see John calmly observing the entire battlefield. John mused that with this incredible new ability, he no longer needed to hunt himself. Especially since Gong making the kill would net him 4 times the loot from this tiger. With her new thrilling mission assigned, Gong drew her bow, her eyes blazing with deadly focus. As the tiger dangled pathetically, she took aim and loosed an arrow that found its mark, killing the beast instantly. Immediately, a new message appeared for Jae-hun. By killing a level 28 Red Widow tiger, he had earned a staggering 63 million and 1 experience points. With this massive EXP, gained the trust and loyalty of his party members soared. Dongjon's loyalty finally crossed the threshold. A satisfied smile spread across Jae-hun's face. He had just gained another precious vassal. The scene shifts, and now we see De-young channeling his healing powers into Yeonju. John watched with his own eyes as Yeonju's wounds vanished like a bad dream, leaving him completely speechless. He then turned to Dongjon, demanding to know what happened and how they ran into such terrifying monsters. Dongjon, his face heavy with grief, explained they found them at Bongho's grandmother's house. It seemed the tigers had made the place their new territory. I swear, Dongjian insisted. They had to be mutated house cats. They transformed into those giant monsters. Anyway, back to the main point. John carefully pieced together the clues, realizing that something had felt off all along. Come to think of it, there were no goblins anywhere near that area. Now he understood why. It was because of the tigers. If goblins had overrun that land, Bungo's grandma would have been dead long ago. Could it be? The tigers were actually protecting her all this time? Were those beasts her cats? A chilling thought for later. Back in the present, June finally processed Gong's reward, 73,011 points. At that very moment, Zhang's healing light faded, having completely restored Yeonju. With the old woman's strength returned, Zhang started to speak, but the chubby survivor suddenly stepped forward, asking June if now was really the time for this. He had a point. Were they doomed to meet in this cramped, suffocating space forever? They couldn't keep piling into this tiny room. But June, ever calm, reassured them all, saying he had already considered the problem. He had a solution. At those words, a wave of hope washed over their weary faces. June confidently declared that room 2901 was completely empty, and he would personally provide power and all other essentials. Anyone who wished to move in was free to do so. June then turned to Davin with more instructions. Rooms 21101 and 21102 were also vacant. He'd supply power there as well, so she should inform the other survivors they could freely use the showers and facilities. But for some reason, the couple looked crestfallen. June, reading the atmosphere, instantly knew exactly what was wrong. With a sly grin, June announced they could have a private room to enjoy their nights together while everyone else shared. However, there was one small condition. The couple froze, completely stunned by the offer. June, his intimidating aura growing, laid out his terms. Their task was to deliver a message to everyone, a message that was as simple as it was tempting. The first person to kill 100 goblins would be rewarded with an entire fully equipped private room, unlimited power, water, and food, everything needed to live in comfort. All for just 100 pathetic goblins. An easy trade. Damn. Even the legendary Goblin Slayer would be proud of June right now. June continued his cold explanation. Their true task was to gather survivors from all over and register them as his people. And the key to it all, a simple hunt for 100 goblins. In that moment, June was a master manipulator pulling everyone's strings. With a twisted smirk, he finalized the new directive. Kill 100 goblins and claim your paradise. Meanwhile, the scene shifts dramatically. A man in a red jacket flees for his life, hunted by a relentless horde of goblins. Just as they were about to overwhelm him, he dove through an open doorway in a desperate slide, barely escaping with his life. The goblins swarmed after him, but the narrow entrance became a bottleneck. Waiting on the other side, his teammates were ready to strike. It was a trap. The poor guy in the red jacket was nothing more than bait. Thanks to this cruel strategy, the team slaughtered the goblins with ease in a brutal one-sided massacre. And the leader of this squad, this absolute piece of trash, let's just call him Dumbass. He hurled his spear, finishing the last goblin with a dramatic flourish. But the guy in the red jacket was far from impressed. After all, he was the one who had to risk his neck every single time, while the others got the easy kills. Filled with frustration, he finally snapped, screaming about how unfair it was to always be the bait. Hearing this, Dumbass exploded with rage. He coldly snarled that the red jacket guy was just a pathetic loser. He made it clear that without his leadership, the bait would have already died a dog's death. Dumbass commanded him to act like a loyal mutt, or he'd become the next meal for the goblins. The threat was clear, forcing the man to back down and apologize. The scene shifts once more. Dumbass, brimming with arrogance after his 100th kill, strides off to claim his prize. But to his utter shock and disappointment, Davin had already awarded the prize to the first team to finish. And here's where the story gets interesting. It turns out Davin's own brother was the one who finished first, and he gave the private room to an elderly couple. Dumbass was not having it. Seething with rage, he started screaming about how completely unfair the whole thing was. Davin's brother then calmly explained that June had prepared a special reward just for Dumbass's team. They were told to head to the 30th floor to claim it. Though he was furious, he had no choice. Reluctantly, he and his team headed for the 30th floor. On the way up, a mocking smirk twisted Dumbass's face. He couldn't understand why Davin respected June so much. It was pathetic. Did she really see him as some kind of god? He scoffed at the very idea, calling June nothing more than a ridiculous cult leader. But the man in the red jacket, Shungmin, dared to voice a different opinion. He argued that since June was their protector, they owed him respect, not suspicion, especially when everyone wanted his favor. The lead thug shot him a venomous glare, his displeasure clear as day. His icy silence screamed a chilling promise that this argument wasn't over. As the elevator doors hissed open on the 30th floor, the fuming thug whispered a threat to Shungmin, promising to settle this later. But the moment they stepped out, June was already there, an oppressive aura washing over them as he stood with one hand buried in his pocket, his gaze piercing through them all. The entire team froze on the spot, utterly paralyzed by Jae-hun's overwhelming presence. The lead thug quickly masked his anger with a polite facade, introducing himself to break the crushing tension. But Jae-hun merely gave his hand a dismissive shake, coolly praising their barrier tactics and clever hunting methods. Stunned, the thug stammered, demanding to know how Jae-hun could possibly know their strategies. John, however, offered no explanation. Instead, he cut straight to the heart of the matter. His voice, cold as steel, announced that utilities would be restored to apartments 1301 and 1502. Still reeling in disbelief, the thug cautiously questioned how that was even possible. June answered simply that it was a reward for their kill count of 100 goblins, a prize they had earned. Then, without a moment's hesitation, a slow, predatory smile stretched across June's face. In a voice that dripped with ice, Jun brought up the thug's earlier taunt, repeating his words about being a cult leader. June stated plainly that he had zero interest in being worshipped like a god or playing such a pathetic game. The group stood frozen in terror and confusion. How on earth could Jae-hun have heard what was said inside a moving elevator? Was this place truly rigged with cameras everywhere? With a smile that bordered on psychotic, Jae-hun smoothly shifted gears, casually mentioning he had a small favor to ask of them. The scene cuts away, revealing the horrifying nature of June's favor. The thug and his crew were fleeing for their very lives, pursued by colossal, snarling orcs. Each thunderous footfall of the beasts made the very ground tremble beneath their feet. The terrified thug, gasping for air, led his team down a narrow alleyway just as they were instructed. And waiting at the corner spear held tight was Dongjian. The cramped alley bottlenecked the charging orcs, momentarily halting their rampage precisely according to the plan. Dongjian's throwing skill had now reached rank B, allowing him to hurl massive objects with 5 times the destructive force. With a mighty roar, Dongjian launched his spear, impaling the first orc and sending it crashing down. The second beast retaliated with a savage swing of its club. But before it could land, a silent, deadly arrow pierced its skull, dropping it instantly. A perfect shot from Gong. The final orc had no time to even register its fate before another spear from Dongjin ended its life. And with that, the mission to slay 100 orcs was complete, instantly netting Jin 3.2 million won. Huddled nearby, a family of 3 watched the slaughter, frozen in absolute horror. Dongjian offered them a gentle smile, carefully guiding them back toward June's stronghold. But as they neared, June received a system alert. An unknown entity was attempting to enter. Almost immediately, a second notification popped up. It informed him that individuals eligible for citizenship had arrived, asking if June wished to grant it to the 3 survivors. After a moment's thought, he accepted. This single act pushed his citizen count to 200, unlocking a powerful new ability tax collection. This skill allowed June to collect 10% of his citizens' money without actually diminishing their wealth. Though it came with a 30-day cooldown, June instantly grasped its incredible potential. He could now reclaim the funds he'd given out, though it would take roughly 10 months to recover it all. But with his parents' lives on the line, there was no time to waste. June made a swift decision. Dongjian's team would head for the Namban district immediately. To kickstart the plan, he would advance them 30% of the funds. It was a necessary investment. But just as he decided, another system window appeared. Jihan's house declaration skill had hit level 10, rewarding him with 3 new skill points. At the same time, an intense, searing pain ripped through him. His entire body screamed in agony as his domain violently expanded, nearly doubling in an instant and swallowing almost every building in sight. The system confirmed it. The entire building was now his home. And in that very moment, a system notification flashed into view. 1 billion won deposited as subsidies, and a new construction function was unlocked. Jihan's eyes devoured the options displayed before him. A solar generator for 133 million, a store for 219 million, and a gym for a cool 300 million. He now had a 1 billion won subsidy, but the solar generator's annual return was a pitiful 30 million won per year. That meant it would take years just to break even. Jihan stood there utterly perplexed. What kind of catastrophic business model was this? Deciding it was a trap, he planned to level up his vassals instead. But as he tried, a shocking realization stopped him cold. When he attempted to use the 1 billion won subsidy to power up Dongjun, the system flatly rejected him. The funds were fundamentally different, meant for one purpose only. This changed the entire game. Jihan now had a free fund to build his new kingdom. Without a second thought, he slammed his finger on the solar generator. A 24-hour countdown began as his balance dropped to 867 million. For a moment, he was tempted to install a second one, but a harsh system notification cut him off. Only one generator could be installed per apartment building. Accepting the annoying restriction, he turned his sights to the store. The system revealed it was linked to his Supreme Recluse skill. He could sell anything from his inventory directly to the citizens, a perfect solution to streamline supply distribution. He immediately installed the store in apartment 101, a 48-hour countdown ticking away. Finally, he looked at the gym, which promised to increase his citizens' strength and exercise efficiency by a staggering 200%. Imagining his people evolving into super soldiers, Jihan assigned the entire second floor to the new gym. A 72-hour countdown began. The system then informed him he had 3 new skill points. A wicked smile spread across his face. He'd just unlocked the ultimate infinite money and experience glitch. People would scramble for supplies, and he'd earn a fortune without lifting a finger. Now, that's what you call passive income. Meanwhile, Daku, encased in his armor, sliced an orc clean in half. Dongjun then asked what would happen if he threw the enchanted spear. Confused, Daku handed it over, and Dongjun launched it with terrifying force. In a panic, Daku was told to dismiss and resummon his armor. In a flash of light, the spear reappeared perfectly in his hand. They were both stunned. Dongjun had just discovered an infinite throw glitch. Daku hailed his friend's genius. At the same time, Gong was about to lose her very last arrow when a new quiver magically appeared before her. At this point, Jihan was literally playing life on creative mode. Gong could only stare in shock. The system unveiled a new skill, Omnifocus, allowing him to use other skills anywhere inside his domain. With her arrows reloaded, she took down another orc. The system logged the kill, and Jihan instantly received over 2,000 won. The mission was a success, and Gong leveled up. Jihan realized he could strengthen his vassals, filling him with a burning hope to save his parents. Their house was only 10 kilometers away. Overcome with urgency, Jihan raced to the rooftop. His focus was on leveling up Dongjun's group. He checked Kim Jian's status level 22 with the Crow familiar skill for reconnaissance. Then he reviewed Yeonju's profile level 33 with the devastating warrior bear skill. Finally, Kim Dong at level 30 with healing blessing and magic armor. Jihan considered his options. Yeonju and Kim Da-jung were strong choices, but Yeonju's low loyalty made him hesitate. Then a brilliant idea struck him. Bring back her son. He tried to activate the resurrection skill, but the system informed him he didn't have enough money. He'd have to wait. Instead, he crafted a high-stakes group mission hunt, a level 40 monster in 24 hours, with the reward being her son's resurrection. Failure meant death. He confirmed the mission, and it was set. Suddenly, a frantic knock came from his door. It was Yeonju gasping for breath. She had run the second she saw the mission. Jihan told her it was possible, but time was short. Yeonju collapsed, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. A notification popped up. Her loyalty had soared past 30, making her eligible to become a vassal. Later, Jihan stood at the sink, watching the faucet turn on by itself. He was getting used to controlling the world with his mind. Seriously, our boy is becoming Magneto. He now commanded electricity, water, and gas. The store's profits for the day, over 320,000 won, were added to his wallet. He smiled, knowing it had already cleared 1.5 million. Jihan watched the people bustling in his store, feeling a powerful sense of control. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a young man asked his friend about their savings. His friend sighed, explaining that the bow they needed cost 150,000 won. They only had 10,000. It would take them 2 weeks. The boy just laughed, reminding him they also had to eat. His friend slumped in defeat. Jihoon's store had completely upended the very economy of their apocalypse. Even the smallest coins were enough to spark a hunter's greed. The system displayed the grim reality, a population of just 789 out of 11,000. But John was certain that number was about to explode. Just then, another message pinged on his screen. He had just annihilated a level 18 orc, banking a cool 1.2 million. Somewhere else, Yeonju, in her savage warrior bear form, was carving a path through hordes of goblins and orcs. Gong and Kim Da-jung could only watch her in awe. Yeonju felt bad for stealing all the kills, but Gong just grinned, telling her it was more than okay. John smirked to himself. Putting those two together was a stroke of genius. He quickly pulled up Yeonju's new status window, level 40 bearing the title of the 9th Bell. Her trust and loyalty had skyrocketed to 66, but her rank S skill Berserk was on another level entirely. The moment she saw blood, her strength would surge by 300%. As he pondered her terrifying power, a sickening crack echoed from afar. From the deepest shadows, a colossal orc emerged. Instantly, Yeonju unleashed the beast within, transforming into the fierce mother bear and charging headfirst into the fray. The battle ignited. It was a clash of titans with neither side giving an inch. Gong launched a desperate arrow, but the orc swatted it away with its massive axe. Fury blazed in Yeonju's eyes, and with that rage, her power surged, doubling her in size as she launched her assault. The orc lord was utterly doomed. It had no time to even register its fate before Yeonju's onslaught rained down upon it. The system announced her victory in a flash of light. She had vanquished a level 28 orc lord, earning a massive reward of 73,011 nanansis. But another message followed. She had unlocked a new outpost. It required a knight to occupy it for 7 days, and the price was a mind-boggling 1.3 billion. John scoffed at the numbers. The cost was outrageous, and the time commitment was impossible. He immediately decided against building the outpost. He knew it would be a huge asset for his family, but relocating his grandparents would be a whole other nightmare. He could only pray that they were still safe. Driven by this resolve, John made his decision. The next day, he would dispatch Dongjun's group straight to the main house. Back at the subway, Kim Jan witnessed the entire battle, his jaw on the floor. He saw Yeonju tear orcs to shreds while they begged for their lives. How in the world did John find someone so terrifyingly strong? Kim Jan noticed Yeonju's attention was now fixed on the remaining goblins. A new mission flashed in his vision return in 1 hour. Kim Jan felt a chill. He knew even the simplest tasks could turn deadly in this world. Just then, Dongjun's group arrived, telling him it was time to fall back. Kim Jan summoned his familiar Kami to scout ahead. Through the crow's vision, he confirmed the path was clear for now. The group began to move. Kim Jan spotted a lone rat, which then vanished. He tried to ignore it, but a strange, unsettling feeling lingered. As he climbed the stairs, he glanced back and saw 2 small red lights glowing in the darkness. The same rat was now speeding toward them, a clear omen of danger. The scene shifts to John bowing his head before Dongjun's group, his voice filled with hope as he asks for their help. Dongjun asked. The hard question was John's family even still alive in that building? John had to admit he didn't know. He just needed their help to find out what happened. But before anyone could answer, Young-ho stepped forward, declaring he would do anything his god John commanded. The rest of the group voiced their unwavering loyalty to John. They promised as one that they would see this through with him. Deeply moved, John thanked them and explained the new strategy. Their destination Somian Station. For now, he urged everyone to get some rest. However, Yeonju asked a question that hung in the air. Couldn't John just use his powers to teleport his family here? John fell into a painful silence. He remembered trying countless times only for it to fail. His power was absolute, but only within the bounds of his domain. He confessed he couldn't do everything, but he swore he would fulfill the promise he made to her. A system window chimed. Yeonju's trust level had just increased. With a genuine smile, Yeonju thanked him. John smiled back, encouraging everyone to rest. One by one, they all filed out. The moment things quieted down, John got another alert. An unauthorized entity was trying to breach his territory. He granted it citizenship, and Yajin's profile appeared. Level 31 with a trust level of 0. Her unique skill was Rat Queen. John was completely baffled. Had they just acquired a woman who could transform into a rat? The scene rewinds back to when Yajin first discovered Dongjun's group slaughtering orcs in the subway. Intrigued, she decided to follow them from the shadows, a decision that led her straight to John's compound. She saw children playing happily, the entire place bustling with life. In her tiny rat form, Yajin was in total shock. She bolted for an apartment, but slammed headfirst into a shimmering blue shield. An interface appeared asking if she wanted to become a citizen. The rat squeaked, but nothing happened. Desperation began to set in, but then the interface updated, granting her citizenship. The rat scrambled into the building, and straight into chaos. People screamed at the sight of her trying to crush her under their feet. Ya-jin fled for her life, accidentally ducking into a training room where she saw people lifting massive weights. She was utterly confused. What kind of strange, muscle-worshipping cult had she stumbled into? At that very moment, Ya-jin snapped out of her rat form, a splitting headache her only greeting. She laughed euphoric at finding a survivor camp, but her joy instantly vanished. She remembered the monstrous creature guarding the station, a beast she would have to get past to reach Jan's sanctuary. The scene then cuts away, showing that Jan had hunted down the rat, severing Ya-jin's connection, and leaving her stranded and alone. A new system window materialized before him. The Rat Queen. An A-rank ability, she could command an entire swarm of rats as if they were extensions of her very being. Ji-hoon's expression hardened. The chilling realization hit him. An A-rank awakened was controlling the rats. Activating the Supreme Recluse's eyes, he scanned the area, but she was nowhere to be found. In that moment, a brilliant idea sparked in his mind. He quickly created a simple quest, the target. The Rat Queen must report to his apartment in 48 hours. The reward was a single can of Coke and a choco bar. But as he reviewed the quest, a critical thought surfaced. He couldn't summon his parents. They were outside his domain. Ya-jin was also outside. But as a citizen, he decided it was time to test a theory. His citizens were supposed to be under his absolute control. A wicked grin spread across his face as he edited the quest. The new time limit was a mere 10 seconds, and the punishment for failure was forced summoning. The system approved the insane conditions. If she failed, she would be teleported directly to him. Wow! He stared at the screen, his heart pounding. This power could change the entire game. He just prayed the summoning cost wasn't over 1 billion won. The countdown began. When it hit 0, the system displayed the final result. CEO. Ya-jin had failed the quest. The cost was an unbelievably low 31 million won. Ji-hoon breathed a massive sigh of relief. In a brilliant flash of light, a surprised and panicked Ya-jin materialized inside the apartment. She had no idea what had just happened. Ji-hoon calmly called out her name, proving he already knew who she was. Who are you? Ya-jin stammered. How do you know me? Ji-hoon remained perfectly composed. I'm the one who granted you citizenship, he explained. And I'm the one who brought you here. He introduced himself and tried to reassure her. To welcome her, he offered the quest rewards a can of Coke and a choco bar. Seo Ye-jin cautiously took the snack, her mind reeling. Was all of this your doing? He simply nodded. Her thoughts were screaming, who in the hell is this guy? A god! Suddenly she collapsed to her knees, pleading with Ji-hoon. Please, you must help the 35 people I'm responsible for. But Ji-hoon flatly refused, explaining that it was impossible. Hearing this, despair crashed over her, and she began to cry, begging him to save her family. That's when a crucial detail clicked in Ji-hoon's mind. He had never met Seo Ye-jin directly, yet he had successfully granted her citizenship. This proved that the rat spirit he encountered was an extension of her. He wondered if he could use that very connection to bring her family to safety. In that instant, a system interface appeared, showing Ye-jin's stats level 31 with a trust of 37. Her ability was listed as Rat Queen. Ji-hoon noticed her trust had already risen. He looked her dead in the eye and asked, would you do anything to protect your family? Without a moment's hesitation, she declared she would. Ji-hoon agreed, explaining there was one way to save them, but it required her complete and total trust. I trust you fully, she cried out, and a system notification appeared. Her trust level had surged to 50, and her loyalty rose to 33. She now met the conditions to become his vassal. Ji-hoon activated the vassal registration process. A brilliant blue aura surrounded Ye-jin as she watched in stunned amazement. When the process finished, her stats had transformed completely. She now held the titles of 10th Seed Knight and Tamer. Her trust climbed to 52, and loyalty held at 33. New information revealed that a tamed being's stats grow based on their loyalty and trust. Ji-hoon saw that Ye-jin's evolution class was A+, meaning her tamed rats possessed limitless potential for growth. He wouldn't be surprised if one day her rats grew muscles and started walking on 2 legs. Ji-hoon asked Ye-jin if any of her rats were near her family. She didn't answer right away, but he insisted, send one now. Ye-jin immediately followed his command. At the same time, Ji-hoon activated the Supreme Recluse's eyes, sharing the rat's vision directly with her. Together, they watched the rat scurry toward her family. The moment it arrived, food and drinks materialized right in front of them. Ji-hoon received another notification. Seo Ye-jin's trust level had skyrocketed again. He realized her ability, and his eyes created a perfect synergy. He had just acquired the ultimate reconnaissance ability. Ye-jin asked Ji-hoon if he was talking about the Namban neighborhood. He confirmed that he was. Her face lit up with excitement. She knew the area perfectly and could send a rat to safely scout the entire location. Using her rats, Ji-hoon could finally confirm if his family was alive without risking his team. Ye-jin assured him she would take care of it. The system pinged as her trust and loyalty levels increased once more. Ji-hoon urged her to leave right away, suggesting she use the subway tracks.
But Yejin screamed terrified. That's suicide! A horrible monster lurks in Somyeon Station.
Intrigued, Ji-hoon pressed her for more details. Yejin could only describe it as a monstrous and cruel creature. Determined, Ji-hoon made his decision. Send a rat to explore. I want to see this monster. Yejin agreed, and the scene shifted to a rat running frantically into the subway's darkness.
Pure terror was etched on the rat's face. A strange crunching sound echoed ahead, as it saw a huge snake-like monster chewing on an orc lord's head.
With a single sickening gulp, the snake swallowed the entire orc. The poor rat was so scared it peed itself. The serpent noticed the movement and lunged forward. Miraculously, the rat dodged and fled for its life as Ji-hoon watched the entire scene unfold. He realized the snake was much stronger than he expected, likely well above level 40. Damn, Ji-hoon thought grimly. That terrifying beast looked like it belonged to Sasuke from Naruto. Yejin saw Ji-hoon's reaction and agreed. See, Somyeon Station is a death trap. She urged him to bypass the station and take a different route. The path was longer, she explained, but infinitely safer. Yejin promised Jae-hun that his team was more than capable. With gratitude, Jae-hyun accepted her counsel. Without her warning, his entire team might have been wiped out. Ji-hoon rewarded her, offering her apartment 2701, provided she cleaned it herself. Yajun thanked him profusely before leaving. The moment she was gone, a sinister smile spread across Ji-hoon's face. In the past, he would have been forced to flee from such a monster. But now, with Yajun's unique abilities at his disposal, the game had changed. A wicked plan began to form in his mind. Without a moment's hesitation, he commanded the system to construct a solar generator. Jae-hun watched the panels materialize, but quickly realized they were a drop in the ocean for nearly 800 citizens. To truly improve their lives, he needed far more resources and manpower. He devised a brilliant 3-shift system, ensuring round-the-clock maintenance and resource gathering. Ultimately, Ji-hoon came to one conclusion: it was time to hunt more aggressively. Elsewhere, Dongjian's team fled for their lives from vicious bat-like creatures. With practiced ease, Ga-young and her comrades let their arrows fly, felling the monsters with deadly precision. Afterwards, she quickly checked on her squad. A sigh of relief escaped her lips. Everyone was unharmed. But her sister's voice was laced with fear, reminding them of the monstrous serpent lurking at Somyeon Station. Gang just smiled, reassuring her that as long as Ji-hoon was with them, he could summon them back from the brink of death. Their confidence restored, the group pressed onward, only to stumble upon a ruined train surrounded by the mangled remains of orc leaders. Everyone's blood ran cold. The sight was so gruesome the team's youngest member couldn't hold back his sickness. Suddenly, a chilling hiss echoed through the air as a colossal monstrous snake appeared. Daku screamed in pure terror. But in a flash, Dongjin grabbed Gaeong, yelling for everyone to hit the deck. The serpent unleashed a soul-shattering roar, blasting them with a shockwave of pure force that sent them flying. The pressure was immense. The men shielded the women, but a piercing pain threatened to split their skulls open. In that very instant, the system's cold, emotionless voice rang in their minds, issuing a single command: kill the serpent. Primal fear gripped Dongjian, but through the ringing in his ears, he noticed something strange. The giant snake was moving sluggishly. This was their chance. Dongjian locked eyes with Yeonju, and without a word, hurled his spear with every ounce of his strength. In a flashback just minutes earlier, Ji-hoon had explained the giant snake's terrifying habit of swallowing its prey alive. He'd realized it didn't bother with small fries. It just gulped them down whole. And in that weakness, Jae-hun saw a brilliant, brutal opportunity. He'd ordered Ye-jun to send her smallest rat on a suicide mission, straight into the massive serpent's nostril. And she obeyed, her scout scurrying deep inside the beast's body. And now, the true horror of Jae-hyan's master plan was unleashed. With a smirk, he opened his inventory, releasing a cloud of deadly poison gas from within the rat. But that wasn't all. Next, he poured gasoline directly into the snake's stomach, and with a thought, violently ignited it. In a blinding flash, the snake's insides became a raging inferno, tearing the beast apart from the inside out. The force of the internal explosion even staggered Yejin. Jahan rushed to her side, but she waved him off, assuring him she was fine. Jihan praised her bravery before turning back to the chaos. He watched the scene unfold, having no intention of finishing the beast himself. Instead, his knights Dongjun and Yeonju would deliver the killing blow, allowing him to harvest 6 times the experience and rewards. Back in the present, Dongjun and his party realized the shockwave hadn't come from the snake's roar. It came from the devastating explosion Jae-hun had caused within it. Seizing the golden opportunity, Dongjian hurled his spear with maximum force, ending the serpent's life instantly. Immediately, a tidal wave of system notifications flooded Jae-hun's vision, granting him a staggering 1.8 billion experience points. With the boss of Shomi Station defeated, Ji-hun could now build an outpost. Dongjun and Yeonju's abilities surged, and the entire domain's level soared to 15. As a final prize, Ji-hun received 3 precious bonus skill points. Then, a new message appeared. People qualified for citizenship had been found nearby. There were roughly 200 survivors. Ji-hun granted them citizenship on the spot without a second thought. The system updated once more, announcing the total number of citizens had reached 1,000.
For hitting this milestone, a new ability unlocked for everyone baseline. It granted Jihan 100% of all experience points and money earned by every single citizen.
Jihan stared in disbelief. This wasn't a skill. It was an absolute cheat code. Just then, Ijun approached, timidly asking if her family could join his domain. Jay. Han paused for a moment, then a warm smile crossed his face as he agreed. Overcome with joy, Yajun couldn't stop thanking him. Jae-hun simply asked if she could still command her rats. Ijun nodded eagerly. The scene changes. Yajun's rat scurries into a new area, finding Dong Jayun's team standing before a horrifying sight. A complete massacre. Hundreds of orc corpses lay scattered about, many of them half-eaten. Yajun's rat scurried forward, chittering, as if telling the group to follow it. Deoksu watched in amazement, wondering if this was yet another one of Jihan's incredible powers. Intrigued, the entire party followed the tiny creature. Meanwhile, Jihan deactivated the Supreme Recluse's eyes and returned to his private quarters. Now it was time to forge his own power. He had 3 skill points ready to be invested. As his territory continued to expand, the choice was obvious. He needed to strengthen his omniscient eyes. This new power was a perfect match for Yajin's rat ability, taking their teamwork to a whole new level. But the moment Jae-hun upgraded the skill, a piercing pain shot through his head. Miles away, Dongjian's party stumbled right into a goblin horde. In that instant, Jihan's vision cleared, revealing the goblins' exact levels and stats. They were all level 8, moving in tactical squads armed with spears and clubs. Their agility was terrifying, their eyes perfectly adjusted to the pitch-black tunnels. Jihan knew this vision was a priceless tool for scouting and for survival. A new plan formed in his mind: hunt these goblins, seize their power for himself, and never forget his ultimate goal of lowering the resurrection cost. To do that, he would create more quests for his people. Let them fight, let them grow stronger, all while saving his own resources and boosting efficiency. Next, Jae-hun turned his attention to another skill: dignity maintenance. As his population swelled, earning their unshakable trust and loyalty was becoming absolutely critical. He spent a single skill point to enhance it. Just then, the sharp crack of a gunshot shattered the silence. Jihan's head snapped toward the sound, his expression hardening. That shot hadn't come from his building. It echoed from deep underground. The scene shifted, revealing an utterly bizarre sight. Goblins casually holding firearms, decked out in jackets and pants. What in the world? As the goblins opened fire, Dongjian roared for everyone to hit the dirt. Bullets whizzed past their heads, far too close for comfort. They knew instantly a direct gunfight was suicide. Dongjian's mind raced, trying to figure out how goblins got their hands on guns. But he didn't need to worry for long. Byung-ho teleported, appearing behind the goblin line. With deadly precision, his blade pierced their chests. He moved like a ghost, dodging bullets as he carved a path of destruction. Another goblin raised its pistol only for an arrow to pierce its hand. At the same time, Gae-ong and Daku charged into the fray, while Yeonju unleashed her ferocious beast form. Together, they annihilated every last goblin. Meanwhile, a system message flashed before Jihan's eyes, announcing a new item. Guns with unlimited ammo were now available in his store. Holy hell, this was a complete game changer. But Jihan saw the problem immediately. He couldn't just put firearms up for sale. The moment ordinary people saw them, their lust for monster hunting would explode. But he knew not everyone could be trusted. Until now, he'd accepted anyone as a citizen confident he could handle any troublemakers. Introducing guns, however, was a dangerous new variable. They offered instant lethal power. In the hands of the wrong person, that power would breed absolute chaos. Envy, resentment, jealousy, these simple human emotions could now become deadly weapons. Because of these risks, Jae-hun made a crucial decision. Only the most trustworthy people, those with the highest loyalty, would ever be allowed to wield a gun. And he knew exactly who would be the first. Meanwhile, Dongjian's party had finished wiping out the goblins. Suddenly, to Byung-ho's utter astonishment, a mysterious box materialized right in front of him, containing a firearm. With profound reverence, Byung-ho accepted the weapon silently, thanking his god Jaehon. At this point, his devotion was so absolute he would have married the man if asked. Afterwards, Dongjian's group pushed onward, following the path of Yajun's faithful rat, until they reached a sealed door. Dongjian threw it open, and inside they found a huddle of terrified survivors. Elsewhere, Jihan was taking a calm walk outside with Yajin, savoring a rare moment of peace. But a new system alert blared: an unknown entity was attempting to enter his domain. Immediately after, another notification appeared. Someone nearby qualified for citizenship. The system asked for his approval. Without a moment's hesitation, Jihan granted it. Her sister appeared, teasing her, saying she smelled wonderful and asking if she'd had a shower. Yajin just laughed, replying that she finally had access to hot water. From a distance, Jihan watched their tearful, happy reunion. After a moment, he called out to Yajin, reminding her that while apartment 2701 was hers, it would get crowded if she planned to house over 30 people there. Seeing the worry on her face, Jae-hun added that he would grant her 3 more rooms as a reward for her hard work. Overjoyed Yajin thanked him profusely, promising to work even harder. Jae-hun received another notification. Yajin's trust and loyalty stats had skyrocketed. And with hers, the loyalty of Hong Dal-rae, Im Ryung-jun, and Han Jung-soo also rose significantly. Staring at the interface, Jae-hun recalled that he had leveled up earlier and completely forgotten to check his rewards. He found a new feature, the Guardian Beast Management System. He opened it and nearly fainted. The unlock cost was an astronomical 1,011 points. As he reeled from the insane price, a gentle voice interrupted him, asking if he had a moment. Ji-hun turned and invited her in. It was Hye-rin, the youngest of Dong Ji-hun's group, and she looked incredibly nervous. She told him she had something very important to discuss. Ji-hun calmly gestured for her to have a seat. Hye-rin apologized, her voice trembling, and then asked to be removed from the party. She felt completely useless, convinced that no one would even notice if she just vanished. Jae-hun gently encouraged her to continue, and with that the dam broke. She burst into tears. She confessed that the monsters were just too terrifying, and her own poison mist ability made her feel worthless since she couldn't dare use it anywhere near her comrades. Ji-hun listened patiently. This was a conversation he had been expecting. He understood perfectly. A power like poison mist was a terrifying double-edged sword if you didn't know how to control it. He told her the timing couldn't be better, as he needed someone he could truly trust to help him. Even Do-in, who was tending to the wounded, was at her breaking point and had asked for aid. Jae-hun explained that he needed someone with integrity and a compassionate heart, and she was the perfect person for the job. He looked her in the eyes, reminding her that no one is useless as long as they keep fighting. Her poison mist, he insisted, was a unique power that would one day shine brilliantly. If she couldn't battle on the front lines, she could become their strength from within. Then Jae-hun bowed deeply. Hye-rin was stunned, then deeply touched, and a smile finally broke through.
A system window pinged, her loyalty had surged to a perfect 100. Wiping away her tears, she swore to do her absolute best.
Jae-hun smiled, letting her know he would be counting on her. Moments later, his attention turned to a new feature just waiting to be unlocked. An interface materialized, showing the cost was 1,011 points. He decided the gamble was worth it and pressed yes without hesitation. A brilliant golden magic circle erupted on the floor, and at its center, a golden crystal egg began to tremble and crack. A blinding light forced him to shut his eyes. When the light finally faded, he saw a small, utterly adorable black bird. Activating the Supreme Recluse's eyes, he saw its true form, a three-legged divine raven. It was only level 1. It radiated the raw energy of the sun, but it was just a hatchling that needed protection and sunlight to grow. John decided to name it Little Blackie. The bird flapped its wings in pure excitement, but kept stumbling, and John quickly realized it was starving. He offered it a bag of chips, which the tiny creature devoured with pure joy. Afterwards, Blackie curled up and fell fast asleep like a lazy cat. Just then, an alert flashed in Jae-hun's vision. Blackie's level had increased, and the solar generator's efficiency had skyrocketed by 100%. Jae-hun ran the numbers in his head. Each generator normally produced 80,000 to 100,000 won per day. With Blackie's new boost, the annual gain would leap to a staggering 90 million won. His decision was made instantly. He would install solar generators in all 10 of the new buildings. The 24-hour countdown had begun. Satisfied with his progress, John went to apartment 3001. As soon as Fatty opened the door, John greeted him, saying he wanted to entrust him with the massive responsibility of managing his funds.
Fatty froze solid. A flashback ripped through his mind.
John had been thinking about his tax collection ability. If he put his money in someone else's hands, the ability would generate a 10% profit every single month. He chose Fatty because his trust and loyalty scores were incredibly high. Back in the present, Fatty was still reeling from the sheer shock. Choi Hae-young-jun, or Fatty, had a trust of 89 and a loyalty of 98. His unique power was gorilla strength. Jian felt a surge of confidence in his choice. Without another word, Jae Hyan transferred an insane 1 billion won directly into Fatty's wallet. The system confirmed the transaction in an instant.
The quest cost him 130,000 won, including the 10% fee, but he knew the investment would be more than worth it.
Fatty's trust rating climbed higher, while his loyalty hit the max level of 100. Since Fatty was now an official vassal, the maximum number of vassals Jae-hun could command also increased.
Stunned, Fatty asked if he was supposed to just hold on to the money without ever touching it.
Seeing Fatty's perfect loyalty score, Jae-hun gave him a reassuring smile, telling him he could use a little if he ever truly needed it. Overcome with joy, Fatty bowed deeply in gratitude. Shortly after, Dabane appeared and asked Jae-hun if she could pick anyone she wanted for her new team. Jae Hyan agreed immediately, even suggesting she include Yoo-in. And since Dabin would be the new team leader, Jan declared she would receive double pay. The news sent a wave of happiness through Dabin, and her loyalty stat shot up instantly. She thanked him profusely and rushed off to find Yoo-in. Once everyone had gone, John finally took a deep, steadying breath. It was finally time for a very serious and very difficult conversation. With his mind made up, he walked to apartment 21-109, where Hadong's group was staying.
Upon arriving, John gathered the entire team and explained the dangerous truth of the situation waiting for them at Somyeon Station.
He told them an incredibly powerful monster was waiting there. For now, their current location was relatively safe. The streets were completely empty, and not a single monster roamed the nearby subway tracks. It was an eerie calm before the storm. Between Bayum-yeol and Bayum-il stations, the monster population was dangerously low, an opportunity Jihan knew they absolutely had to seize. As he spoke, his mind flashed back to Yui Rin's emotional outburst. That moment had hit him hard, reminding him that these people were literally risking their lives based on his word alone. The weight of that responsibility was crushing. Thanks to Yajin's intel, they had discovered the threat at Somyeon Station far earlier than expected. If they had found out any later, the situation would have been a death sentence. Catching it early gave them a critical advantage. Jae-hun understood the cruel truth of this world. It was a brutal place where anyone could die in an instant. And he was determined to protect those he had grown to care for. With all these thoughts weighing on him, he announced their next move the following morning. They would head to Jagali Station. Later that night in his room, the system screen appeared before him. The solar generator's power had officially increased by a full 100%. What's more, Blackie had leveled up again, unlocking the power of the sun and the coveted elemental magic. As Blackie's owner John inherited this power as well. Elemental magic. This was a massive game changer. Curious, he raised a finger, and a tiny flame flickered to life on its tip. The sensation felt strange, yet somehow deeply familiar. Later, in an isolated area, he tried to imagine a gigantic fireball. He stretched out his hand, focusing all his energy, but only a small, weak flame appeared. John felt a flash of disappointment, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of curiosity. He suddenly remembered the special flammable gas his ability created. If he could combine that gas with this flame, the result could be absolutely explosive. Right now, it was just a baby flame. But he knew that one day it could grow into a terrifying inferno, a truly monstrous new ability. Feeling a rush of excitement, Jae-hun ended his test and returned home. As he ate, another system alert chimed in. 2 more solar generators were now online. A smile touched June's lips. Blackie had already leveled up 3 times. Her power boost made the generators 8 times more efficient, turning surplus energy directly into cash. More power meant more freedom. Things were looking up. Just then, Yejun entered the room thanking him for letting her get some much-needed rest. Jae-hyun waved it off. Her top-tier abilities had more than earned it. Then, without missing a beat, he admitted he needed her power once again. Dongjun's team was waiting at Somyeon Station. He needed Yajin to guide them through the treacherous paths. She agreed instantly, her rats already scouting the subway tunnels. She reported they could reach Chiang Station without any trouble. But Jae-hyun pressed further, asking what lay beyond that station. Yajun's expression hardened. The real danger, she warned, began at Bususan Station, a sight he needed to witness for himself. Wasting no time, Yajun sat down channeling her unique ability. Jae-hyun activated his Eyes of the Absolute, linking his vision to her rats. But nothing could have prepared him for the apocalyptic scene that unfolded. Towering piles of rubble blocked the way entirely. The tracks themselves were lost beneath a murky flood. Pushing forward was simply impossible. Yajun explained that a lone rat had ventured deeper, only to find complete devastation. Not a single building was left standing. What could have caused this? A chilling thought gripped him. Were his parents even alive? While locked in the vision, something else caught his eye, making his blood run cold. It was a colossal footprint, so massive it could crush buildings like toys. And in that moment, everything clicked. This was no earthquake. A titan of unimaginable size had rampaged through here. He almost joked about the colossal titan from the anime, but a deafening roar from nearby stole the air from his lungs. The very walls began to shake violently. Each earth-shattering step grew louder, more intense. Was that monster heading straight for them? The tremors intensified, and he feared the entire building was about to come crashing down. Another violent quake shook their foundation. He quickly checked on Yajun, who confirmed she was fine, her face etched with confusion about the cause. Suddenly, a panicked shout echoed from the elevator. Jae-hyun and Yejun rushed out to find Fatty, his face pale with terror. "What's going on?" Jae-hyun demanded, but Fatty could only gesture wildly for them to follow. A creeping sense of dread followed them down the hall. Inside Fatty's room, a 60-meter-tall titan was tearing the city apart. A monstrous cyclops with a single burning red eye. "My gut feelings are never wrong," Jae-hyun muttered, watching helplessly as the cyclops continued its path of destruction. Fatty and the others were frozen in panic. For the first time, Jae-hyun felt the icy grip of true fear. Could he possibly defeat a monster like that? Could he protect anyone? He was on the verge of breaking down when Yeonju pushed past him, her face a mask of cold fury. To avenge her son, she would fight. Jae-hyun saw the fire of vengeance burning in her eyes. He had to believe in her resolve. The system interface flared to life, announcing a new quest. Defeat the Cyclops within 24 hours, the reward. A single day of resurrection for Yeonju's son. The penalty for failure, a full day of agonizing pain. Jae-hyun snapped into action, giving a rapid-fire briefing and assigning teams. Team 1, Yeonju Donghan Daejong and Deoksu. Team 2, Gang Jongho and Kim Ji-yeon. And Team 3, Jae-hyun and Yejun. He would defend their base while the others moved into position. He looked at them all, reminding them that he was counting on their strength and their courage. Without hesitation, every single person moved to follow his orders. Moments later, Hyerin reported in. Residents with military training had gathered at the gate. Everyone else was evacuating to the basement. He thanked her, telling her to get to safety too. But Hyerin stood her ground. Though her body trembled with fear, she refused to run. She wanted to help. Jae-hyun saw it clearly, the terror in her eyes, warring with a desperate will to be brave. She admitted she was terrified, but she had to contribute something. A small smile formed on his lips. He tasked her and Yejun with guarding the gate. But as he looked at the assembled fighters, his heart sank. So few had come. As he processed this, a familiar figure approached. It was the man in the red jacket. He asked what the plan was. Jae-hyun's eyes scanned the crowd. Where are Baek-yub and the twin brothers? The man in red simply looked away, his silence screaming the answer. The truth hit him hard. Baek-yub and the twins had fled, choosing to cower in the basement. A bitter wave of disappointment washed over him. He understood then that hundreds of people had made their choice, prioritizing their own skin over the fate of everyone else. To Jae-hyun, these people had traded their courage for comfort. He saw them as cowards who had abandoned their duty, leaving the brave to carry the crushing weight of fear alone. But despite his anger, he would never forget the 101 souls who did answer the call. These people weren't fools. They didn't show up because they were ignorant of the danger. They came because they understood the brutal truth. If no one stands to fight, everyone will perish. They chose to fight for their lives and for their families. Jae-hyun recalled a phrase he once heard. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of it. The words struck him with newfound force. In this cruel new world, the ones who acted despite their terror were the only reason anyone survived. And standing right before him were 101 truly brave people. In the quiet of his heart, Jae-hyun thanked every single one of them. To honor their bravery, he opened the system. From the heavens, a rain of guns and unlimited ammo poured down, leaving everyone completely stunned. At first they hesitated, but feeling the cold, hard steel in their hands, a new hope was ignited. Maybe they could fight this monster. The giant Cyclops let out a terrifying roar, a shockwave that made buildings tremble. Hiding nearby, Dongjun clutched a spear. He took aim at the Cyclops' massive leg and hurled it with all his might. The weapon sank deep into the monster's flesh, causing it to howl in agony. Enraged, the Cyclops scanned for its attacker, its single eye locking onto a frozen Dongjin. The beast began to shamble forward, dragging its wounded leg. Just then, the mother bear charged from behind in her beast form. She ripped her claws into the creature's injured leg, tearing the wound open even wider. The Cyclops roared, crashing down to its knees. But Yeonju's ferocious assault wasn't enough. It struggled back to its feet, delivering a colossal stomp that sent her flying like a rag doll into a distant building. This looked like the end. The Cyclops loomed over her, ready for the final strike. But before it could land, a voice boomed through a megaphone. It was Daku screaming that the Cyclops was an idiot and that its family jewels were in its eye. Shockingly, the monster understood the insult, and its gaze shifted to Deokshu. Seeing the spear still lodged in its leg, it knew he was the one who had thrown it. The Cyclops' fury reached its peak as it lumbered towards Daku, hell-bent on crushing him. Deoksu was petrified. He knew this monster was coming to end him. He turned and ran for his life like a mouse fleeing a cat. From a distance, John saw his plan was working. The Cyclops was walking right into their trap. John gave the signal for everyone to prepare. Meanwhile, Deoksu scrambled towards the barrier. The Cyclops pursued him with slow, thunderous steps. Daku collapsed in exhaustion behind the barrier, just as the monster reached its edge. On Jun's command, a black raven shot towards the Cyclops, viciously pecking and clawing at its giant eye. Writhing in pain and annoyance, the Cyclops squeezed its eye shut. Seizing this moment, Gong, already in position, fired his arrow. The monster tried to block it, but the arrow pierced straight through its hand and into its closed eye. A soul-shaking scream of agony echoed through the streets. In the chaos, Byung-ho teleported above the beast and dropped a swarm of rats into its gaping mouth. The plan was unfolding perfectly. As the next phase began, John summoned explosive gas inside the monster's body, causing it to swell up like a grotesque balloon. He raised his hands and unleashed his sunfire magic. A colossal explosion detonated within the Cyclops, and a cloud of black smoke blotted out the sky. When the smoke cleared, the Cyclops was still standing. It was horrifically burned, and seemingly lifeless, slumped against the barrier. Everyone stared in shock. They were certain they were dead, but now... The Cyclops looked defeated. But John knew better. Something was wrong. The Cyclops wasn't dead. The system hadn't given a confirmation. He shouted for everyone to stay on high alert. It was all going too perfectly. Suddenly, Fatty's trembling voice called out to him, telling him to turn around. Jihan slowly turned, and his blood ran cold. The Cyclops' crimson eye was staring right at him. That murderous gaze promised to devour his very soul. John's mind reeled in panic. How could it have survived that? Before he could even think, the Cyclops raised its massive hands and slammed them down on the barrier. The shield held against the immense blow, but a wave of anxiety washed over John. He wasn't sure it could take another hit like that. He activated his invisible hand to shield the civilians. The Cyclops struck again, and the barrier shook violently but did not break. The nearby buildings, however, weren't so fortunate. The shockwaves were tearing them apart. 2 or 3 more hits, and the entire structure would come down. In that instant, Dongjan leaped into action, unleashing a downpour of deadly spears. Yeonju and the others joined the desperate counterattack, but it was useless. Every blow only fueled the monster's rage. Just when all hope seemed lost, June received a system notification. The solar generators had reached 100% capacity, and someone was requesting to use the energy. The request was from Blackie. Jun was floored. Was his pet trying to help them? John remembered that Blackie's power fed on solar energy. With no other options left, he granted permission. High in the sky, a brilliant sphere began to form, shining like a miniature sun as it absorbed all the panel's energy. The heat became so intense, it felt like the very buildings were about to melt. John realized in horror that 300 million won had just been spent on a single attack. The energy converged on his room, and from a blinding explosion, a new figure emerged. Blackie had evolved. Now, with 3 eyes and magnificent feathers, she looked like a majestic black phoenix. She opened her powerful beak, channeling the solar energy, and fired a devastating beam directly at the Cyclops. The attack punched a massive hole through the monster's chest, but unbelievably, it was still not dead. Seeing her chance, Yeonju transformed into her fierce mother bear form, soared into the air, and delivered the final crushing blow, finally killing the level 51 Cyclops. An explosion of experience flooded his system, along with a staggering 31 billion won. As he leveled up, a spike of agony lanced through his skull. His very domain surged outward, swallowing entire city blocks. Then came another 10 billion won. Money meant exclusively for construction.
The pain forced him to his knees. Blackie swooped down, nudging his nose with her beak, as if to say, "I'm the real hero here."
John praised her incredible work, but his mind reeled. A single attack had cost him 300 million won. Blackie simply preened, offering no excuses. But a smile crept across John's face. After all, 31 billion in profit and no lives lost. This was a complete and total victory. Watching Blackie obliterate that colossal titan with one blow was the most insane spectacle he had ever witnessed. Smiling, John stroked Blackie for her extraordinary courage. Suddenly, a sound cut through the silence. Both of them snapped their heads towards its source. It was Yeonju, the werebear woman. And in that instant, something clicked for Jae-hun. The familiar chime of the system window warped into a sound he had never heard before. A sound Yeonju had been desperately waiting to hear, for what felt like an eternity. But to understand this, we must go back to just a short time before, inside a derelict abandoned building.
A man quietly focused his ability, coaxing pure water into a small bottle. The survivors around him watched with grateful eyes, just to have a single drop of clean water.
But the water wielder stood frozen, lost in bleak thoughts. Their food supplies had completely vanished. A long line waited for the precious water he could manifest. But that couldn't solve their gnawing hunger. He knew they had reached their absolute limit.
A cold dread began to settle in his heart. They would have to abandon this shelter, the only safe place they had known.
And in that very moment, a violent tremor shook the building to its foundations. His first thought was the same as everyone else's. "An earthquake!" he cried out. Seconds later, a man burst through the door breathless. He screamed for everyone to come witness the unbelievable sight just outside. When the man choked out the word monster, the water wielder's blood ran cold. Without a second's hesitation, he sprinted for the stairwell. But when he reached the rooftop, the sight that greeted him stole the very breath from his lungs. A colossal Cyclops towered over the ruins, its presence radiating pure, unadulterated fury. Beside him, a white-haired man trembled, asking, "What do we do?" But the purple-haired man, Jae-hun, was already calculating their next move. He ordered the other man to get everyone to the basement. Keep them safe no matter what. Despair washed over June as he raked his hands through his hair. How could they possibly fight that facing that behemoth was a death sentence? He tried to reassure his companion, explaining there was nothing to be done against a monster of that magnitude. But behind them, unseen and unnoticed, a blinding light began to gather in the sky. The men huddled in fear, whispering desperate prayers. "Please, just don't let it find us." And then, in a flash of impossible power, the Cyclops was utterly annihilated, catching them completely by surprise. They couldn't comprehend what they had just witnessed. What kind of divine power was this? But as Hayek stared at the dissipating light, a stunning realization dawned on him. "This is the power of an awakened," he breathed, "but on a scale I never dreamed of." He turned to the silver-haired man. "Hun, gather everyone." Hun stared back in disbelief. "Are you insane? You want us to walk towards that?" But Huck's eyes were filled with grim certainty. He didn't know who this awakened was, But he knew what they had to do. If they had any hope of surviving this hellish new world, they had to find the one who wielded this godlike power.
As they began their trek toward the source of the light,
The people offered a silent prayer. They hoped whoever they found would be a savior, not another destroyer. Their future rested on this single gamble. When they finally reached the apartment complex, they knew without a doubt this was the place. Because amidst the endless destruction, these buildings stood perfectly pristine. Hyun, leading the group, voiced their disbelief. How can these buildings be standing in a world that has crumbled to dust? He took another step forward and slammed hard into an invisible barrier. Instantly, a system window materialized before them. The cold text read, "Entry prohibited." A second message blinked into existence. "Do you wish to become citizens?" They accepted without a thought. Citizenship has been granted.
but their new status came with an initial mission. Proceed to the 30th floor to John's residence.
When they finally arrived at the apartment, John was already there waiting for them. Stranger still, he greeted them by their names, as if he had been expecting them all along. Jihan, unflustered, simply stated his own name in return. In that instant, Hayek's soul recognized him. This was the man who had brought a giant cyclops to its knees.
Now, standing face to face, his instincts weren't just screaming, they were roaring. He didn't hesitate for a second.
Hayuk shot his hand forward, grasping John's, and introduced himself with profound sincerity, pleading for John to watch over them. He knew this was a lifeline, a connection he absolutely could not afford to lose. Elsewhere, in a place brimming with tranquility, Yeonju the werebear served a steaming meal. But this time, a genuine, radiant happiness, a light-long thought extinguished, shone in her eyes as she called out to Seiwoo. Seiwoo, her precious little boy.
Her beloved child was eating with pure joy, and she leaned in her voice soft as silk, asking if it was good. With a huge, happy smile, he declared it was the most delicious thing ever.
The little boy then looked up at his mom, his eyes wide with innocent curiosity, asking whose birthday it was. After all, seaweed soup was a special dish meant for celebrations. In response, she simply pulled him into a warm, loving embrace. He snuggled closer, telling her how much he loved this meal, when suddenly the door creaked open. It was John. The boy's face lit up, and he shouted with delight, "Wizard Uncle?" Yeonju asked if the new residence was settled, and John confirmed it was. They had food and a safe place to call home. Then Jae-han offered an apology, catching Yeonju completely off guard. She asked why he would ever be sorry. He confessed that the newcomers were bound to the house, a rule he hadn't anticipated. But Yeonju's expression remained utterly serene. She replied calmly that simply being here together with her son was everything she could ever ask for. Holding her child just a little bit tighter, she spoke from the heart, saying she was truly, finally content. A moment later, a system window flashed into existence. Her loyalty had skyrocketed, officially registering her as his retainer. But even without the system's confirmation, John could see it all. It was in her gaze, her tone, and the gentle way she moved. Her heart was full, and he could feel her overflowing emotions without needing any digital proof. Time drifted by. The mother and son continued to soak in their newfound peace, watching television side by side, their faces painted with smiles and laughter. And in that simple, quiet moment, Jae-han's thoughts drifted to his own family, and the crushing weight of how long it had been. He couldn't help but wonder how they were. Were they eating properly? Or had sickness found them? He closed his eyes as his mind conjured the darkest scenarios this chaotic world could offer. Just then, a familiar pitter-patter broke the silence. Blackie had arrived. The little creature immediately began to play with the werebear and her son, filling the room with innocent joy. Watching them, a single thought calmed John's turbulent mind. There was no need to rush. This was just one day, a single peaceful, ordinary day. He understood the monumental struggle Yeonju had endured to reach this moment. At the same time, his mind shifted to Yajun's rats already scuttling towards the main house. Once those rats arrived, he could send his family everything they needed. So for today, watching this mother and child bask in pure happiness, Jin made a decision. His only focus would be them. Because this very moment was the brilliant dawn of Yeonju's one and only dream. Later, John offered them the master bedroom. But with her son still clinging to her, Yeonju politely declined, saying any other room would be fine. But John wouldn't hear of it. He insisted, pointing out it was the warmest, most comfortable place for them to rest. With a reassuring smile, he added that this was how it should be. Without another word, Yeonju gently stroked her son's hair, and together they thanked Jae-hun for his immense kindness. They soon headed to the room, wishing him a peaceful night. The little boy gave a sweet wave to John before the door closed. John watched them go, a profound sense of satisfaction settling in his soul. A faint smile graced his lips. As the house lights dimmed, a gentle lullaby began to drift from the bedroom, a soft melody for the child who was still awake listening. Meanwhile, out in the living room, John lay on the sofa, letting the sweet lullaby wash over him. Yeonju's voice, so full of tenderness, sang on and on. It had been an eternity since he'd last heard such a peaceful melody. And as he listened, the tension melted from his body, his eyes slowly closing, like a child drifting off to sleep in his mother's arms. A new day dawned quiet and serene. Jian began his morning with a warm breakfast, lovingly prepared by Yeonju and her son. Afterward, they gathered in the living room, settling in to watch the little boy's favorite cartoons. The child was absolutely captivated, bursting into laughter at every scene, as if it were the most amazing thing he'd ever witnessed. Soon Siwa was up and chasing after Blackie, who had been peacefully soaking up the morning sun, only to have his nap rudely interrupted, an act that clearly unsettled the magical creature. After a day of wonder with new toys, John and his temporary son collapsed onto the floor for a quick nap. Amidst colorful drawings and echoing laughter, every moment overflowed with a pure and genuine joy. But the hands of time are mercilessly unstoppable. With Blackie perched on his shoulder, John wept in silence, crushed by the sorrow of granting only a single day of life to Yeonju's precious child. Moments later, Yeonju sank to her knees, pulling her son into a final desperate embrace, pouring every ounce of her love and soul into that one hug. Still too young to grasp the weight of this farewell, the boy innocently asked his mother if she was crying. Through a waterfall of tears, she fought to steady her voice, whispering a strained denial. But as his tiny hand gently cupped her cheek, he felt the undeniable proof of her sorrow. So Siwa began to softly wipe the tears away, trying his best to soothe her pain, as he begged her not to cry. Yeonju just held him even tighter. And with a voice that trembled with heartbreak, she finally confessed her terror. A fear of a world without him. A world too horrifying to imagine. Then, with the pure innocence only a child possesses, the boy simply called her mom, promising with absolute certainty that he was right there by her side. Those simple, heartfelt words were enough to completely shatter Yeonju's composure. Tears streamed down, born from the crushing weight of her despair. Even as Siwa tried to comfort her, Jun's sorrow was endless. He took a step back, easing himself from her embrace to look her straight in the eyes. He vowed with all his heart that he would always be with her. Overwhelmed by grief, she choked out his name. But he didn't stop. He continued his slow walk toward the fading light of the setting sun. Behind him, she desperately called out that she had so much more she wanted to do for him. In that moment, he paused. Turning around, a warm, radiant smile lit up his face as he told her he loved her, just as his form began to dissolve into light. Hearing those words, she completely froze. Still kneeling on the cold ground, her body began to tremble, the immense pain making it almost impossible to even breathe. But like any mother, even in the depths of unimaginable agony, she offered a smile through her tears and managed to whisper back, "I love you." And with those words exchanged, Siwa faded away with a peaceful smile. In the blink of an eye, he was gone completely. And Jian's hand, heavy with the unbearable grief of farewell, fell limply to the ground as Jin watched over her, his own heart breaking from the profound tragedy. A moment later, she tried to rise, but the pain was so overwhelming, so soul-crushing, that her body refused to obey. Witnessing this, Jae-hun could only think that hope is a fragile flower, blooming in the harshest soils of despair. With his eyes squeezed shut, he arrived at a bitter realization. To cling to hope, one must be prepared to face the deepest, most cruel forms of sadness. He then extended a hand to her, gently urging Yeonju not to drown in her sorrow, vowing that this was not the end. At his words, Yeonju looked up at Jane, and with a hesitant, trembling voice, she asked if he truly meant it. If this truly wasn't the final goodbye. With unwavering conviction, Jihan declared that if even a sliver of a chance existed, he would bring her son back again and again, no matter how many times it took. His vow ignited a new flame of hope within her, and Yeonju felt a surge of strength return to her broken spirit. At that very instant, a system window materialized. Yeonju's trust level had hit 100%, granting her the power of primordial vitality. The scene then cuts away to the red-haired man who was roaring with absolute uncontrollable fury. The twins who had heard the entire story were visibly seething as they realized the standard spear. The orc spear and every single coin the red-haired man had painstakingly saved had vanished into thin air. It left him utterly bewildered and furious. The red-haired man snarled, demanding to know what happened to his brother's items. His brother could only explain that when he woke up, every last one of his possessions was just gone. The other twin chimed in, revealing that countless others had lost their items as well. But there was a chilling pattern. Every single person who lost their gear was absent during the summons for those who completed their military service. One of the twins then muttered that they should have returned to that place much sooner. In a flash, he was violently grabbed by the collar and yanked forward. The red-haired man, his face contorted with rage, demanded to know if the twin was trying to pin the blame on him. The twin frantically tried to explain it was a misunderstanding. But the red-haired man's fury was a wildfire that could not be contained. His voice boomed as he reminded them they had all agreed from the start that following Jae-hun's plan was a fool's errand. Faced with this explosive anger, his brother, already on edge and losing his nerve, finally snapped, admitting that yes, Jae-hyun's strategy was idiotic from the very beginning. The words struck home, and the red-haired man's grip finally went slack. In that moment, the cold, hard truth crashed down on him. Could he really be exiled? Because of his own damn foolishness? A chill ran down his spine as he recalled the one other time this had happened. His mind drifted back to a disturbing story he once heard about a man who made a terrible mistake by going far beyond what was appropriate with someone much younger than him. That man was caught expelled without a second thought and later found dead on the streets like trash. As he pieced it all together, a sickening realization formed. Even now, with a giant on the loose and chaos everywhere, the survivors were still a community, which meant there were more than enough people who would gleefully vote to throw him to the wolves. A venomous hatred for his own predicament consumed him entirely. The image of that man in the red jacket burned brightly in his mind. He could almost hear him calling him a bastard, and he seethed, imagining the smug satisfaction on his face when he got that weapon. The red-haired man clawed at his scalp, restless and enraged. How did everything spiral so completely out of his control? Elsewhere from the shadows, Jae-hyun watched the entire scene unfold. Seeing the man's spiraling paranoia, he thought to himself, "This is merely the prelude to the hell I have personally designed for him." Just then, a shimmering blue window materialized behind the red-haired man. A new mission notification that caught him completely off guard. Stunned, he whipped around to confirm what he was seeing. The system window displayed a brand new quest. Hunt 20 goblins in 24 hours. The reward for success was a pittance of experience. But failure meant 1 full minute of excruciating, soul-shattering pain. Now, let's shift our focus to Yeonju's newest, most terrifying acquisition, the legendary Primordial Vitality. It's an exceptionally rare ability, one that Jae-hyun now shares. A power known for its monstrously fast regeneration, which scales directly with the severity of one's injuries. Jae-hyun could barely comprehend it. He never imagined in a million years that reaching 100 trust points would grant Yeonju that exact skill. Still, as his mind raced, Jae-hyun quickly came to a realization. For now, this ability was almost useless to him. His eyes stayed locked on the system window as his strategic mind churned. After all, he wasn't a frontline fighter. Even if he left the safety of the building, the odds of him getting seriously hurt were practically zero. But even so, the fact that a skill of this caliber was the reward for 100 trust points was a game-changing piece of intel. His thoughts immediately jumped to Bongho, who was also closing in on that same 100-point milestone. A grand strategy began to form in his mind. If Bongho also unlocked an ability at 100 points, and if Jae-hyun could copy it, an ability that would let him teleport instantly to any place he could see, then the very rules of this world would bend to his will. Pushing the idea further, Jae-hyun envisioned a future where he could combine that teleportation with his absolute one's eye and an activated advanced base. As if on cue, a system notification popped up for the advanced base, a safe zone that could be established outside of Haven. When active, it projected the city's authority and protection, so long as a citizen of knight rank or higher remained inside. But there was a condition: if enemies occupied it for more than a single day, the base would be automatically destroyed. Returning to his plan, Jae-hyun concluded that as long as his mental power could withstand the strain, he could theoretically teleport all the way to the advanced base. With that, his new path was set in stone. From this moment forward, his primary objective would be to train his mental fortitude. All his future missions would be chosen to enhance that single crucial attribute. At that very instant, a voice called his name. It was Yeonju, stating she was stable enough to leave. She declared that she would personally handle the mission to bring his family back. Hearing this, Jae-hyun remembered the mission was supposed to have started yesterday. He knew perfectly well the delay was his fault. Yeonju simply thanked him for his patience and understanding. She then promised she would find a way to repay his kindness. For a moment, though, his expression was unreadable. Jae-hyun wondered if she could read his mind. He let out a small, self-deprecating comment, asking if he really came off as the impatient type, and confessed. Her words made him feel a little embarrassed. Yeonju responded with the gentle tone. She insisted he wasn't impatient at all, admitting that if their roles were reversed, she would have acted the exact same way. With a soft smile, she confessed that when it comes down to it, everyone puts their own family first. She understood how precious the extra day he'd given her and her son was, and she thanked him again with true sincerity. Jae-hyun gave a slight modest smile, simply saying that he was glad she understood. He directed her to Unit 291, where the team was already assembled, promising to join them in a moment. Yeonju gave a respectful bow and a quiet yes, then headed for the designated spot. It soon became clear why Jihan hadn't sent them directly to Sumi Station. Following the Cyclops attack, the tracks leading to the station had been completely obliterated. And it wasn't just the tracks. The station itself was a mangled wreck, almost entirely destroyed. Facing this disaster, Jihan knew they needed a new route. For the last 24 hours, Yejin had sent her rats into the maze-like tunnels to find one. And now it seemed she had finally found a new access point. Jihan activated his absolute one's eye, needing total control of the situation. Just then, an unexpected notification flashed before him. The system displayed a shocking message: a level 7 tamed giant rat. A cold dread washed over Jihan as the meaning sunk in. Yejin had evolved. Still reeling, Jihan wondered if this was the power she'd gained after being officially registered as his retainer. But there was more. Something was tailing the rat. No matter how hard he focused, he couldn't identify the mysterious pursuer. Suddenly, his vision locked onto an even more terrifying threat. A horde of zombies burst from the darkness. Level 9s, level 11s, and even horrifying level 13s. Ice flooded Jihan's veins as he watched the nightmare unfold. The rat, facing impossible odds, shot forward like a bullet, desperately fleeing the horde of undead that pursued it with relentless hunger. But then, in a stunning turn of events, the rat skidded to a halt. It spun around to face the tide of death, a ferocious growl ripping from its throat showing not a shred of fear. It bared its fangs with a spirit that defied its size. The zombies swarmed in, forming a living cage that sealed every escape route. Yet, even facing certain doom, the rat held its ground, refusing to retreat a single inch. From a distance, Jihan watched the entire scene play out. Realizing the rat would die a meaningless death, he considered detonating a gas line, taking the zombies down with it. But even as death closed in, the rat's focus sharpened its stance, coiling with aggression. With an explosive burst of speed, it charged forward. Though completely encircled, the rat became a phantom, miraculously dodging every single attack. It weaved through the chaos with breathtaking agility. From afar, Jihan was utterly captivated by what he was witnessing.
Breaking free from the deadly trap, the rat launched itself forward and continued its run.
Incredibly, it emerged from the battle without a single scratch, sprinting hard toward the exit. With only a short distance to go, the rat made one final leap and shot through the opening to the outside world. But something was already waiting. In the shadows, a predator watched its approach. With eyes fixed on its prey and sharp fangs bared, the creature let out a low, menacing growl. It was coiled, ready to pounce at any second. Instantly, the rat froze, completely paralyzed by a primal fear that dwarfed everything else. Jihan was caught completely off guard, the shock evident on his face as he watched this new confrontation begin. In a flash, the level 23 landshark lunged with terrifying force. Its massive jaws snapped shut, swallowing the rat whole in one clean motion. The feed went dead. Jihan stood in silent despair, the gravity of what he'd just seen crashing down upon him. He wondered what kind of monster that could have been, but more than anything else, his eyes widened in horror as he recognized the location. O Station? Just a few kilometers from his own home. The truth struck him like a physical blow. Creatures that deadly were roaming near the very place his loved ones were hiding. The icy grip of anxiety tightened around his heart. Forcing himself to stay calm, he knew he had to hurry. He was out of time. The scene changes, focusing on Dabine, who was crouched down sorting through several boxes. She was clearly exhausted, but a look of relief washed over her face, having finally finished her task. Suddenly, a voice called out to her. Turning, she saw it was Jihan who had come to thank her for her hard work. With a small smile, Dabin replied that it was no trouble at all, especially since she was being paid for it. Then she asked, "So what's the new emergency?" Jihan looked a bit uncomfortable, averting his gaze as he struggled to find the right words to explain the dire new situation. Immediately sensing his unease, Dabin's expression filled with concern. Her voice now tense with growing anxiety, she pressed him, "Just tell me what's going on."
With a calm, strategic tone, John explained his plan. He needed Yuhiron's skills for a critical task over the next couple of days, and he was counting on Dabine to hold the fort.
The sudden responsibility caught her off guard. Dabin flashed a nervous smile, trying to mask her anxiety. Her voice wavered slightly as she asked, "You mean you want me to handle everything all by myself?" John simply nodded. "It's only for 2 days," but she knew instantly the sheer weight of work and pressure that meant. A skeptical look crossed her face. "Does this come with a bonus?" she challenged. "I'll be the acting lead, and that means serious overtime."
At her bold question, a slight smirk played on John's lips.
Then, his eyes gleaming with excitement, he declared, "I'll pay you double for every extra hour." In that instant, Dabin's entire demeanor changed, her face lighting up with pure, unfiltered joy. A surge of energy coursed through her. She was now fully motivated, ready to take on any challenge he threw her way. Meanwhile, in another location, a thick green mist, summoned directly by the system, enveloped Yuhi's entire body. The scene shifted, revealing the entire team gathered around a large table for the mission briefing. Every eye was locked on John as he began. The gigantic Cyclops, he explained, had made the Kameian station route far too dangerous to use. But abandoning that subway line entirely, he declared, would be a tremendous waste. Yajin stepped forward, elaborating on his point. The section from Kameion to Bayomnagol, all the way to Deoryang station, was still completely intact. According to her intel, that specific path was clear of monsters, a safe passage for the group. She laid a hand-drawn map on the table, revealing their first objective: secure the route to Bayomnagol station. The man in glasses shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He muttered that their best bet would be to find a way to fly over the whole dangerous mess. But before anyone could respond, Daku suddenly interrupted, not with a strategy, but to gush over Yejun's incredible map-drawing skills. John immediately cut through the lighthearted moment, his voice sharp and focused, bringing them all back to the mission at hand. He reiterated Yejun's plan, his finger tracing a path on the map before stopping at a critical point. This area, he warned, required extreme caution before they reached their final destination.
"A horde of roughly 500 orcs," he announced, "is active around a large supermarket complex right here."
The news sent a chill through the room. Dong Jian spoke up first, asking the obvious question. "Do we have to fight them head-on?" Yajin shook her head firmly. "Engaging the orcs is not our objective. We just need to reach Bayomnagol station and get underground." I've already mapped a route completely clear of orcs, she promised. We'll only face a few low-level monsters that we can easily sweep aside. Inwardly, John recalled the immense resources he'd poured into the team, ensuring nearly everyone had reached at least level 30 before this operation. Only Fatty and Hen were lagging slightly behind, but against mere goblins, their current strength would be more than enough. Jae-hun continued confident they could reach Koryang Station without issue. However, he paused, his tone growing grim. The real challenge lies ahead, at Bususan Station. The name alone sent Daku into a panic. Is there another giant monster waiting for us there? He yelped. But Ijun quickly shut him down. No, she said, her expression serious. The threat isn't a single creature. It's the state of the railway tracks themselves. She then dropped the bombshell. That entire section was swarming with a massive horde of zombies. Unless one of us has an ability that can annihilate monsters in an extremely confined space, she concluded, forcing our way through is a suicide mission. A stunned silence fell over the group. The news hit her on the hardest. She took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady her nerves to find her voice. Her hands trembling, she looked at Yejin. Yejin, she stammered, I think my ability might be exactly what we need. Later, a system window materialized, announcing that the 100,000 weight limit for her poisonous mist had been reached. A wave of frustration washed over Hin, feeling she had already hit her limit. She pushed open a nearby door where Jin and Yajun were waiting anxiously. They immediately showered her with praise. You were incredible. You did an amazing job, Jae Hyan asked with concern. Are you feeling all right? She nodded, though she'd felt utterly drained at first. Some hidden well of power had pushed her through, and now she felt surprisingly fine. What she couldn't have known was that this surge of strength came directly from John, who had secretly activated his newly upgraded retainer management skill. John grimly remembered the price of that upgrade. It had cost him a fortune, but seeing the results, he knew it was worth every penny in investment that would yield billions in return.
Still filled with doubt, Han asked him, Are you sure? Is it really okay for me not to go with you?
John gave her a reassuring smile. Your role is critical, he explained calmly. Just stay here and continue producing the poisonous mist. That alone is more than enough to ensure this mission's success. The stage was set. With a flick of his will, John unleashed the power of his supreme recluse's eyes. The operation was a go. Instantly, his vision pierced the distance, revealing a grotesque sea of zombies exactly where they'd predicted. But then something shifted. The entire horde snapped its attention in unison, a grotesque wave of turning heads. A level 3 rat, a blur of fur and fury, was charging straight for them. For a split second, the undead seemed to recognize the danger, a flicker of awareness in their dead eyes. Following the plan to the letter, John opened his system inventory. A thick, venomous green fog erupted at his command, instantly blanketing the zombie horde. The rat moved in perfect sync, a lightning-fast predator, weaving through the helpless bodies of the undead. John's poisonous mist was a cruel masterpiece. Once inhaled, it seizes the muscles, paralyzing the diaphragm, leaving its victims to suffocate. However, these weren't living targets. Zombies don't breathe. They are already dead. This was a fatal flaw John had already accounted for. He had given Yejin her orders beforehand. A contingency plan was in motion. And just like that, hidden amongst the undead, several rats emerged from the shadows awaiting their master's command. The order came. One rat leaped onto a fallen zombie. Through the reflection in its lifeless eye, the system captured the kill. The rat bared its fangs and tore viciously into the creature's flesh. In that exact moment, a system notification flashed. A level 11 zombie had been successfully hunted. Experience points flooded in, along with a deposit of 120,000. 851 wired straight to his digital wallet. But their rhythm was shattered by Yejin's panicked cry over the comms. Her voice laced with fear, she reported that something was wrong with the rats. At the same time, a grim message appeared on his screen. A rat had reached level 9. The news sent a chill down John's spine. He understood the terrifying implication immediately. If that rat tasted zombie blood, it could become infected, turning into a monster itself. Even worse was a far more terrifying possibility. Yejin herself might have been exposed to the contagion through a simple bite or scratch in the chaos. Fighting down his panic, John demanded to know if the rats were still under her control. Yejin confirmed they were, but noted they had become far more aggressive. John breathed a small sigh of relief. For now, they were in the clear. His mind raced, thinking of the next step. If they could just make it to Jigalki Station safely, then maybe he would finally get the chance to reunite with his family. But that sliver of hope was instantly crushed by another piercing system alert. An unauthorized person was attempting to breach the shelter through the main entrance. Confused and alarmed, John stared at the message, his mind reeling. Before he could even process it, a second alert appeared. The system stated that a group of 157 people met the requirements for citizenship and asked if he wished to grant it. Trusting his gut, John confirmed. Immediately, another system message flashed. The total population had now reached 3,000 residents. As a result, a new ability had been unlocked. Economic Activity Subsidy. Reading this, John felt a brief surge of anxiety, unsure what this new feature would do. But then a slow smile spread across his face. After all, this might just be a game changer. The system continued to cascade new information. This time, it announced that salaries would now be paid to citizens, with the amount determined by their title or position. These wages would be paid from a separate fund, not from the chief's wallet, depending only on a person's assigned role. Reading this update carefully, a plan began to form in his mind. This was the perfect chance to give official titles to Dabin and the entire team managing their public facilities. After all, a weekly salary of 700,000 won perfectly matched a daily wage of 100,000 won, making the accounting simple. Tapping the system screen, he declared there was no longer a need to pay people manually, especially since it meant losing out on tax reductions. At the speed things were progressing, it was clear they needed to expand the department responsible for public facilities. The money given to citizens through this new fund was essentially a free resource provided by the system. And it wasn't a small amount either. Even 100,000 won for each employee was a lot. He ran a quick calculation in his head. If there were 300 workers on the payroll, that was already 30 million won per day. And if all positions from basic workers to general managers were filled, the total could easily reach 50 million won daily. Thinking ahead, a strategic gleam appeared in his eyes. John envisioned that, as this money circulated, the total income he received from his tax collection ability would continue to skyrocket. Any money the citizens spent would just flow right back into his store, returning to him in the end. He suddenly realized that giving titles to everyone was the ultimate long-term profit strategy. But beyond managing facilities, he was still pondering what other roles would be the most effective. Then an idea sparked in his mind. Maintenance cleaning security. These were the essential pillars he needed to establish. Without a second thought, he made his first move, appointing Devine as the general manager. He recalled she had already brought Fatih and Hyron into her circle, though the other members' faces were a blur.
Just then, a flicker of light in his vision stole Jaehan's attention.
It was the system. A new message announced that Devin had reached 100 loyalty points, officially making her his retainer. In that instant, a critical piece of the puzzle clicked into place. When a citizen's loyalty hits 100, they automatically evolve into a retainer. A new theory began to form in his mind. Does every retainer unlock a new skill at that exact moment? Intrigued, Jaehan prepared to inspect what new ability Devin had acquired. But just as his finger hovered over the system window, a strange sight made him pause.
Hyren was completely knocked out on the sofa, fast asleep, and even drooling slightly.
Yejin saw the scene and asked hesitantly if they should wake her. But Jaehan just shook his head, telling her to let Hiron rest.
She had finished her mission and was clearly running on fumes. He smiled softly, knowing that behind her tough act,
she must have endured something terrible, pushing herself far beyond her breaking point. If anyone in this world deserved some peace, it was her. Jaehan activated his invisible hand, gently lifting her into the air and carrying her to a proper bed where she could finally sleep in comfort. Back in the living room, they both spoke in hushed tones, agreeing that Hyron was going through a lot. Jaehan then turned his attention to Yejin, asking how she was holding up. Yejin calmly replied that she was perfectly fine, especially now that her rats had reached the tracks near the station. Jaehan nodded, telling her to keep up the great work. She just smiled confidently, telling him to leave it to her. But in that very instant, the slightest shadow of doubt flickered across her face. Seeing her hesitate, Jaehan immediately asked what was wrong. She stammered for a moment, explaining that the connection had suddenly been severed.
Caught completely by surprise, Jaehan asked what she meant. She told him to hold on for a second.
Closing her eyes, she desperately tried to reforge the link, but it was no use. The distance, she explained, was likely the cause. It seemed they had finally gone too far. Jaehan pressed, asking if the link had been stable before this. She explained it was possible to stretch the maximum range if a link was already established, but now its reach was cut off at the central station. She looked at him, her eyes filled with worry, asking what their next move should be. Jaehan had no immediate answer, his mind racing. It seemed that disaster always struck at the most critical moment. Just past that station was the house where his family was waiting. His entire plan hinged on using Yejin's rats to scout the area first. Clenching his fist, Jaehan muttered that this was a disastrous complication. He looked at Yejin, ordering her to re-establish the link from the central station using any means necessary. She nodded with grim determination, promising to give it everything she had. Closing her eyes, she focused all of her power to restore the connection. As the image of zombie rats swarming the station flashed in his mind, Jaehan knew they had to explore every single option. Until they found a way through, all he could do was pray that his family was still safe. The system map updated, displaying the current position of all mission members. Yejin's rats were pushing forward, scouting ahead, while Dong's group maintained a safe distance behind them. The scene then shifts to the station where Dong's team had finally arrived. But as they entered, they all froze, paralyzed by the apocalyptic sight before them. The entire area was a wasteland of pure devastation. Every building was crushed into rubble, and massive footprints, far larger than any humans, were stamped deep into the earth. June, the man with glasses, could only stare at the carnage in disbelief, whispering that the scene was beyond belief. The archer, noticing his lack of focus, snapped at him to begin scouting the area immediately. Shaken back to reality, June commanded his raven Blackie to take to the skies. After a few tense moments of surveying through the raven's eyes, he reported that there were no signs of monsters in the vicinity. Daku chimed in, adding that the station itself also appeared to be completely clear of any goblins. And thanks to that massive rock slide, their path forward should be clear. John agreed, figuring no sane creature would ever wander into this wasteland. But the healer's voice was laced with worry, pointing out that night was falling fast and they needed shelter. The archer, however, simply reassured her, knowing a thing or two about how goblins operate. For them, nighttime was the safest time since goblins were cowards who hid away in the dark. Donjian fell deep into thought. After a heavy silence, he made his decision. They would press on. If any real danger appeared, he trusted that John would summon them back in an instant. Suddenly, one of Yajun's scout rats darted into view, gesturing wildly as if leading them somewhere important. The party froze. This was one of Ijun's elite scouts. Without a word, they knew to follow its lead. They moved like shadows following the tiny creature as it scurried ahead, guiding them through the dead silence of the ruined city. Up ahead, someone noticed the station looked like a shallow, murky lake. John wondered aloud if this was the aftermath of the giant's rampage. The archer confirmed it was more than likely. The collapsing buildings must have shifted the very earth itself, creating these sunken pools. As they cautiously skirted the water's edge, something began to stir beneath the dark surface. Slowly, ominously, a massive shape began to rise, emerging from the depths right before their eyes. Both Jian and Du felt it at the same time. Something was terribly wrong. They saw unnatural ripples in the water, a disturbance that defied all logic. The others demanded to know what was happening, and John replied that he'd heard a sound that didn't belong. He squinted into the gloom, his eyes straining. Then he pointed. "There's someone over there." Everyone stared into the distance, trying to make sense of the shape. At first, the silhouette looked human. Perhaps it was a woman. But as their eyes adjusted, they saw it. Something flickered behind her. It was a tail. The creature's gaze locked onto them with a terrifying intensity, and then its mouth opened impossibly wide. A deafening high-pitched scream ripped through the silent night air. Panic erupted. The healer screamed a warning to everyone. "Cover your ears now!" This was no ordinary monster. The being that stood before them, shrieking with a voice that could shatter their very minds, was in reality a siren. Instinct took over, as everyone desperately clamped their hands over their ears, trying to block the bone-rattling scream. Daku was already starting to falter, struggling to keep his hands pressed firmly against his head, his arms trembling from the sheer force of the assault. Yanju looked on in pure shock, unable to process what was happening. Her voice trembled with utter disbelief as she questioned reality itself. Daku's confusion turned to sheer horror as he realized his body was moving on its own, his limbs betraying him like a puppet on strings. Moments later, an unseen force began to pull, dragging both him and Yanju helplessly toward the lake's edge. The pull was relentless and overwhelming, dragging them across the ground with no way to resist. The second Yanju felt the cold shock of the water, she understood the terrifying danger they were in. Watching Daku get pulled deeper, she knew if he kept going, it would be the end. At that very moment, sharp fangs erupted from the water, lunging straight for her feet and kicking her survival instincts into overdrive. She reacted in a flash, kicking desperately for the surface. But monstrous creatures latched onto her legs with vicious strength, yanking her back down into the abyss with raw power. Meanwhile, back on land, Dongjun and the others were fighting a losing battle, struggling to withstand the siren's soul-crushing scream. Their faces were masks of agony. Their bodies grew weaker with every passing second. Amidst the chaos and panic, the healer closed her eyes, focusing and gathering every last scrap of her strength. With a final surge of power, she unleashed her magic, wrapping the party in a glowing defensive shield. Protected by the barrier, Dongjian felt the pressure vanish. He felt much stronger, able to resist the siren's weakening cry. The man with the glasses gasped for air, asking, What in the world is that healer's power? With the last of her strength, she screamed for them to save Daku and Yanju before it was too late. But as the words left her lips, her gaze locked onto a ripple in the dark water. A monstrous blue creature materialized from the murky depths, its horrifying form breaking the surface. From across the way, the group saw the disturbance and yelled out, "What in the hell are those things?" Before an answer could be given, the creatures erupted from the lake in a savage assault, moving with blinding speed. Dongjin's instincts screamed danger as he roared for everyone to brace themselves. He warned that the enemy was closing in fast. Without a sound, the monsters soared through the air, their sights locked onto the group. Dongjin gripped a steel rod with both hands, planting his feet and preparing for the brutal impact. With a deafening clash, his weapon met the monster's strike, sending shockwaves through the air. Just as the beast recovered, a perfectly aimed arrow pierced its hide, finally bringing it down. But that was only one, as countless more swarmed from the shadows. The female archer cursed under her breath, watching the seemingly endless wave of abominations. In an instant, the monsters were upon them, surrounding the team with terrifying speed. Donggun yelled in desperation that they were out of time. They had to rescue Deokshu and Yanju right now. Suddenly, the creature's attention shifted to the other side of the lake. The werebear woman had returned, breaking the surface with Deokshu held tight in her powerful arms. As she emerged, Deokshu coughed violently, expelling water from his burning lungs. He weakly mumbled that he truly believed he was dead. A wave of relief washed over the group, their faces lighting up at his miraculous return.
Daku turned to Yeonju, his eyes filled with sincere gratitude for saving his life. But their reunion was cut brutally short.
The monsters began their merciless assault once more. It was clear to everyone that these things would not give them a single moment to breathe.
Daku instantly summoned his magical armor, his entire body glowing with a protective, brilliant energy.
As the creatures charged relentlessly, he roared to his team that they would hold the line and fight to the very end. In that same moment, the werebear woman took a powerful stance. As a monster lunged, she unleashed a devastating punch that connected squarely with its jaw, sending it flying. The creature's body smashed into a massive wooden pillar, shattering it completely on impact. And revealed at the top of that pillar was the bound and hanging body of a goblin.
At that very instant, both Dongjun and Daku screamed in unison for everyone to get back immediately.
The group dove away just in time as the pillar crashed down right where they had been standing. Bonho immediately scrambled over to Dongjun, asking if he was all right. Dongjun confirmed he was fine, then demanded to know what just happened. As the dust settled, Daku saw the wreckage and his blood ran cold. It was the goblin's corpse still tied to the broken pillar that had fallen from above. As the group stared at the grim display, the man in glasses commanded everyone to look up. When they raised their heads, a truly horrifying sight greeted their eyes.
Dozens of goblin corpses were hanging high above them, their bodies grotesquely arranged into the shape of a giant cross. Dongjun realized they'd been so focused on the fight below, they never even saw the horror above.
And in that moment, a soul-crushing realization dawned on him. To these bastards, it doesn't matter if you're a victim, a monster, or a human. Just then, the female archer's bow slipped from her numb fingers and clattered to the ground. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably as she stood frozen in shock. She simply couldn't process the nightmare unfolding before her. In the silent horror, her mind screamed a single terrifying question. Could that man really be my father? Suddenly, one of the creatures broke from the pack, charging forward at full speed. Dongjun watched in terror as the beast sprinted directly toward the defenseless archer, who was still lost in her own personal hell, completely unaware of the attack. With everything he had, he screamed her name. At that very second, a deafening gunshot echoed through the cavern. The bullet tore through the monster mid-leap, stopping it dead in its tracks and sending it crashing to the ground. Holding the smoking gun was Bungo, who immediately spun around to ask the archer if she was okay. Dongjun praised him for the incredible shot, but his relief instantly vanished when he saw her. The archer had collapsed to her knees, her expression completely empty, her spirit utterly broken. Suddenly, the man in glasses rushed to Dongjun's side, his voice urgent. He declared he might have found a way out of this hellish situation they were trapped in. He explained that through Blackie, he had a bird's eye view of the entire area, and he had discovered something that could be the key to their survival. That agonizing shriek. It wasn't just torture, it was the very thing commanding the horde. Dongjun was completely stunned by this revelation. The strategist explained that while he couldn't decipher the siren's exact words every time she screamed, the monstrous fishmen moved in perfect unison. He theorized that if they could just silence that cursed sound, the horde would fall into chaos without a leader and be forced to retreat. In this desperate, hopeless situation, Dongjun knew it was a gamble they had to take. But there was one huge problem: the creatures would never give them an opening. Cutting straight to the point, Daku asked bluntly, "So the whole plan is just to shut that thing up?" Dongjian confirmed it, his expression deadly serious. A dangerous glint flashed in Daku's eyes. "Leave it to me," he declared with a confident smirk. "I have a plan." As if on cue across the battlefield, the siren unleashed another soul-shattering shriek. And like puppets on a string, the creatures responded, mobilizing for another coordinated assault. Dongjian's eyes narrowed, noticing a shift in their formation. The strategist saw it too. "They know," he warned. "They're protecting the siren." Dongjian turned to Daku, his voice laced with urgency. "Can you really pull this off?" Daku's confidence was unshakable. "Just trust me," he said. "All I need is a clear shot. Just open a path for me. I'll take care of the rest." Without hesitation, the healer announced she would stay behind to defend the team. With the plan set, the team erupted into action, charging forward as one. Every single member fought with one goal in mind: carve a path for Daku. They tore through the fishmen, a whirlwind of merciless steel and relentless resolve. Dongjun carved out a precious second, glancing back at Daku, and roared, "Now's your chance!" In that instant, Daku locked onto his target, planting his feet and gripping his halberd with immense power. Then, with a mighty roar, he unleashed the weapon, sending it hurtling down the corridor. It flew straight and true, aimed directly at the siren. The weapon tore through the air at blinding speed, but the siren simply sidestepped, dodging it effortlessly. The massive halberd flew past her, clattering uselessly against the far wall. The entire team froze, stunned into silence. The one perfect chance they fought so hard for had vanished. Yet Daku remained completely unfazed. A hideous cackle erupted from the siren, her monstrous minions joining in the mockery. But Daku simply smirked calm and collected. With a sharp glint in his eye, he looked at Dongjun. "Did you already forget something?" he asked. Confused and furious, Dongjun had no idea what he meant, until a sudden realization dawned, and his eyes shot wide open. A sarcastic smirk played on Daku's lips. What's the best way to deal with a fish? As he spoke, he raised his hand and activated his halberd's recall command. The weapon responded instantly, reversing its course on a new trajectory. On its return trip, it sliced cleanly through the siren's back, silencing her mocking laughter forever. Just then, a system notification appeared before them.
A level 33 siren had been hunted down. Experience points had been given.
The halberd flew back into Daku's waiting hand, as everyone stared at the siren's now lifeless corpse. The fish-faced creatures panicked, directionless without their queen, and scrambled back into the dark depths of the lake. Their sudden retreat brought a wave of relief. With one major threat gone, Dongjun rushed to the archer's side and gently asked how she was. But she was still trembling uncontrollably, lost in her fear. The healer looked at Dongjun, her face etched with concern. What now? Dongjun's first thought was to find John. Then the archer spoke, her voice trembling. One of them, one of the bodies on the crosses, is my father. Dongjun was utterly speechless.
He whipped his head around his mind, refusing to accept the horrifying truth. His father-in-law. Among those brutalized victims. Crushed by an unbearable wave of sorrow, the archer collapsed, her cries echoing in the silence.
Beside her, Dongjun dropped to his knees, paralyzed by shock and disbelief. The entire group felt the crushing weight of her despair, as if it were their own. And there, hanging from one of the crude crosses in a horrific state, was the body of her father, a devastating sight that tore at their very souls. At that exact moment, a system window materialized. It was a mission reconstruction screen. The target, the archer. The reward, bring her father back to life.
But there was a critical condition. Resurrection was only possible within the confines of the absolute domain. Staring at the screen, with a mixture of shock and desperate hope, Dongjun frantically tapped the system window,
trying to force the reconstruction process. Yujin, seeing the sheer desperation on his face, was left completely stunned by his actions. But in that instant, John froze. The crushing weight of his team's trust suddenly slammed into him. He reasoned that if the situation were truly a matter of life and death, he would have been summoned without a moment's hesitation. Clinging to that logic, he tried to convince himself that there was no real danger, no other path to take. But a cold, nagging doubt began to creep into his heart. Was this truly the only way, being dragged into the depths by armed fishermen? That was not something to be taken lightly. This was an undeniable serious threat. John's heart ached with a desperate desire to see his family again. But he knew this painful longing wasn't his alone. Everyone here had loved ones they were fighting for too. Still, he forced the thought aside, telling himself that protecting his own family came first, before everything and everyone else. With trembling hands, he finally made his selection in the system window. A new quest materialized for the group. The objective: construct a tomb within a 1-hour time limit. The reward was a tiny amount of experience with no penalty for failure. When the archer saw the notification, the last of her strength seemed to vanish. A suffocating wave of hopelessness and grief washed over her, crushing her spirit. From a distance, John watched it all unfold through his supreme eye, his heart heavy with regret. Eventually, their somber work was done. The group stood in solemn silence before the makeshift grave. Dongjian turned to the archer and softly asked if she was truly okay with this. She answered with a firm voice, "This is what my father would have wanted." She explained that he had been obsessed with his work, always vowing to be buried near the railway tracks he so loved. Clutching a metal plate etched with her father's name, she remembered thinking his wish was absurd as a child, but now she had honored it. He was finally resting in the one place he had always wanted to be, with the metal plate serving as his headstone. Watching from afar, a chilling thought struck John. What if one day this same unbearable pain became his own? He prayed that their sorrow would never be his reality. It was that very fear that forged his new resolve to protect them, no matter the cost. Looking back at the system, a realization dawned. To do that, he would need more powerful allies by his side. And in that moment, he knew who he needed most. The one person who mattered was... But before he could finish the thought, the scene shifted. Elsewhere, a goblin was blasted by a man wielding the power of water. At that very instant, a system message appeared. The loyalty of citizen Junhook had surpassed 30, qualifying him for registration as a vassal. Immediately, a second message flashed, confirming his successful registration. A woman's voice called out from behind, "Your body, it's glowing." He glanced down at his hands, his eyes widening in utter amazement. He was completely captivated, wondering what this strange phenomenon could possibly mean. Just then, the system announced he had reached level 40, granting him the titles of 12th Bell Knight and Mage. His trust was now 59, his loyalty 51, and his awakened skills were tied to water manipulation. Moments later, a new mission appeared. The power of all mage-type abilities had been amplified by 100%. His new A-rank skill, Water Bomb, allowed him to conjure high-temperature compressed water that exploded with a force determined by his mana. His other skill, the S-rank Water Control, granted him the power to manipulate water freely with his mind. The system's objective used these skills within 10 minutes. The reward was a permanent boost to his mental power. The penalty for failure? Crippling mental exhaustion. Jun-Huk stood there stunned by the flood of information before him. The quest notification pulsed again. As he read it, someone asked if he was okay, but he simply replied, "Give me a moment." A slow, confident smile spread across his face as he grasped the mission's intent. He quickly realized he was surrounded by more than enough targets to test out his new powers.
Without a second thought, the moisture in the air began to gather around him. The challenge was on. A colossal sphere of swirling water materialized from nothing, leaving the nearby goblins utterly shocked and defenseless. With absolute confidence, Jun-Hyuk uttered the command, "Water bomb!" He thrust it forward mercilessly, striking the goblin horde. The detonation ripped a crater in the ground, wiping out every last one of them in a single devastating blast. As Jun-Hyuk silently surveyed the destruction, he raised his hand again, activating his water control ability. Focusing his mind, he willed the scattered droplets of water to rise into the air. What happened next left two hidden observers completely breathless. The man in the black coat stammered in utter disbelief. Is that really Jun-Hyuk doing all this? His companion confirmed the impossible. That what they were witnessing was truly Jun-Hyuk's power. A smile played on Jun-Hyuk's lips as delicate droplets descended like a soft rain entirely under his command. In the next moment, he collapsed to his knees on the ground, raising his arms to the sky and offering thanks for the blessing he had just received. The two onlookers, utterly baffled, muttered to each other whether he had finally lost his mind. Just then, a system window materialized before him. His trust and loyalty had surged, and the mission was a complete success. And 70,251 points had been consumed. Seeing this all unfold, John was absolutely stunned. He never imagined an S-rank skill could awaken in such a way. With this, Jun-Hyuk became the second person to possess one right after Yeonju. Jae-hyun's mind raced trying to process this shocking turn of events. After all, Jun-Hyuk's original ability was a mere B rank, a simple skill to create water with mental power. He never dreamed it could evolve so dramatically. He wondered if this explosive growth was due to Jun-Hyuk's high level. Standing before the glowing system window, he was lost in thought. This outcome was certainly unexpected, but he couldn't deny that he was more than satisfied with the results. He recalled back when the ability was still just a B rank. He would just use his mind to create water in any shape. Now he wondered how this new piece fit onto the strategic chessboard. As he reviewed the board, he saw Dong's group was already a perfectly balanced unit needing no new additions. While contemplating his next move, Jae-hyun's gaze remained locked on the screen. A new notification flashed. A goblin hunt was underway. Level 6 goblins were being eliminated, and experience points and gold poured into his account. Reading this update sent a jolt of surprise through Jae-hyun. It was so late at night, yet someone was still out there hunting. Suddenly, another system message appeared. A skill had leveled up. The Return to Home declaration had reached level 20, granting him 3 skill points and an entirely new ability. But as Jae-hyun read the next update, a cold wave of panic washed over him. The system announced his territory was expanding, and with that declaration, an agonizing pain ripped through his entire body. He screamed, completely overwhelmed by the torment, as Yejin watched in terror, frozen and helpless. The pain was excruciating, but despite it all, the territory kept stretching further and further without end.
His vision blurred, but John could just make out Yejin's face as she desperately asked if he was all right.
John was consumed by a torment far greater than any he had ever endured before.
It felt as though 1,000 colossal needles were shredding him apart from the inside. Yejin's voice cut through the haze, desperately telling him to breathe.
Frantic with worry, she pleaded, asking what she could possibly do to help him in this critical state.
Visibly shaken and desperate, John forced his eyes open, his mind clouded and dazed.
Through the haze of pain, he caught a glimpse of her face leaning in closer. Startled, he realized she was getting dangerously close, inching toward him with a clear intention.
With a strained voice, he managed to ask her what on earth she thought she was doing. Embarrassed? Yejin shot back immediately, apologizing profusely. She stammered that she thought he'd stopped breathing and was about to perform CPR. But before she could continue, Jae-hyun cut her off. He stated firmly that he was fine. Behind him, Blackie was whining, clearly worried and upset. Jihan reached out gently, stroking Blackie's head to calm him, murmuring that everything was going to be all right.
As he slowly regained his composure, John activated his special ability, Supreme Eyes.
Through the lens of his awakened power, he witnessed the expansion firsthand and gasped at its sheer, unbelievable scale.
The zone had pushed out both west and north, engulfing the streets in a massive 1-kilometer radius around the complex.
Lying on the ground, he finally understood. The source of that soul-crushing pain was his territory expanding to its largest size ever. His gaze shifted back to the system screen. He knew that no matter how utterly exhausted he felt, this was absolutely not the time to rest. The system confirmed he'd earned 3 skill points for reaching level 20. June had already decided which ability to pour them into. He chose the skill most critical for the current Operation Supreme Recluse's Eyes. The moment he confirmed his choice, the system announced that Supreme Eyes had reached level 4. Immediately after, a new message appeared. A multi-vision function had just been unlocked. With this new feature, June's vision exploded outwards, as if he were surrounded by 1,000 unseen eyes, each one showing him a different angle. But he quickly realized maintaining this God's eye view put an immense strain on his mind. He discovered that juggling 3 perspectives at once was his absolute limit for now. June checked the system again. He still had 2 skill points. He decided to pour them both into enhancing the skill known as preservation of dignity. In that very instant, a system update flared to life. The skill had reached level 5, unlocking a new feature called Mystic Draw. On top of that, he was gifted 300 crystals a reward that caught him completely off guard. A moment later, the system clarified the 300 crystals were a prize from the Mystic Draw itself. June saw no reason to turn down a free gift, so he tapped the message to claim his reward. As soon as he confirmed, a brilliant circle of light erupted from the ground beneath him. The radiance was so blinding that Yajin Blackie and even June himself were overwhelmed by its intensity,
forcing them all to shield their eyes. After a few seconds, the blinding circle vanished.
Yet a single concentrated orb of power remained hovering in the air. From within that light, an object began to materialize. It was a ring. The system immediately informed him this was a communication ring, forged to send June's voice directly to his loyal vassals.
June slid the ring onto his finger, still wondering about its practical use in a fight.
As he contemplated its power, it dawned on him. The ability to project his voice would be perfect for Deben. But then he remembered, Deben had already been officially registered as one of his vassals.
He immediately pulled up the vassal management system, which displayed Deben's detailed information.
Level 25 with the title of 11th servant. Trust was at 77, loyalty was at a perfect 100, and she had a newly awakened skill telepathy.
Stunned by Deben's new power, June had to admit it. Telepathy was the ultimate skill for someone with her immense responsibilities.
Suddenly, through his multivision, a deeply troubling scene flooded his mind.
50 people were crammed into a single small house, forced to sleep side by side. Deben stood in the middle of the chaos, trying to calm the furious group, explaining the situation was temporary. But her words were met with scorn and rage, as if she were treating them like worthless animals.
One man, his face twisted in fury, roared at the top of his lungs, reminding her they had all passed countless empty houses on their way here. He screamed, demanding to know what nonsense she was spewing. Their fists clenched in pure frustration. Several others surged forward, insisting that the children at the very least should be allowed to sleep in comfort. They demanded she open the vacant rooms so everyone could finally rest after all the hell they'd been through. Overwhelmed as the situation spiraled out of her control, Deben quickly bowed her head in apology, struggling to calm the mob while explaining that current policy wouldn't allow it. And all the while, from a distance, June watched every single detail unfold through his supreme eyes. Just then, a new system message flashed before him. A skill called Supreme Recluse's Door had been activated. With this, June could now connect to and control any door within his claimed territory. Back in the crowded unit, just as Deben was desperately trying to regain control, a door suddenly swung open on its own, his face filled with annoyance and suspicion. One of the men immediately questioned who had the nerve to barge into someone's home during an emergency. He shouted that in times like these, people should be helping each other, not starting petty fights and causing division. He demanded to know why she was putting up so much resistance to such a basic human request. And at that exact moment, June stepped through the open door, leaving Deben completely stunned and speechless. He turned to the shouting man, his expression like ice, and stated bluntly, "If you don't like the rules of my house, you are more than welcome to get out." The man, shocked silent by June's words, could only stammer for him to repeat what he just said. But June, without a shred of hesitation, simply kicked him out on the spot. Seeing this decisive action, the rest of the group fell silent, their angry muttering dying down instantly. June then faced them all, his sharp gaze sweeping across the room. "Does anyone else," he asked, "have a complaint they'd like to share?" His voice was cold and filled with an unshakable resolve. He announced that from this moment forward, the electricity, water, and gas supply to their entire unit would be severed. Hearing this, a young woman, her face pale with alarm, cried out, asking if he was actually serious about such an insane measure. June locked eyes with her and replied coldly, "That is the exact same question I was about to ask all of you." With eyes as hard as steel, he declared that their timing was far too perfect to be a coincidence. He then challenged them, asking if they came seeking refuge, believing this place to be their salvation, just like the countless others who arrived daily with the same desperate hope. His cold, hard words struck the group like a physical blow, leaving them utterly stunned into silence. But Jae-hoon wasn't finished. He laid out the grim reality of their situation, explaining that caving to their demands would unleash 3 critical problems. First, every empty room would be filled to capacity, leaving no space for those who might desperately need shelter in the future. Second, the survivors who were already here, the ones who had bled and sacrificed to build this community, would see it as a deep betrayal. And third, once they yielded to one selfish demand, an endless flood of others would surely follow. With a voice devoid of all mercy, Jae-hoon's words thundered through the hall, declaring that the rights and welfare they so desperately craved were nothing but a forgotten dream. He reminded them that the government had already collapsed, and that he was no hero sent to fulfill their wishes. He acknowledged that many would call him a tyrant, a man drunk on his own power. But he warned them the world had become a savage place, far too cruel for soft ideals like rights and welfare to exist unless they were earned with blood, sweat, and tears. He drove his point home, stating that if they desired such privileges, they would first have to prove themselves worthy. He then painted a grim picture of the other survivors, the ones who had arrived before them. They were enduring unimaginable hardships, working in grueling shifts, just for a few moments of rest. And yet, despite their own suffering, these survivors were still protecting the children and the weak fighting as one to see another day. Finally, Jae-hun delivered his unbreakable command. They were to return to their designated quarters, immediately. He left them with a chilling warning. If they chose to defy him, they would be forced to surrender far more than what had already been taken from them. Faced with that dark promise, the group instantly fell back in fear. Dabin let out a soft sigh of relief, a wave of gratitude washing over her, as she thanked Jae-hun for his help. But he simply shook his head, replying that no thanks were necessary. In fact, he insisted that he was the one who owed her his gratitude. His cryptic response caught Dabin completely off guard, her mind racing to understand the true meaning behind his words. It was then that Jae-hun suggested that she too might possess a power similar to the one he had just displayed. He asked if she had ever heard of telepathy, instructing her to focus on a person she wished to speak with, to imagine having a conversation with them entirely within her own mind. Dabin closed her eyes, pouring every ounce of her being into the task. After a few moments, a faint ethereal aura began to shimmer around her. A satisfied smile touched his lips. Jae-hun explained that she now needed to discover the precise limits of this new ability, and the only path to mastery was through relentless practice. Just then, a man with trembling hands timidly raised a wave, his voice barely a whisper as he called out Jae-hun's name. Both of them turned to see a nervous man, his head bowed low in a mixture of fear and respect. Jae-hun asked if there was something more he needed to say. The man, with a surge of desperate courage, admitted he knew he was overstepping. But he had to ask if Jae-hun would consider forgiving the friend who had just been cast out. Jae-hun's gaze narrowed. And why should he do that? The man explained that Eunuch, the one who was exiled, was the only one brave enough to voice what everyone else was secretly thinking, and it wasn't fair for him to bear the punishment alone. He then bowed deeply, pleading that he would gladly accept any punishment in his friend's place if only Jae-hun would show Eunuch mercy. Jae-hun fell silent, weighing the man's plea. Perhaps it was time to bring Eunuch back. Deep down, he knew that taking a life merely to make a point was a line he should not cross. His decision made, he opened the system window, noticing the brave man was still standing there waiting for judgment. Looking him directly in the eye, Jae-hun asked for his name. The man replied that he was called Kyung-hun. Jae-hun then announced that he would restore Eunuch's citizenship. Kyung-hun's eyes widened in disbelief, especially when Jae-hun added that he would also restore their electricity and water supply, though the gas would remain off. Before Kyung-hun could even process the news, Jae-hun added that this mercy was a reward for his courage and delivered a stark warning that there would be no second chances for anyone. A moment later, a system notification flashed before him. Eunuch's citizenship had been officially restored. Kyung-hun, overwhelmed with relief, quickly bowed and rushed back to his quarters to share the news. Almost immediately, another message appeared notifying Jae-hun that Kyung-hun's trust in him had significantly increased. For a fleeting moment, Jae-hun considered restoring their gas supply as well, but he knew that if he appeared too lenient, any punishment he dealt now would feel hollow. Just then, Dabin's voice cut through his thoughts, calling him surprisingly warm-hearted. June arched an eyebrow. Was that a genuine compliment? She simply met his gaze with a knowing smile. He muttered a quiet thank you, but she just laughed playfully, teasing him about getting flustered. Changing the topic, Jae-hun tasked her with inspecting 3 buildings, revealing his plan to have a base in all 25. The sheer scale of his ambition left Dabin speechless. Her mind racing, she immediately fired back a question: just how many members did he command? He laid out his vision: with 100 people, he could station 4 trusted members per building. At that, a spark of pure genius ignited in Dabin's eyes. She immediately declared she would pay 100,000 won a day for every single person. With that kind of manpower, she promised their operations would be flawless. But their planning was cut short by a voice from behind. They turned to the stranger, who confirmed he was new here. He then posed a critical question. Did they need a medical team? He introduced himself as Sung Min, an associate professor from a major hospital, an expert in his field. Hearing this, June admitted he'd disbanded the previous team, believing that high-level survivors deserved truly elite care. His gaze then shifted to Dabin. What if they gave this new team an entire room and built their own hospital? Her response was instant. It was a brilliant idea. Seizing the opportunity, Jae-hun added that they could surely find plenty of skilled nurses among the survivors, and the task of assembling this new medical unit. That responsibility, he declared, would be hers. Dabin's face lit up with determination, promising he could count on her. With that settled, June opened the door, returning to where Yajun was patiently waiting. She looked up, asking if the problem was solved. A confident smile was his only reply. Without wasting a moment, he activated the eyes of the Absolute. Yajun's gaze fell on the Dongjin group's location. Have they already left? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Jae-hun's vision confirmed it. They were headed for Jagalchi Station, the path ahead clear. It was time. He opened the system window to finish what he'd started. Just as he predicted, the final upgrade available for his skill points was the absolute warehouse. A system message flashed across his vision. The skill had officially reached level 2. Its capacity surged to 200 kilograms, and a brand new game-changing feature had unlocked state preservation. The description was mind-blowing. The function could perfectly preserve an item's condition and momentum from the exact instant it was stored. Realizing the capacity had doubled, he knew his strategic options had just exploded. The warehouse was now a whole new kind of weapon. His thoughts immediately raced to the terrifying potential of this new function. It didn't take long for it to click. In the right hands, this ability wasn't just powerful, it was borderline broken. Without hesitation, he opened the system store. An S&W revolver and 100 rounds of .38 caliber ammunition materialized before him. His theory was simple but devastating. If the firing mechanism's movement was preserved at the moment of storage, then summoning it would resume the action instantly. Gun in hand, he calmly told Yejun to cover her ears. She stared at him, her eyes wide with alarm. A knot of fear tightened in her stomach when she saw the pistol in his hand. Jae-hun simply reassured her, "This will be over in a second." His finger tightened on the trigger. He gave the command "store," and in the very next instant, he squeezed the trigger. A thunderous crack shattered the silence. Almost immediately, the system confirmed a flawless storage. A surge of pure exhilaration shot through him as Jun stepped onto the balcony, his grand experiment in motion. His mind calculated the terrifying possibilities, while Yejun remained frozen, paralyzed by the sheer shock of what she'd just witnessed. He held out his hand, his focus absolute. Summon. From the system window, a torrent of bullets erupted at impossible speeds. A grim smile touched Jun's lips. His insane theory had worked perfectly. This was it. The ultimate support weapon for Dongjin's group, now trapped in a desperate battle at Jigalchi Station. Miles away, goblins were suddenly ripped apart, dropping one by one under a hail of phantom bullets. The few who survived the initial onslaught shrieked in terror and fled, finally leaving Dongjin's group standing amidst the carnage. Filled with newfound confidence, Dongjin declared their arrival. From his perch, Jae-hun projected his voice, asking if they could hear him. Dongjin flinched, completely stunned. The voice was impossibly clear, as if he were standing right beside him. Seeing his reaction, Jae-hun knew. The entire group was receiving his telepathic message loud and clear. With his theory confirmed, he announced this would be their new line of communication from now on. He then gave the order, "Head to exit number 2. As they arrived, Dongjin scanned the area, taking in the sight of a world in total ruin. From the shadows, John knew this was it. They were now stepping into the unknown, where every shadow could hide a blade. Meanwhile, Yejun desperately tried to link back with her rats at the central hub, but the connection was completely dead. Without their eyes and ears, the party was walking in blind, completely exposed to whatever horrors awaited them. Dongjian finally shattered the tense silence, asking the one question on everyone's mind. "So, which way do we go?" Jane, calm and resolute, gave them their heading. He pointed them toward a wide road on their left, explaining that a 1-kilometer trek should put them right on top of their target. But in that exact instant, something new emerged from the darkness. Dongin saw it first. Reflected in the creature's gleaming eyes was the pure, unadulterated panic spreading across the team's faces. They scrambled for their lives, trying to escape the beast's vicious, snapping fangs. A wave of despair washed over Dongjian. He remembered the grueling battle against the fishermen, and how they barely escaped with their lives. Now an even greater nightmare stood before them. It was a colossal shark. In a flash, its massive jaws opened wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, ready to tear them to shreds. Dongjian reacted on pure instinct, grabbing a heavy iron bar to brace for the monster's devastating attack. The man with glasses raised his weapon, unleashing a furious storm of gunfire at the approaching shark. The bullet slammed into its hide, leaving the beast dazed and utterly enraged. Seizing the opportunity, Dongjian charged forward like a lightning bolt, bringing a powerful, decisive blow down upon the shark's fin. At the same moment, the werebear woman launched herself into the fight, leaping through the air with unrestrained fury. She crashed down on the monster's skull with brutal force, delivering a devastating fatal wound. Almost instantly, a system notification chimed. A level 24 shark had been hunted. Experience points and gold were immediately deposited. With the immediate threat gone, Dongjin gave a sharp nod to the man with glasses. She focused her mind, connecting her consciousness to her raven, Blackie, gaining a sweeping bird's-eye view of the area. Sharing her vision, the man with glasses froze in his tracks, stunned by what he was seeing. Without a moment's hesitation, he shouted a warning. "This whole area is swarming with fish monsters." In that tense silence, another figure suddenly materialized, its overwhelming presence silencing the entire group. At the same time, Deoksu glanced up to see movement in the sky. It wasn't just one creature, but countless blue swordfish-like figures diving straight for them. The group immediately prepared for the next onslaught. As the creatures drew dangerously close, Dongjin roared Daku's name. He raised his halberd high, and with a flash of light, his armor activated with immense power. The moment Daku struck, his blow landed with deadly perfect accuracy. The system announced a sky blue marlin had been successfully hunted, rewarding them with more experience and gold. Without pausing, the archer woman unleashed a furious volley of arrows into the sky.
Her shots were a relentless storm tearing through the monsters that lingered in the air.
Her voice rang out filled with conviction. We won't retreat a single inch until every last one of these things is dead. But suddenly something impossible caught her eye. Despite her firing directly at one of the marlins, the massive creature just kept coming completely unfazed, heading straight for her. Her quiver was empty.
A cold fear gripped her heart as she realized the unstoppable monster was getting closer every second. At that precise moment, a system message appeared announcing the summoning of her storage.
Immediately, bullets materialized and tore into the creature with lethal precision. The system then confirmed a level 17 sky blue marlin had been hunted. Experience points were granted, and an amount of 231. 7,331 was deposited. Reading the message, John frowned. He realized with frustration that whenever he fired the weapon, the reward was always lower than it should be. With a look of pure determination, he called out to Yejin. He ordered her to forget about the rats and take over shooting in his place. Without hesitation, he pushed the weapon firmly into her hands. She instantly recoiled, looking insecure and terrified. Where should I even aim? She stammered nervously. As she got to her feet, John simply said, anywhere you point will be good enough.
Taking a deep, shaky breath, Yejin fired her very first shot.
The system chimed, confirming the deposit. Seizing the moment, John focused his will, unleashing her bullets upon the battlefield. Instantly, countless system windows materialized before their eyes. They were portals redirecting every single shot, straight into the heart of the fight, finding their marks. Another level 17. Sky Blue Marlin, hunted experience points surged and the rewards flooded in. Amid the chaos, Yejun screamed at him, Get back! Reload now! We can't stop the assault! John knew he was right. The pressure was immense. He silently calculated their operational efficiency had just multiplied for the 6th time. He felt a pang of pity for Yejin, who was pushed to her limit. But this ruthless pace was their only path to victory. Just then, the door creaked open, and there she stood, the one known as the Poison Girl. Her eyes widened with curiosity at the absolute chaos before her. Seeing Yejin firing relentlessly, she couldn't help but ask, What is all this gunfire for? Was this real? Or some kind of insane illusion? But then, from the heart of the mayhem, a monstrous creature erupted. But Dongjun and the werebear moved like lightning, dodging the ferocious attack with barely a breath to spare. It was a colossal crimson crab, a terrifying beast of nightmares. Panic and despair flashed across his face. Dongjun screamed, Is this some kind of sick joke? Are we really supposed to fight that thing? The giant crab readied its next assault. Its massive claw rose heavy and menacing, then crashed down with enough force to make the very ground tremble.
Again, Dongjun and the werebear dodged just in time, narrowly escaping the devastating impact. Her eyes, however, never left the beast, burning with fierce determination.
The werebear woman let out a powerful roar, a signal for the healer. He understood instantly. Raising his hand, a radiant aura enveloped her. Infused with that power, she launched forward like a cannonball. With savage strength, she latched onto the creature's colossal frame, opened her jaws wide, and with pure fury, sank her fangs deep into its armored flesh. Meanwhile, Dongjun charged the monster, gripping a long iron rod. He stopped his sprint at the perfect moment, hurling the makeshift spear with pinpoint accuracy. It soared through the air and pierced the direct center of the creature's head.
From the other side, the werebear reappeared, her assault absolutely relentless. Her will was unbreakable, her eyes fixed on her target. She landed a decisive blow on the monster and leapt back.
But to her horror, the beast was completely unfazed. Her attack hadn't even scratched its impenetrable shell. Just then, Byung-ho roared, Everyone fall back! From a higher vantage point, he aimed his weapon, his gaze locked onto the crab. Without hesitation, he opened fire, unleashing a relentless storm of bullets that hammered down on the creature's monstrous form. In the midst of the barrage, Dongjun muttered in frustration, Its defense is insane. What are we supposed to do now? His eyes were glued to the monster. For a terrifying second, doubt crept in. Was this beast truly unbeatable? But from a distance observing every detail, John noticed something critical. He realized this wasn't an ordinary foe. Sharp attacks were useless. They needed overwhelming, crushing force, something like a hammer. With this new understanding, his eyes darted around, desperately searching for the right weapon. He scanned every corner until he spotted the perfect object. A wicked smile spread across his face. He'd found it. The system instantly confirmed the item was now in his storage. Using his communication skill, John relayed the plan to the werebear. When I give the signal jump onto its shell, I found a way to break it. A moment later, John raised his hand, summoning a heavy barbell that materialized out of thin air. He offered a silent apology to its original owner, promising himself he'd buy the kid a new one later. His plan was brilliant. First, he let the barbell freefall, allowing gravity to build its momentum, then stored it just before impact. Instantly, John summoned the barbell once more. It burst through a system window, hurtling towards the crab's head. At that same instant, he sent the signal to the werebear. The barbell struck with cataclysmic force, shattering its skull in a spray of gore. Without a moment's hesitation, the werebear woman launched herself directly at the wound. Her claws were unsheathed, sharp and gleaming. Fury and sheer will were the only fuel she needed. She burst forward with terrifying speed, striking with lethal precision, and delivered a final decisive blow that silenced the beast for good. The system chimed in acknowledgement. Giant crab level 35. Hunt complete. Experience poured in and funds filled their account.
But their victory brought no relief. The path forward was a churning nightmare of abyssal monsters. Every grotesque creature from the deep lunged at them in a relentless, merciless wave.
June knew with chilling certainty that without his guidance, his team would have been dead countless times over. A heavy resignation settled in his heart. This place was simply beyond their limits. Even Dongjun's powerful team, all awakened and fully armed, struggled to advance a single kilometer. And now he had to face a crushing reality. The chances of his family being alive were practically zero. The closer he got to home, the more fear's icy grip tightened around his soul. But even if there was just a 1% chance, he knew he couldn't afford to lose hope. Activating his skill, he scanned their surroundings, and his eyes landed on a ruined yet familiar street. Just past that narrow alley, that was his home. But then something felt terribly wrong. A single tree. Through his communication link, he roared at his team to halt. He knew this city like the back of his hand. This was where he'd been born and raised. He knew every stone, every corner, and what did and did not belong. His eyes narrowed. There had never been a tree on this main road. The city would have removed it years ago, which meant only one thing. That tree had appeared after the apocalypse began. Using his skill again, June pointed it out to the others, asking if they could see the massive tree up ahead. They all confirmed it. June's voice was grim. "That's no tree," he declared. "It's a monster." He ordered them to prepare for battle, and in that very instant, the world shifted.
A single colossal eye tore open on the tree's trunk. The monster's being awoke, and the very ground trembled as if reality itself recoiled from its overwhelming presence.
But the archer stood her ground, her gaze locked on the towering threat.
An arrow flew true piercing deep into its trunk, but it wasn't nearly enough to stop it.
With every passing second, it rose higher and higher, tearing its roots from the earth that could no longer contain it. Facing that overwhelming power, Dongjun focused his energy and hurled an iron bar straight at the abomination.
A perfect pinpoint strike, and yet, the colossal beast endured, shrugging off the blow as it continued its relentless advance.
Its terrifying resilience sent a shockwave through Dongjun. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Just then, Bongho teleported directly behind the creature, his weapon already raised. He unleashed a devastating barrage of shots, each one finding its mark. At the same time, the werebear charged headfirst into the fray, throwing herself into the heart of the monster's assault. Her razor-sharp claws tore through wood and bark, ripping away huge splinters with savage fury. But the tree monster retaliated. A living tide of roots and branches erupted from its body, twisting and surging toward the werebear. The vines coiled around her, hoisting her into the air and locking her in a crushing, inescapable grip. Dongjun and the others screamed her name in horror, but the creature held her fast, dangling her high above them like a captured prize in its twisted domain. Without a moment's hesitation, it began to form branches honed into deadly, piercing spears. They twisted menacingly, aiming straight for the trapped werebear. A cry of pure anguish and despair tore from her throat. In that very instant, Bongho appeared before her, shielding her with his own body. The werebear screamed at him to get back, pleading with him not to throw his life away.
But he held his ground unwavering, ready to face the killing blow. Then, to his utter astonishment, the monster stopped. Its spear-like branches recoiled, pulling back into its body.
On the other side, June was also stunned by the tree monster's sudden retreat. This unexpected pause gave him a precious moment. He had to figure out what caused this change, and fast. Through his communication link, June gave the order. Dongjun, have Yeonju fall back. The rest of you press the attack.
Dongjun hesitated, questioning the order. Only Yeonju but Jun's reply came back firm and without a hint of doubt. And so Dongjun relayed the command. As the team prepared to charge, she obeyed, retreating just as she was told.
From a safe distance, June watched everything unfold. He analyzed the scene, his mind racing. Was the reason for the creature's withdrawal really what he thought it was? Meanwhile, Deoksu braced himself, his senses on high alert for any sudden moves. Just then, a deafening groan echoed through the forest. The colossal tree was stirring again. Everyone prepared for a fight, but a wave of confusion washed over them. What in the world was really going on? Then, as if nothing happened, the beast settled back down. But John's sharp eyes caught a pattern. A thought sparked, wait, what if it doesn't attack humans at all? He realized that ever since Yeonju had shifted into her werebear form, all of the monster's hostility was focused entirely on her. The pieces of the puzzle began to click into place. Maybe the werebear form itself was what provoked this creature's wrath. As John watched the massive tree suddenly surge upwards once more, from out of nowhere, a massive shark materialized, charging with its jaws bared, aiming straight for the tree. The tree's vines lashed out, impaling the shark with brutal force. That was all the proof John needed. It wasn't hostile to humans.
Armed with this knowledge, he gave a decisive order. Ignore it. Keep moving forward, it won't harm us. Dongjian acknowledged the command, and the team pressed onward. only to be halted in their tracks by an unseen force. Dongjian shot a look at Jeon, who was desperately praying this wasn't their final destination.
The group stood at the foot of the gigantic tree, wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. With trembling hands, Jahun confirmed their worst fears. This sacred ground was the resting place of his parents and grandparents.
A firestorm of rage erupted inside him. This monstrosity was a desecration of this holy place. He made a vow in that moment it would be utterly destroyed.
The plan was simple yet brutal. Douse it in gasoline and burn it to the ground. Only its ashes would quench the fire in his soul. Then a realization hit him. He didn't have to summon Dong's forces himself. His vassals could do it for him. The purge could begin immediately. But just then, a system message appeared, alerting him that one of John's blood relatives was nearby.
Who goes there? A powerful voice suddenly pierced the air.
A blinding light flooded the area, forcing them to cover their eyes. An old man appeared flanked by two others, his sharp gaze inspecting every single one of them. So what did you think of this epic chapter? What rating would you give this story? I gotta say, this one is unlike anything I've ever read before. Smash that like button to help me bring you more amazing recaps.